American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 876, Bao wants to get rid of all the brothers and sisters. Smallville Central Hospital. Martha was sitting by the bed, looking at Jonathan lying on the bed with tears in her eyes. The door was gently pushed open, and Peter walked in. Seeing Peter coming in, Martha quickly wiped the tears from her face. Peter walked to Martha's side, looked at Jonathan who was still in a coma, and whispered to Martha, "How is he?" "Not very good, Peter. Bells died half an hour ago," Martha said to Peter sadly. "Peter, I don't know what to do." Looking at Martha's painful expression, Peter sat down and held her hand. "Have you forgotten who I am? I won't let Jonathan get into trouble. My magic can stabilize Jonathan's condition, and then we can find a way. Besides, I have now investigated what caused all this." Listening to Peter's words, Martha held Peter's hand tightly. "Thank you, Peter. Without you, I don't know what to do. We don't need this between us, Martha." Martha smiled slightly, wiped the tears from her face, and looked at Jonathan who was in a coma. "Peter, have I ever told you about the first time I met Jonathan?" "No." Peter shook his head. Martha fell into her previous memories. At that time, he went to Metropolitan University to take a finance course. He sat next to the fountain, wearing a denim suit and flannel, and chewing an apple in his hand. I borrowed his notes at that time, but he didn't know that I was responsible for copying the notes for that class. He still doesn't know up to this day. At this point, a smile appeared on Martha's tearful face. He never knew. Peter listened to Martha's true expression of her feelings for Jonathan, held her hand, smiled and said to her, "You are so cunning." "Yes, I was cunning at that time, and Jonathan was also very funny at that time. I borrowed his notes, and he handed the notebook to me without even asking my name." At this point, Martha looked at her husband with a gentle look. "So, I asked him, 'How do you know I will give it back to you?' He said, 'I would rather believe in others.'" Peter nodded. This is very much like what Jonathan would say. I looked at him at the time, very embarrassed. I was at a loss, because I was thinking of something stupid at the time. At this point, Martha's voice became choked. "I was thinking, God, I hope he can marry me. I still think so today. Every day I think so in my heart. I hope he will marry me." At this point, Martha could no longer control her emotions, hugged Peter and burst into tears. Peter hugged Martha and patted her back gently with his hands. He could naturally feel that Martha's words were sincere. Martha and Jonathan's love is a legend. Both of them gave up and sacrificed too much for each other, but never had any complaints. Outside the ward, Clark leaned against the wall with his back, lowered his head and closed his eyes, not letting his tears flow out. He accidentally heard the conversation between his godfather and mother in the ward just now. When Clark was lowering his head to suppress his emotions, a voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "Clark, why are you here?" Hearing the voice, Clark looked up and found that Mark, V and Chloe were looking at him in shock. "I just came over and wanted to go in," Clark explained with a blushing face because he was caught eavesdropping. Chloe would definitely make a few jokes in normal times, but now she had more important things to do, so she didn't ask much and went straight forward to open the door of the ward. "Mr. Patrick, can you come out for a moment? I have something to tell you," Chloe whispered to Peter who was holding Martha to comfort her. Peter saw someone coming in, let go of his hand around Martha, nodded, and walked out of the ward. "What happened, Chloe?" Seeing Violet and Mark were also there, Peter frowned and asked her. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Patrick. We investigated Dr. Hamilton and went to his laboratory to find the Nicodemus flower, but," Chloe said a little embarrassedly, "some accidents happened in the middle. Bomb was poisoned and turned out to be a completely different person." When Peter heard that Bomb was poisoned by the Nicodemus flower, his expression suddenly became serious. Wei came over with her head down and apologized to Peter. "I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't take good care of my sister. It's not your fault." But Wei, Ale, and Mark, Peter cast his eyes on the two of them. "Before you act next time, you'd better ask Dad for his opinion." Touching Wei's red hair, he asked Chloe, "Where did Bomb go?" "I don't know." Chloe shook her head and said, but Bomb seemed to say that she wanted to solve this matter completely by herself. At the same time, Luther Manor. Lex was flipping through a document and listening to Dr. Hamilton sitting opposite him. These flowers have existed for hundreds of years. Native Americans once found some kind of antidote. I think this may play a role in help us make an antidote. Lex looked at the books and materials in front of him and asked the doctor in surprise, "Where did you find these things?" "From the museum. These are rare copies. They hope I can return them as soon as possible." Lex nodded. "I will hand them over to the medical team in Metropolis as soon as possible." "You can't go anywhere," a voice suddenly came from outside the door. After hearing the voice, the two looked outside the door in surprise, and saw Bomb standing outside. Seeing Bomb, Lex walked over in a good mood. "Bomb? Why are you here? Did Mr. Padrick ask you to come?" Lex, who did not doubt it, walked towards Bomb with a smile. He was very familiar with Bomb. The other party looked like a childhood sweetheart he knew when he was a child. When he was young, his skin was very white and there were dark circles under his eyes. Bomb and Way on the farm both had big eyes and looked beautiful like cartoon characters. Moreover, Bomb had an eye-catching look, a striking blue hair and a variety of weapons. Her eyes and smart expression left a deep impression on him. Bomb lowered her head, and before Lex came over, she suddenly raised her head. Bomb, with a little dark red light in her eyes, scared Lex. Bomb's eyes did not look at him, but bounced and roamed on the surface of objects like a poisonous fly. At the moment when Lex was stunned, Bomb suddenly raised the gun and pulled the trigger at him. With a bang, the bullet passed by Lex's ear and shot into the wall. Bomb suddenly pulled the trigger, directly frightening Lex and Dr. Hamilton. "I'm not Bomb." Bomb raised the gun and slowly took a step towards the other party. "I'm Jinx Padrick." "Lex, I knew it was you who did it behind the scenes. You pretended to be close to Dad, but you always wanted to harm Dad. I know what kind of person you are." Bomb blew out a breath and blew her hanging hair. "You know what? Lex, I am now the one who breaks your disguise. I will prove to my father that I can end it all. It's not Raven, not Zoo, not Bayonetta, but me." After listening to what Bakugo said, Lex nervously took a few steps back and said to Dr. Hamilton, who was also stunned, "She has been infected." "Really? You also think that I was affected by that Nicodemus flower?" Bakugo sneered. "You are wrong. I was Bakugo before, and now I'm the real Jinx. I can be both Bakugo and Jinx. I like the powerful part of Jinx, so now I am Jinx." Lex took a deep breath and said to her, "Okay, Bakugo, no, it should be Jinx. Listen, Jinx, we found the antidote, and we will make everyone better. Don't talk to me like you're coaxing a child," Boom said in a nonchalant tone. "Do you think I care about the antidote? No, I don't care about that. What I care about is to kill you, who is like Hilko, who is always behind the scenes, secretly plotting something, so that you won't threaten Dad. Then, after killing you, I will kill Azu and the others, and then throw my sister into the dark alley, because Dad can only be with me alone. Even my sister can't be." Listening to Boom saying that she was going back to kill her brothers and sisters, Lex fell silent. He wanted to say that after Boom was poisoned, it seemed that her bragging skills were even greater. Although he didn't know the specific abilities of others, he knew that Raven and the others were definitely not something Boom could kill. "Don't you believe it?" Seeing Lex's unbelieving expression, Boom was a little angry. "No, I just think you are very different now, Jinx. You are a little unpredictable, crazy, and imaginative now." Lex raised his hand and said to her, "Listen, Jinx, I swear I don't have any conspiracy. You should understand that I have always regarded Mr. Padrick as my father. He saved me when I was very young." Bomb didn't believe the other party's words. A crazy smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Do you know what I will do, Lex? I will crush you to pieces. I will use your bones to pick my teeth. I will destroy you. I will grind you into silica sand." Bomb, who is addicted to making harsh words, suddenly turned into a chatterbox and couldn't stop. "I will drown you in your own blood. I will remove your flesh from your bones. I will. That Bomb suddenly got stuck when she said this. She coughed a little embarrassedly and wanted to continue, but a voice came from outside. "I will take you back and spank you hard." Chapter 877, Explosively Admit Defeat. Hearing the familiar voice coming from outside, Boom Boom was stunned for a moment, then swallowed her saliva and slowly turned around. As she expected, the person standing behind her was Peter. "You are very impressive now, Boom." Peter looked at Boom, who was holding the Boom Boom gun and pointing it at Lex with a tangled face. "Now, Boom, put the gun down." Peter took a deep breath and signaled Boom not to be impulsive and hand the gun to him. Because of Peter's arrival, Boom's harsh words were interrupted and his expression was a little dull. Hearing Peter asking her to put down the gun, she reacted all of a sudden. "No, I can't, Dad, I'm sorry, this is what I have to do, because he is a bad guy, I have to do this." Boom bit her lip and said to Peter, "Lex is sneaking around behind my back. The world will be better without him. I am helping you, Dad, to avoid future troubles. He is the mastermind behind the scenes. Look, Dr. Hamilton is here." Boom turned his eyes to Dr. Hamilton. "They are doing this together, really?" Peter listened to Boom's words and cast his eyes on Lex. "No, sir, she is delusional. She was influenced by Nicodemus. I have absolutely no ill intentions." Lex raised her hands to show that she was absolutely not behind the scenes. "Dad, he is such a person. I have seen many of them in the alley before. They are all the same kind of people. I know that you have always known that he was investigating you behind your back, but you chose to turn a blind eye. I can help you." Boom held the gun in her hand, and suddenly she wanted to confide her feelings to Peter. She said to Peter with her heart open, "Dad, do you know why you named yourself Jinx? Because Jinx represents bad luck, Jinx, the end of good things, it represents imperfection. Wei said that my character is full of mischief, enthusiasm for doing bad things, messing things up, and irresponsibility. I am very bad at accomplishing a thing. Now, Dad, I want to prove that I can help you accomplish this thing. I don't need the help of others. I will do it alone." Boom's eyes sparkled, and he said excitedly, "Because I love you, so I want to do it for you, Dad." Hearing Boom's words, Peter was stunned. Peter softened his tone and said to her, "It's not your fault. Everyone is born with different personalities. Some people have a stronger sense of justice, while others are just mischievous little devils. Besides, Dad has never thought that you are unlucky. It seems that there are still some shadows of the past life in the character of Bao Bao. Bao Bao in the past life was not understood by others, was treated as an alien, was ignored and excluded. Children who have had childhood trauma understand how frustrating, helpless and annoying it is to be nicknamed, talked about and not taken to play in a small group. Therefore, Bao Bao has been trying to prove herself in a compensatory way. But it is precisely because of the constant efforts that tragedy occurs. She was left at home because of her weak strength. Because she wanted to prove herself, she wanted to break the despair of being isolated and protected. In the end, a lot of people were killed. Among the 2 people killed in the explosion, there were also 2 of her friends. The 2 friends turned into nightmares and lingered in her heart. But in fact, all her nightmares did not come from the accidental killing of her partner. They did not come directly from the loss of her father. The oppression of the upper city, the separation from her sister, and no one who loved her. Boom didn't care about these at all. She only cared about herself. She was too weak. This was what she really cared about, the lingering shadow of her childhood. Boom's wish was to become stronger. And her relatives wanted her to be a good girl, to be a helper, to stay in the safest place, not to walk on the edge of death. But she was a strong person in her bones. Now that Boom was influenced by Nicodemus, she showed an idea of "I can handle it, I am strong enough to help you." This idea of not willing to be weak is indeed the same as Boom's character in the previous life. Fortunately, Boom did not encounter something that made her collapse, otherwise Peter suspected that his daughter would become Harley Quinn. Pulling his thoughts away from Boom's memories of the previous life, Peter looked at Boom with a complicated expression. "I believe you, Boom. You are my daughter. I believe you are a strong person. And I believe that although my daughter is not perfect, as long as she wants to do it, she will succeed." Peter walked towards Lex's. "For you, Lex, you lied to everyone. It seems that you really need to reflect on yourself." Peter walked in front of him and stretched out his hand to him in Lex's astonished eyes. Thinking that Peter was really going to attack him, Lex quickly stepped back and explained to him, "No, Mr. Patrick, what do you want to do?" Before Lex could finish, Peter pushed him. Bang! Lex, who was pushed against the bookcase, felt a pain in his back. Then he felt a blackness in front of his eyes and fainted. Seeing that Peter took action to solve Lex, Booming excitedly put away the gun, walked over and said to Peter, "Good push, Dad. Well, now it's over here. Booming, come back to the hospital with me. Don't worry, Dad, let me kill him." Booming was about to take out the gun and shoot Lex, who was in a coma. Snap! The bang-bang gun that Booming just took out was snatched by Peter. "Dad." Seeing Peter snatch his gun, Boom looked at him in surprise. "You need to go to the hospital with Dad now," Peter said to the runaway lolly. while gently stretching out his finger and knocking on Bomb's head. Bomb, who was put to sleep by Peter, fell to the ground. Peter picked up Bomb and prepared to leave. Ugh, holding the back of his head that was aching slightly, Lex woke up slowly. What the hell is this? He didn't quite understand why Peter attacked him. When he saw Peter holding the comatose Bomb, he immediately understood what happened. With his back against a bookcase, he asked Peter who was holding Bomb. So, sir, was that a feint just now? Yes, Bomb is going to shoot you. Believe me, Bomb in the runaway state really wants to kill you. In order to prevent any unexpected situations, I can only do that. In fact, Peter has countless ways to stop Bomb. Doing this now is just to make Lex suffer a little. Lex listened to Peter's explanation, smiled bitterly, and said, "You fooled me. I thought you were serious, sir." Peter came over and stretched out his hand to pull him up. "This is not the real Boom Boom. Don't bother with her, Lex." While pulling Lex up, Peter said to him, "I apologize to you on her behalf. I'm fine." Lex glanced at Dr. Hamilton, who was standing next to him. At this time, Dr. Hamilton's memory of the previous time in the botanical garden had been erased by Raven, so he didn't recognize Peter. "That's good." Peter held Bomb and said to Lex, "Perhaps you can explain, Lex, why you cultivated this extinct plant." "I'm so sorry, sir." Lex looked guilty. "I'll explain to you later, but now I have to pass the information about the antidote to the medical team in Metropolis." Lex took the file and said to Peter, "This is related to Jonathan and Lana, and whether the infected Bomb can be treated in time." Of course, Peter took a look at the information in Lex's hand and asked him to pass the file. The next day, Smallville Central Hospital. The morning sun shone in, and Jonathan's ward was quiet. Clark, who was sleeping in a chair, was illuminated by the sun and woke up from his sleep. He rubbed his eyes and raised his head to see that his father Jonathan had woken up and was stroking his hair with his hands. "Good morning, Clark, Dad." Seeing Jonathan wake up, Clark's heart was suddenly filled with surprise. He hugged his father. "Great, Dad, you finally woke up." Clark was a little breathless, and he gently patted Clark's shoulder. When Clark let go of him, he asked him, "Why am I here, Clark?" "The medical team in Metropolis has found an antidote. They got the information from an ancient Indian prescription." "Antidote?" Hearing about the antidote, Jonathan was still a little confused. "So what happened? You really don't remember?" "Dad, I don't remember why I'm here. I remember that when I was driving a car, I saw a car accident and I went to save the people in the car. I don't remember what happened afterwards." Jonathan said that his previous memory was up to here. "It may be a fever that caused you to lose your recent memory, Dad." Clark breathed a sigh of relief. It's good not to remember. Otherwise, when Dad remembers what he said to the Godfather before he planned to shoot the bank clerk, he will definitely blame himself and feel uncomfortable. Peter stood outside the ward, watching Clark and Jonathan talk through the wall with his perspective eyes, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Shaking his head, he walked towards Lana and Boom's ward. "I'm sorry, Teresa and Raven, I may have said some excessive words and done some extreme actions before. I'm really sorry." Before entering Lana's ward, Peter heard Lana's apology in the ward. "Is that what you really think? Lana, do you really want to wear a swimsuit and swim in the pool with your dad?" Teresa asked curiously. "I remember Dad said that Clark also dreamed of swimming with you." Teresa said something that made Lana not know how to respond. She fell silent immediately. Chapter 878. Bruce was attacked. The next day, on the huge windmill outside Patrick's farm. "Okay, Lana, you can open your eyes now." Lana, who had recovered, stood on the windmill and slowly opened her eyes. After opening her eyes, what she saw was the green fields in the distance, and the looming city skyline emerging in the distance under the clear sky. She looked down at her feet in surprise. A slight dizziness came over her. "Wow." Lana held on to Peter, unable to describe her current mood. Peter had said before that he would take her to a place. She closed her eyes, completely trusted Peter, and followed Peter out of the Talon Club. She didn't expect Peter to bring her here. "That's Metropolis." Peter pointed to the city that was faintly emerging in the distance and said to her, "From here, it is indeed a different perspective." "Yes." Lana's eyes sparkled. "It's so beautiful." She supported Peter, sat down carefully, hung her legs outside, and said to Peter, "I can't believe it, Uncle Peter, I actually came up. This is what I call a surprise." Peter looked at the endless fields in the distance and said to Lana with a smile, "Anyway, Lana, welcome back." Lana smiled a little embarrassedly. I have been apologizing to the staff of the Talon Club, as well as Lex, and Raven, and Teresa all day. Although it was not my intention, I did hurt everyone. I can't believe what I was wearing at the time, and, Lana said to Peter a little embarrassedly, I don't know why I was so brave at the time to do such a thing to you, Uncle Peter. She had heard from Teresa. Not only did she dress very openly, but she also invited Peter to swim with her. The worst thing was that she tried to ask Peter for a kiss. These are definitely behaviors that I would never normally do. It's okay, we all know that's not your intention, Lana, Peter said with a calm expression. This level is not out of line. If you knew that Boom was influenced by Nicodemus and wanted to kill Lex, you wouldn't think that what you did was out of line. Well, I want to know, Uncle Peter, did I do anything very excessive in the swimming pool that day, such as some intimate contact? Lana asked a little nervously. She wanted to ask directly whether she kissed Peter. But in the end, she changed the way to ask Peter. Keep it a secret. Peter pretended to be hesitant under Lana's expectant eyes, and finally answered her with keep it a secret. Originally, Lana was afraid that Peter would admit it, but she was also worried that he would say no. As a result, when she was entangled, she heard Peter say keep it a secret, and she was immediately discouraged. Okay, I knew that Uncle Peter, you wouldn't say it, Lana muttered a little depressed. Although she knew that Peter was teasing her on purpose, she was still a little depressed. She looked up at the beautiful fields and the silhouette of the city in the distance under the clear sky, and then at Peter standing next to her. She exhaled and quickly adjusted her mood. At least at this moment, she was happy and satisfied. Smiling at Peter, Lana sat on the platform of the windmill and admired the scenery with Peter, which she had never seen from such a high place before. After separating from Lana, Peter returned to the farm. Bomb was assembling guns with Teresa. When they saw Peter enter the room, they immediately stood up. Especially Bomb, who had been influenced by Nicodemus and wanted to kill Lex then. As expected, he was subdued by his father. After waking up, Bomb felt a little embarrassed to face Peter. After all, he almost made a big mistake. If he really killed Lex, he would probably be sent to jail. Even if he didn't go to jail, his father would be very angry. Dad, Bomb shouted at Peter with a little lack of momentum. What's the matter? Peter rubbed Bomb's hair and walked over to ask her. Are you still angry with me, Dad? I mean, I shouldn't have been so impulsive to go find Lex Luthor that day, Boom asked him with a bit of trepidation. Sometimes I like to do things that are not allowed, Dad. I know it's wrong. Boom raised her head and said with a vague look. Hearing that Boom was still worried that he was angry with her, Peter bent down and hugged Boom. Rubbing Boom's blue hair, Peter said to her, Dad has never been angry, because I know that is not the real you, but the extreme you influenced by Nicodemus. Then even if I really become Jinx, Dad, will you still love me? Will you not be angry because I become Jinx? Boom bit her lip and asked him close to Peter's arms. She could feel that since this experience, another soul seemed to have awakened in her body, a crazy and destructive girl named Jinx. Whether it's Bomb or Jinx, you are my daughter. I won't change anything. You are perfect. Peter hugged Bomb and said to her, I only want you, because you are you. Hearing Peter's words, Bomb was moved and buried her head in Peter's arms. Thank you, Dad. Hearing Peter say this, Bomb's inner entanglement completely dissipated at this time. I only want to be Jinx for you, Dad. Peter, your Jinx is a special attack on the father. Kill 2 fathers in a row. In his heart, Peter complained about Bomb's special attack on the father, and remembered the conflict between Bomb and V in the previous life. He remembered that in the last conflict between the two sides, Bomb asked V to make a choice question. As long as V was willing to kill Caitlin, he could turn back into Bomb. But how could V kill his best friend? So V proposed another option. He agreed to give up revenge and run away with Bomb. When V proposed to run away, Jinx had already wavered. This is the best answer. Hilko can survive, and you can reconcile with V. However, Hilko disagreed with this option and began to persuade Jinx. What V wants is Bomb, not Jinx. This is indeed the case. In essence, V does not accept Jinx's transformation. She just wants Bomb, not Jinx. V always keeps her perception of her sister as Bomb in childhood, the innocent, fragile girl who needs protection. She regards Bomb as a relative who needs her protection. This emotion is rooted in the experience of the two relying on each other. Jinx's transformation is not only a change of name, but also a reconstruction of personality. She gradually shows the characteristics of paranoia, violence and schizophrenia, which is completely opposite to the image of Bomb and V's memory. Under the influence of Hilco, Jinx vents her inner trauma by making explosions and attacking law enforcement officers. After witnessing these behaviors, V is shocked and terrified, and it is difficult to associate the murderer in front of her with her sister. V's values, the pursuit of justice, is in direct conflict with Jinx's destructive behavior, which makes her unable to accept Jinx's new identity. So V's final choice destroyed Bomb's last bit of reason and made her become the real Jinx. In the end, Jinx took the initiative to choose the identity of Jinx. After the death of Hilco, she destroyed the parliament by launching missiles and bid farewell to Boom. Peter still remembers a scene that impressed him deeply. Boom with tears on his face fired missiles and cried, "It was not Hilco who created Jinx, but you, V, who created Jinx." Now Peter is holding Boom. Although he is worried that Boom will really become Harley Quinn, he will not be as afraid of the crazy soul inside Boom as V was at the beginning. Because both Boom and Jinx are his daughters, he has no moral cleanliness. He must let Boom and Teresa live according to the so-called good people life trajectory he set. Teresa, who is next to him, feels a little complicated when she sees Peter holding Boom to comfort him. "I don't know if my father will treat Boom like he treats Boom after I become a witch in the future. Whether I am Teresa on the farm or Bayonetta, I will recognize myself." Teresa couldn't help but fall into wild thoughts. At the same time, Gotham. Bruce is flipping through the information about Nicodemus flower in his hand. Raven had given him this plant before, hoping that he could research an antidote. Unexpectedly, Lex Luthor's research team had researched an antidote before him. So he kept this pot of Nicodemus in the laboratory for research. Can it drive people crazy? Bruce stood up and looked at the dark red plant covered by glass, and walked over to carefully examine this strange plant. Stroking his chin, Bruce fell into deep thought. If Zor Clark were affected by this plant and fell into madness, then the whole world would be in danger. No. It shouldn't happen. The Master will always control them and not let them get out of control. Bruce quickly thought of Peter. But if one day, the Godfather is not here, and Zoo and Clark fall into madness, then who will stop them? Bruce frowned. Just as he was thinking about this, the phone rang suddenly. Wayne Company had an important meeting about to be held, and the secretary reminded him to rush over. After hanging up the phone, Bruce left the Batcave and took a helicopter to Wayne Building. Unexpectedly, just after he took off, the helicopter ran into trouble. In the clear sky, the helicopter suddenly circled violently in the air. Chapter 879 The Superman is not afraid of kryptonite. Bruce, who was sitting in the helicopter, was thrown out by a strong force in an instant. With a bang, his back hit the wall of the helicopter heavily. Beep. 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 The shrill alarm sounded in the helicopter, and the uncontrolled helicopter fell rapidly. What happened? Bruce stabilized his body and asked the pilot in charge of driving the helicopter. "The operating system has failed, sir." While trying to operate the system, the driver said to Bruce. "This may be an attack by an electronic storm." Bruce quickly guessed what caused the aircraft to malfunction. "Pull up, Hanks, I'm trying, Mr. Wayne." The driver gritted his teeth and pulled the helicopter up hard. At the same time, Bruce also took action. Sitting in the co-pilot of the helicopter, Bruce cooperated with Hanks to pull up the out-of-control helicopter. Finally, before the helicopter fell to the ground, they finally pulled the helicopter up and prevented the crash of the helicopter. After the helicopter landed in an open area nearby, Bruce pushed open the door and walked out quickly, looking at the surrounding Gotham City. The entire Gotham City seemed to have been hit by this electronic storm. The whole city was in a state of chaos due to power outage. Who is it? Bruce wondered who caused this electronic storm while using the communication device he carried with him to contact Alfred. Lex Luthor, who was also riding a helicopter like Bruce, also encountered this electronic storm. However, Lex was not in Gotham at this time, but took a helicopter from Smallville to Metropolis. Mr. Padrick, I did build a botanical garden, but I swear, I definitely did not study Nicodemus flowers, or that was not my intention, Lex explained to Peter about Nicodemus on the phone. Although Jonathan, Lana and Boom have all returned to normal, this matter is a trouble that he caused anyway. Yes, I will deal with the follow-up effects of this matter. Sorry, sir, I will take full responsibility. After speaking to Peter, Lex hung up the phone. You have great respect for Peter Padrick. I don't understand, Lex, why do you still want to investigate him? Dr. Hamilton, who was sitting in the helicopter, asked him in surprise. "No, I didn't investigate, Mr. Patrick. I just wanted to figure out one thing." Lex put away the phone. "You saw the changes that bombshell under the influence of Nicodemus. Think about it, this is just a little girl bombshell. If Azu, Clark and others lose control, what will the world become?" Dr. Hamilton nodded. "So, you trust Peter Patrick, but he doesn't trust his children. You don't know the power that Azu and others have." Lex straightened his suit and looked at the scenery outside the helicopter. "I don't know whether they are good or bad to this world." He narrowed his eyes and said to Dr. Hamilton, "Doctor, I hope you can continue to study the geology and plants of Smallwool, but you should know the boundaries. I don't want this to happen next time. This is the necessary price for experimental research." "Price? I don't want to see anyone die as a price again, especially when it involves Mr. Patrick's family. This is different from what we agreed on. We are just partners, Lex. You can't interfere with my experimental research, but I can fire you at any time." Lex was silent for a while, and suddenly said to Dr. Hamilton, "Do you know, Dr. Hamilton, my cousin used to have a cat. One day, her cat was trapped in a small tree by the Elbow River. Unable to resist my cousin's request, I climbed up the tree, but when I reached out to her, it attacked me like all trapped animals. It scratched me, so I threw it into the river." Lex looked directly at Dr. Hamilton. "It never understood until it died that I just wanted to save it. From the beginning to the end, I have been helping this cat. Now, Doctor, I am also helping you." Hearing Lex's words, Dr. Hamilton was slightly stunned, and then said to him, "You and your father, Lex, you are always good at threatening others." "I am not threatening. After all, accidents can happen at any time, right?" As soon as Lex finished speaking, the helicopter suddenly shook. Then the helicopter fell down as if it was out of control. "Accidents are indeed inevitable, Mr. Luther," the helicopter pilot shouted to Luther. "The helicopter has a malfunction. We are in big trouble." Swoosh, the helicopter fell towards the ground at a very fast speed. Lex, who lost his balance, grabbed the handle inside the helicopter, and an unbelievable look appeared on his face. "What's going on?" "The accident," he said, "does not include being buried with a helicopter." Dr. Hamilton also grabbed the seat next to him with a look of horror. The helicopter suddenly swung just now, and he was almost thrown out. "Emergency call. Emergency call. This is Lex, feeding number 6. We have lost power." Without bothering to talk to Lex, the pilot used the radio to call for help from the headquarters. But what made him desperate was that the infinite power seemed to be interfered with by something, and there was no response to his call for help. "Damn it!" Feeling the plane falling, Lex cursed inwardly, grabbed the handle at hand, and shouted to the pilot, pull up quickly." At this time, a building appeared in front of him, and it was about to hit it. Lex shouted at the pilot, "Pull up. You fucking pull, we are going to hit it." Boom. As soon as the pilot finished speaking, the helicopter crashed into the building with a deafening sound. The tailwind first hit the steel frame of the building's facade, and sparks were like exploding fireworks. A piece of propeller fragments flew past Lex's ear and hit a crack in the cabin wall. The pilot's head hit the dashboard heavily, and blood spurted out instantly. The feeling of weightlessness suddenly came, and Lex felt his internal organs being tightened by invisible hands. With a bang, his back hit the locker hard. The bandages and injections in the medical box fell out at once. Boom! A more violent explosion sounded, and the main rotor of the helicopter slashed into the room of the building. The crystal chandelier exploded into countless fragments in the airwave and burst out. Lex heard a clear bone fracture in his left arm. The seat belt was broken, and he hit the roof of the cabin like a baseball flying straight. The sharp metal section rubbed against the corner of his forehead, and Lex felt the warm blood instantly blurring the vision of his right eye. The pungent smell of fuel leakage penetrated into his nose, and the instrument panel burst out dazzling electric sparks. Falling from the roof of the cabin, Lex was then thrown out of the helicopter heavily. Bang! Lex fell heavily to the ground, gasping for breath. He wanted to stand up, but found that he had no strength. He tried to raise his head and looked at the pilot and Dr. Hamilton in the helicopter, and found that both of them had fallen into coma. And the helicopter crashed into what seemed to be the building of the Luther Group. He also saw the words Luther Group on the wall next to him, as well as a photo of him hung on the wall by his father. Damn it, Lex cursed while covering his injured part. He looked at a broken mobile phone on the ground next to him, and stretched out his hand to get the phone, but found that he couldn't reach it at all. What is this? What's going on? After trying for a while, he still couldn't reach the phone. Lex let out a sigh of frustration and calmed down to figure out what happened. Why did the helicopter suddenly lose power? Lex was thinking about what happened when he suddenly heard a cry for help from behind the helicopter. "Save me, Mr. Luther." Hearing the cry for help, Lex used all his strength to stand up, picked up the phone, and staggered towards the direction where the sound came from. As a result, he saw a man on the tail of the helicopter hanging outside the building, holding the tail tightly and struggling, as if he might fall at any time. The other party was an employee of the Luther group who was sitting in the helicopter before. When the employee saw Lex, he immediately asked for help. "Please save me, Mr. Lex." Lex wanted to save people, but he couldn't even stand. Just as he was thinking about whether he could find a rope to throw over, he suddenly saw a figure flying from a distance. "What is this?" Seeing Superman wearing red underwear outside and a cape breaking the glass and entering the building, Lex showed a surprised expression on his face. He thought the other party was here to save people, but to his surprise, Superman did not choose to rescue the people hanging outside, but flew away without even looking. "Ah!" The unlucky employee screamed and could no longer hold on, and fell directly from the tail wing. Seeing this scene, Lex frowned. Why is this guy different from the battle in Metropolis? As Lex watched, Superman walked directly to the safe area of Luther Group. With a bang, he broke the metal wall and took out a piece of green kryptonite from the safe. Superman took the kryptonite collected by Lex's father directly in his hand. Holding the green meteorite, Superman turned around and looked at the stunned Lex, then turned and left. Is this Superman? Lex couldn't believe it. Why is he completely different from the Superman he knew? He had seen Superman appear before when fighting General Zod, and he also knew that this guy was saving people under the banner of a superhero. Why did he not save him now and even steal the green kryptonite in the safe? Chapter 880, Power Outage in the City, Invasion of New Forces. Patrick's farm. Star-Lord was complaining to Peter about the recent music problems. The music these days is terrible, empty and boring, just some soulless pop music, more superficial than a mouthful of spit on a hot sidewalk. Even country music sounds more like pop music. Star-Lord had just come back from the music store and found that the recent songs were all some messed up songs that he couldn't understand. Dad, you don't know, the worst thing is that those lonely and sad songs have disappeared, such as My Wife Left Me, My Truck Broke Down, and All I Have Left Is My Dog, My Shotgun and the Blue Hills of Kentucky. Peter fell silent after hearing the song title. Star-Lord said, "What kind of messed up songs are you listening to? You have good taste in songs, Star-Lord," Azu said as he walked down from upstairs and said to Star-Lord, "The only songs left now are Barbie dolls who grew up on honey, singing about ex-boyfriends with their twisted nasal voices." Azu said that he also hated the current songs. "I still like Paradise, Smoking Cowboys, Led Zeppelin, Johnny Cash, 9 Inch Nails, and Taylor's songs are good too." Peter looked at Zu, who was wearing sunglasses and looked very stylish, frowned and asked him, "Why are you wearing sunglasses in the room, John?" "My eyes are injured, Dad." "What injuries?" Hearing the other party's injury, Peter immediately stood up. "Don't worry, Dad, it's just overusing your eyes." Zu went to the Metropolis last night to rob a group of drug dealers. Of course, in the process, violence is inevitable, so Zu's eyes became a little red due to frequent use of thermal vision. Afraid that Peter would know that he robbed drug dealers in Metropolis for money, Zu immediately changed the subject and asked Peter, "Dad, has the Nicodemus flower been dealt with? Next time you care about your sisters, you should care in advance, John." Instead of waiting until it's over to ask, Peter said to him with an unhappy expression, "Also, what have you been doing recently? Why haven't I seen you?" "I'm hanging out in Metropolis," Zu said with an embarrassed expression. "I still have some papers to deal with in college. I think, Dad, you should teach Lex a lesson." It's obvious that this guy made the noise. Zu changed the subject and said, "I think Boom did the right thing. Although I don't agree with shooting this guy, it's okay to scare him." "Boom is not to scare him." Peter shook his head, sat down with a coffee cup, and said to Zu, "Weren't you very familiar with Lex when you were a child?" "No, we weren't. The bald guy only liked to play with Clark when he was a child," Zu said with a bit of a bad mood. When Lex came to the farm before, he liked to play with Clark, which made Zu very upset when he was a child, so much so that he still holds a grudge against her. At the same time, Teresa in the upstairs room was also telling her good friend Joan of Arc about this experience. After hearing Teresa's story about how Peter snatched the gun from Bomb and saved Lex and ended everything, Joan of Arc felt a little emotional. Sure enough, it was Mr. Patrick who solved everything in the end. Just like last time, if it weren't for Mr. Patrick, Gloria would probably have been killed by the fallen angel. Thinking about the experience she had with Peter before, Joan of Arc suddenly wanted to run away from home. The two chatted for a while, and Joan of Arc talked about her experiences these days. I want to visit my biological father's grave. I mentioned it to my adoptive mother a few days ago, Joan of Arc said to Teresa with some melancholy. My mother looked up from the kitchen table at that time. This happens to her once a month. She lowers her head and counts the pile of bills accumulated in front of her. Teresa asked curiously, what happened next? Did she agree? No, my mother didn't say anything. She just gave me a weird and annoyed look. Other girls at school always make fun of me, Joan of Arc said uncomfortably on the other end of the phone. I can't imagine why this is happening. I guess it's because they all know that I was adopted, so I want to go see my deceased biological parents. Listening to Joan of Arc's complaints, Teresa put the Shiba Inu cat she was holding on the bed and comforted her like Peter did. I don't understand why anyone would make fun of someone whose biological parents have passed away. Joan of Arc, don't take it to heart, but they say I'm an orphan. Some say my parents left me because I was too ugly. Some say you don't even know who he is. They say I'm ominous. Hearing this, Teresa's eyebrows twisted together like knitting. Joan, Daddy once told me, children will always find a way to make fun of you. Anything is possible, your name, your clothes, the way you talk, the way you eat. It just means that they are inferior inside, and they try to make themselves feel better by passing on their inner weakness to others. So Daddy's advice is, don't take it to heart. Soon she said a little depressed, well, it's certainly easier to say than to do. It's okay. Thank you for your comfort, Aurora. Joan continued to tell her what happened next on the phone. I said, I still want to see his grave. Mom said, no, you can't. Her words were short and crisp. I said, then I should be able to see his grave. Why don't we go to his grave and put a bunch of flowers? When did he die? I didn't pray for him. I don't even know his. Joan of Arc paused here. Then she said in a low voice, then Mom jumped up like a spring. She said, don't worry about him, he's dead. He didn't take care of himself. Death will come to those who refuse to take responsibility. Elaine. Then Mom stretched out a short finger and poked me in the face. She said, if you say one more word, Elaine, you can't think of eating before you go to bed tonight. I will lock you in the room and won't let you go out. Teresa listened to her good friend's story. She could imagine what Joan of Arc's expression was at that time. Joan of Arc must have been so scared that she forgot to close her mouth, and tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. In the end, Joan of Arc might just nod. Her mother also nodded in response. Then the woman returned to her endless bills. Jean ran upstairs and burst into tears. This is the process in the books she has read. All the children and mothers who quarreled with their parents and were scolded by their parents had the same ending. Thinking of this, Teresa suddenly felt that she was much happier than her bestie. She had a father who loved her and brothers and sisters. Although the personalities and abilities of these brothers and sisters were a bit strange. Azu didn't look like a good person, he was a fake smiling boy. Star-Lord was like a gangster who was addicted to music, shouting about losing weight every day but never taking action. Loki was a god of mischief, looking like an evil god every day. Sister Raven often took care of herself, but when it came to her father's affairs, she would look at herself with the expression of a chicken protecting food. Mark looked a little silly, but he was also the most normal person. Boom and V, one was brainless and the other was unhappy. Tom looked very sunny, but she always felt that he had some yin energy. Boom said that Tom also liked to write a diary. Well, people who write diaries are generally thoughtful. Horace looks steady and handsome, and often takes care of himself, but he seems to have a bit of paranoia, always calling Daddy Emperor Daddy. After commenting on everyone in her mind, Teresa felt that she was the most normal. She was about to tell the depressed Joan of Arc on the other end of the phone to come to her house for a few days, but her phone suddenly lost signal. Hello? Hello? Joan of Arc, after shouting a few times without getting a response, Teresa looked at the phone in her hand in confusion. The phone showed that there was no signal. At the same time, there was a power outage in the room. Holding the phone, Teresa walked downstairs quickly. Dad, your phone has no signal, and there is a power outage at home. Peter, who was talking to Azu and Star-Lord in the living room, also felt the impact of an electromagnetic wave. Yes, Smallville is probably out of power now. He stood up and looked towards Metropolis in the distance. What happened in Metropolis? At the same time, the female vixen working in the zoo in Metropolis is turning into a superhero to catch criminals. Looking at the tall and strong bald criminal at her feet, the female Fox McBee called the police station. She contacted a familiar police officer of the Metropolitan Police Department and said directly, "Officer Williams, I caught Sass. He is the guy who played 3 in a row on his arm and cut a cut every time he killed someone. Why did he do this?" "I don't know." McBee grabbed Sass and continued, "I will never understand the logic of a madman, zzz." Before she finished speaking, a piercing noise suddenly came from the headset. Her ears were stinging from the noise, and she immediately took off the headset. "What the hell?" Looking at the headset, McBee showed a puzzled expression on her face. The next second, a black shadow rushed over. With a bang, McBee was hit backwards heavily. Enduring the pain, she staggered to her feet and wanted to see who attacked her. "Behind you." McBee turned around immediately after hearing the voice, but was punched in the chin again and fell heavily to the ground. Ahem. McBee coughed up blood and tried to stand up, but a rope shining with golden light entangled her. She vaguely saw 2 figures coming. Who is she? The people here call her a female fox. Female fox. Barely usable. Chapter 881. The Justice League begins its first assembly. McBee made a painful sound while covering her wound. In her blurred vision, she saw a woman with black hair and a graceful figure walking towards her. The other person's appearance was somewhat similar to the Wonder Woman she was familiar with. She was Wonder Woman? How is it possible? McBee let out more breath and murmured in a low voice. "No. I must tell Peter this information." McBee gritted her teeth and pressed the emergency call button in the communication device she carried with her. The sand from the salmon artifact that Peter gave her was put into the communication device. The emergency call device with magical power designed by Zatanna can activate the magic of the sand and transmit the information to Peter by pressing the button. Bang! At the moment McBee pressed the button, her body was hit hard again. McBee, who was hit by this punch, lost consciousness instantly. The moment McBee pressed the communicator after being attacked, Peter received a message from the other party. Padwick Farm. Peter was looking at the metropolis in the distance with a frown on his face when he suddenly sensed the magical fluctuations of the sand. Realizing that this was the sand he had given to Vixen, his expression suddenly became serious. The sand transmitted the information that McBee wanted to convey to him. "Dad, what's wrong?" Seeing that Peter's expression became a little strange, Star-Lord asked worriedly beside him. As the entire Smallville power outage occurred, Star-Lord also noticed something wrong. This was not like an ordinary power outage. McBee was in danger. She was attacked. Hearing Peter's words, Azu narrowed his eyes. Attack? Who can attack Vixen? Although Azu didn't like black people, he had to admit that Vixen, a black person who had worked on the farm for several years, was not an ordinary person. The necklace can allow Vixen to obtain the abilities of any one or several animals, including but not limited to the telepathy of the gorilla Grodd, the flying ability of the falcon, the swimming ability of the dolphin, and the sprinting ability of the cheetah. In addition, she also has the echolocation of the bat, the climbing ability of the spider, the jumping ability of the cricket, the strangulation power of the python, the strength of the elephant, the regeneration ability of the earthworm, and so on. In addition, during the years on the farm, her father also taught her some rune magic and fighting techniques. With this level of power, the Vixen McBee is definitely not something that an ordinary person can defeat. We don't know yet. The picture she sent only vaguely showed a man and a woman, Peter said, while casting his eyes on Star-Lord, Azu and Teresa who were present. Star-Lord, go to Metropolis to inform Siri and Raven and the others. Teresa, you stay at home with Persephone, Siri and Raven. Boom. V and Mark went to Metropolis for shopping and were supposed to be back in the afternoon. But now Metropolis is suspected of being invaded by unknown forces, so Peter asked Star-Lord to go to Metropolis to bring Raven and the others. What about me? Azu saw that Peter had not arranged for him, and hurriedly asked him. Go to Gotham to contact Bruce and see if he knows about the situation. Peter was talking to Azu when Horace, Tom, Loki and the others walked out of the farm. What happened? Emperor Dad, Horace was just in his own secret base in the backyard, studying the improvement of power armor and bolter, but he didn't expect the power to go out. Confused, he asked Peter, did something happen? We don't know yet. Peter asked Horace, Loki and Tom to stay in the farm. He planned to go to the place where McBee disappeared to investigate. Dad, after giving all the instructions, Peter was about to leave, and the hesitant Teresa called him. Teresa, wearing pink glasses, bit her lip and said to him, Dad, you have to pay attention to safety. If you encounter anything dangerous, you must run away by yourself. Seeing his daughter's worried expression, Peter smiled. He walked over and picked up Teresa. Don't worry, Dad. Don't forget, Dad is the god of sleep, but even gods can. Teresa was a little speechless. She wanted to say that even gods could die, just like the Archangel Michael before. But after thinking about it, she felt that saying such words was a bit unlucky, so she closed her mouth in time. Dad, can you agree to one of my requests? Teresa looked at him expectantly and asked. What request? This. She handed the Shiba Inu doll in her hand to Peter. This is my patron saint. She once fought with me when we were fighting against those angels. Now let her accompany you, so that you, Dad, will not be in danger. Even if you are in danger, it can protect you. Hearing what Teresa said, Peter was slightly stunned, looking at the Shiba Inu in her hand that she was about to hand over to him. Since this is your patron saint, Dad certainly can't take it away. Let it protect you. Peter touched Teresa's hair with some emotion. Although this little witch grew up to be an iceberg queen, she is now a warm little cotton jacket. But, Teresa wanted to continue, but Peter gently scratched her nose. Don't you believe in Dad? No, I believe in Dad, more than anyone else. Teresa clenched her fists, and finally did not insist on handing the Shiba Inu doll to Peter. Daddy, Teresa said to him hesitantly, can you bring Joan back? I was talking to her on the phone before. I was afraid that she would be in danger. Joan is very unhappy at home. She wants to escape. If she encounters any danger outside. So, Daddy, can you bring her? Of course. Peter rubbed the little girl's head and agreed to bring Joan back. It's just a matter of convenience. Gotham. Seeing Gotham in a power outage and the whole city in chaos, Bruce immediately realized that an unknown force might have invaded Gotham. Running quickly to the nearby parking lot, Bruce took out his mobile phone and found that the mobile phone could no longer receive any signal. With a frown on his face, he ran to the temporary room in the parking lot. Bruce set up temporary rooms in different areas of Gotham, which contained transportation vehicles and various weapons. This was a temporary base he set up to prevent a Batcave from being destroyed. Walking to a wall, Bruce punched open the fire glass window, took out the fire axe inside, and then put his finger on the slightly hidden fingerprint reader. As Bruce's fingerprint was identified, the wall of the underground parking lot in front of him slowly retreated, revealing the room inside. Bruce walked quickly into the room, opened a box in the corner of the room, and took out a bat uniform inside. After putting on the Batman uniform, Bruce sat on the Batmobile. With a boom, the roar of the Batmobile sounded. Bruce rushed out on the Batmobile. Now all communications have been destroyed. He can't contact Alfred or Smallville's godfather, so now he can only use the simplest means of transportation to investigate what happened in Gotham. Being able to control the entire Gotham's power and communication systems is not something that ordinary villains can do. Driving a motorcycle and speeding on the streets of Gotham, Bruce immediately thought of Cyborg. Although the Justice League has not yet been formed in this world because of Peter, Bruce has already been to the Injustice world. Using the experience of the Injustice world, he has already become familiar with other members of the Justice League. Cyborg's brain has been transformed into a quantum computer, which keeps pace with the internet 24 hours a day. In addition, he has a mother box from Apocalypse installed in his body, which gives him the ability to use the roaring tunnel for transmission. This high-tech ability can give Cyborg the ability to control information computers and networks. As long as Cyborg is found, the mother box on Cyborg can be used to open the network and turn on the power device. Only in this way can the Sky Eye system he made in the Batcave work. Bruce has always attached great importance to intelligence operations. When the situation is unclear, he is good at fighting with an intelligence advantage. After defeating Steppenwolf in the last battle, Cyborg worked at Star Labs. I hope he is still there now. Half an hour later, Bruce quickly arrived at Star Labs. Batman, in the laboratory, Cyborg was surprised to see Bruce visiting. Long time no see, Cyborg. Bruce, wearing a batsuit, stretched out his hand to him. Yes, I haven't seen you and Mr. Padrick since I separated last time. It's indeed been a long time, Cyborg shook hands with Bruce and led him into his room. You should know about the electromagnetic attack involving the entire United States. Cyborg, can you tell me what happened? Bruce came up and asked Cyborg what happened. Cyborg shrugged his shoulders. Actually, I don't know what happened either. I only know that this large-scale electromagnetic attack is no longer something that our current technology on Earth can do. You can't judge it either. Hearing the other party say this, Bruce's face showed a complicated look. Is it that now he can only ask the Godfather for help? Shaking his head, Bruce, who didn't want to involve Peter, asked Cyborg, can you contact other members of the Justice League now? Justice League? Cyborg's face showed a puzzled look. What is that? Sorry, not the Justice League. It should be the Flash, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. Can you contact them? Cyborg glanced at his body and whispered, it should be possible. The mother box gives me the ability to control computers and other electronic devices in the outside world. Even if the communication is paralyzed now, I should be able to do it. Chapter 882, Unexpected Visitors, Battle of Three Bodies. A few hours later. Except for Aquaman who could not be contacted, Flash, Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman all rushed to Star Labs. Diana was originally staying in Washington, entangled with a guy called Cheetah. This woman is a British born in Idaho, USA, with many pseudonyms. Each of her identities is wanted by the police for numerous crimes. Because of her obsession with ancient artifacts, she once became a museum employee as Barbara Minerva. When Diana was investigating a missing case, she met Cheetah. As a result, this woman's purpose was not pure. She was rescued by Diana in the museum terror attack and took this opportunity to approach Diana and become a friend with her. Later, Diana learned that the other party's real purpose was to use this relationship to mix into a magical artifact storage room of a government department. Finally, there, Cheetah stole the god-killing blade possessed by the Cheetah goddess of the Sen tribe. In order to obtain this power, she stabbed herself in the chest with this sharp blade and became Cheetah. This woman has the strength, endurance and speed of a cheetah, as well as all the senses, claws and fangs of a cheetah. Diana even suspected that Cheetah's claws could pierce the skin of Kryptonians. Those she bites will be infected and become half human and half cheetah, and will completely lose their own thinking, with only killing in their minds. Diana originally planned to stay at Peter's farm and be intimate with her boyfriend for a few months. Yes, in her eyes, Peter is her real boyfriend and she is Peter's real girlfriend. As for other women, Kara, Zatanna, Martha, White Wolf and the like, they are all evil. She is the orthodox one. But she didn't expect that Cheetah was quite difficult to deal with, and her fighting power could even be said to be better than Vixen. It took her a lot of effort to catch this woman and put her in prison on Paradise Island. After Washington learned that the United States was attacked by an unknown attack, she originally wanted to rush to Patrick's farm, but she didn't expect to receive information from Cyborg. So, Bruce, do you suspect that an alien force has invaded the Earth? Diana asked him with a frown. Or worse, Bruce folded his hands in front of his chest and said to Diana and the others, remember the Dark Lord at the other end of the tunnel that opened when we defeated Steppenwolf last time? Is it him? Cyborg immediately thought of the man with a gorilla face and a powerful aura. When Diana heard Bruce mention Darkseid, her expression suddenly became serious. She was on the scene with Peter and cut off Steppenwolf's head with a sword. Steppenwolf's head flew into the transmission tunnel and was crushed by the Dark Lord at the other end. She later heard Peter say that Darkseid was the most powerful and evil supervillain in the DC universe. The other party showed amazing fighting power at a young age. At the age of 8, he dared to start an ancient war with the gods. And Darkseid has a steel body that is not inferior to Clark's, or even stronger, and his body can grow endlessly, which gives him a huge advantage in strength and size. Its terrible Omega rays are even more killer, which can kill the enemy directly. Thinking of the terrifying Dark Lord, Diana frowned and said to everyone, if it is him, we must contact Peter. Only Peter and his children can deal with the Dark Lord. Bruce walked to the experimental table, supported his hands on it, and said to everyone, this is just one of my guesses. In addition, if it is him, I think our world will be attacked by the demons first, but it is impossible to be so peaceful now. A puzzled expression appeared on his face. That's true, Diana nodded. If it was Darkseid, he would not have to do such a thing. He would have just sent a large army. Just as she was lost in thought, Cyborg suddenly felt something strange in his body. No, it's not right. Cyborg covered his mechanical heart and took 2 steps back, with a shocked and unbelievable expression on his face. Flash and Green Lantern looked at him in surprise. What's wrong? Cyborg, boom. The next second, Cyborg's body made a huge roar, and countless mechanical flesh and blood separated from his body. He screamed in pain and watched a piece of machinery separate from his body along with his flesh and blood. Victor, Bruce, who saw this scene, shouted in shock. Hal, the Green Lantern, wanted to help, but in a hurry, he didn't know what to do. Barry, the Flash, stood by with his mouth wide open, staring at the changes in Cyborg with a dull look. The mechanical arm separated from his body, and Cyborg felt that his left arm suddenly did not belong to him. The mechanical arm automatically released the safety lock, and the 5 fingers twisted into claws and inserted into his eye socket. The picture sent back by the visual sensor began to flash a blood-red warning. A ball of fire exploded from his elbow joint, and then the silver-gray tied knot at the metal plating. In the horrified eyes of everyone, Cyborg's spine was pulled out and suspended one by one, as if it was being torn apart. Cyborg's vocal cords roared in pain. The last thing to be devoured was the heart in his left chest. The metal-like substance wrapped around the beating flesh and blood, and countless catheters were inserted into the heart. Then Cyborg's face began to disintegrate from the lower jaw. His electronic eyes flashed signals frantically, and countless mechanical fragments were decomposed and reconstructed from his body. Shit, Hal, who was watching this scene, didn't care whether it would work or not, and directly used the Green Lantern ring to release a soft light to wrap around Cyborg. He was afraid that if this continued, Cyborg's body would completely decompose. Plop! The sound of Cyborg wrapped in the Green Lantern ring gradually became smaller, and finally fell to the ground. The room fell into deathly silence. The 4 of them looked at each other, and none of them could figure out what was going on. Taking a deep breath, Bruce squatted down and checked Cyborg's body. Victor, are you okay? Click. 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 Just as Bruce was about to check what happened to Cyborg, Cyborg's body suddenly moved. Then, in the surprised eyes of everyone, Cyborg stood up directly. At this time, his mechanical body reorganized, and his face turned into a hideous mechanical skull. The flashing red eyes shot out a fierce light, and Cyborg raised his arm. With a bang, Cyborg's hand cannon directly blasted Hal, who was unable to react. Bang! Hal slammed heavily on the wall, causing cracks on the wall behind him. Cyborg's sudden attack directly stunned Diana, Bruce and Barry. Diana drew out the Vulcan sword and frowned at him. Are you crazy, Cyborg? Cyborg laughed hoarsely when Diana pointed the Vulcan sword at him. I'm not Cyborg anymore, I'm Grid. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and pressed the switch on the mechanical arm. As the mother box exerted its power, a portal opened in the laboratory with a boom. Then, in the shocked eyes of everyone, several figures slowly walked out. The first one to come out was Superman, who looked exactly like Clark. The other party was wearing a red and blue Superman uniform, with a faint red glow in his eyes, looking full of evil. The only difference from Superman was that he didn't have an S on his chest, but a U. Standing on the left side of Superman was a guy wearing a bat uniform similar to Bruce's. The brass metal goggles the other person wore looked like the pupils of an owl. Although the uniform looked somewhat similar to his own, the mask on the other person's face was not a bat style, but an owl style. Standing on the right side of Superman was a woman with black hair, a sexy body and a mysterious feeling. The other person looked somewhat similar to Wonder Woman. Her armor looked like Amazon mithril, with thorn-like chains wrapped around her waist and holding a truth chain. Wonder Woman, who was standing aside, was stunned when she saw the woman who looked like herself. In addition to these 3 people who looked similar to the 3 giants of the Justice League, there were 3 others who came out of the portal. The man wearing a pointed helmet who looked somewhat like the Flash, with a red tights full of cracks, looked like a speedster. Standing next to the suspected Flash was a man dressed similarly to Green Lantern Hal. Like Hal, the other person wore a Green Lantern ring and looked at Hal and the others with caution. The last guy was a man with a skull on his head. Bruce looked at the burning skull and immediately thought of the firestorm in his own world. Could it be that all those guys were members of the Justice League from a parallel world? Bruce stared at the guy who suddenly came out of the portal and fell into deep thought. Diana held the Vulcan sword and looked at the uninvited guests of unknown power and amazing momentum. She gritted her teeth and asked them, "Who are you? Did you turn Cyborg into this?" "No, it's not a change, it's that his personality has completely disappeared," right? Grid, the owl man who looked like Batman, cast his eyes on Cyborg and asked. You're right, now I'm Grid, not Cyborg. Cyborg slowly walked towards the uninvited guests and stood behind them. Hey, Atom Girl, come here. Just as Bruce was thinking about the identities of these people, the guy with a pointy head among the mysterious visitors waved his hand in the air in front of him. Then Bruce and others were shocked to see that a pea-sized woman suddenly appeared in the air that was originally empty. The woman in a red uniform jumped into his hands. Well done, Atom Girl, you have successfully completed the task, Pointy Head said to the woman who could change size. Looking at the existence called Atom Girl appearing from the air, Bruce instantly understood why Cyborg was invaded just now. It must be the work of this Atom Girl who can change size. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 883 Night Owl and Batman. No matter who you are, this is not the place for you to run wild. Diana held the Vulcan sword, looking ready to strike at any time. Seeing that Diana looked like she might strike at any time, the Green Lantern in Mysterio immediately raised the glowing Green Lantern ring in his hand and pointed it at Diana and her group. And the Green Lantern had a terrified expression. It seemed that he was afraid that Diana would make a move, so he was ready to strike first. No, don't move, the Green Lantern in Mysterio raised the ring and shouted at Diana and her group. Calm down, Power Ring. Firestorm, whose head was on fire, said to the frightened Power Ring in silence, this is a fascinating world, not dangerous at all, at least not for us, so don't be nervous, the Power Ring said to him nervously, but Deathstorm, before the Power Ring finished speaking, Firestorm, also known as Deathstorm, said to him, if you continue to panic, you will only waste the energy of the ring in vain. Don't be like a coward and let people look down on you. Among the mysterious visitors, a woman who looked a bit like Wonder Woman looked at Diana with interest. Superman, with a letter U printed on his chest, also looked at Bruce and others. He turned his head and said to the woman next to him, they are really like us, Super Queen, just like our lost allies. As he said that, he took a step forward, with a faint red light flashing in his eyes. We are the Crime Syndicate, Superman said coldly to Bruce and the others, we came to this world to rule this world, and you are our last obstacle. I am Superman. A woman who looked like Wonder Woman stood up and said, I am Super Queen. Bruce's counterpart crossed his arms and introduced himself to everyone. I am Night Owl. Several other counterparts of the Justice League also introduced themselves one after another. The counterpart of Flash is called Johnny Quick. The counterpart of Green Lantern is called the Power Ring. The counterpart of Firestorm, whose head is on fire, is called Deathstorm. You want to rule our world? Hearing the other party brazenly say that he wanted to rule his own world, Diana sneered. You will never know who the most powerful beings in this world are. As long as they find your trace, they can easily crush you to death. Diana expressed her contempt for this group of people with disdain. Yes, I know him. Night Owl's hoarse voice came from the owl mask. He looked at Diana and said slowly, don't worry, we will deal with him after we have dealt with you. Night Owl had been lurking on Earth for many days. During this process, he collected intelligence about this world. As a result, he found a man who could not be avoided no matter what, Peter Patrick. This man had appeared in the Battle of Metropolis. In addition, many superheroes had dreamed of the appearance of this man in another If-World line. Although he was very curious about Peter's identity, he did not take it too seriously. The biggest enemy he was worried about was still Superman in this world. We will deal with Superman after we have dealt with you. He clapped his hands and Deathstorm brought a person in. Firestorm, Bruce and Diana were awe-stunned when they saw the other party holding the Firestorm of their own world in his hand. Firestorm was controlled by Deathstorm and could not move at all. He could only cast his angry eyes on several people. Deathstorm grabbed Firestorm's hand, shook his head and said, how foolish. You actually shared your abilities with others. The shared abilities Deathstorm was talking about were the fusion of Ronnie Raymond and Professor Stein. Due to an unexpected explosion, the two of them merged into one. Since Ronnie was conscious at the time of the explosion, he became the dominant one who could control his body, while Professor Stein became a voice in his consciousness. Ronnie then realized that the explosion gave him extraordinary abilities. He had flaming hair and could emit fusion decomposition waves from his hands that could pass through solids and change things by reorganizing atoms. The two adopted the nickname Firestorm, became heroes, and began to fight to protect their city from villains. Taunted by Deathstorm, the excited Firestorm continued to increase his output power, trying to break free from the other party's control. He knew that the other party brought him here, and there must be something wrong. Deathstorm also noticed Firestorm's actions, and his hands immediately released a decomposition energy. The red flames wrapped in energy instantly swept Firestorm and released a combined matrix of Ronnie and Professor Stein. Firestorm's ability is to rearrange the atomic and subatomic structure of inorganic matter. Through this ability, subatomic particles can be rearranged to create objects of equal mass but different atomic characteristics. More precisely, he can change the matrix of objects. But now, the Firestorm matrix that he used to change the matrix of objects was instantly destroyed by Deathstorm. With a deafening explosion, the matrix that was released in Firestorm's body suddenly roared to form a ball of energy that swept the entire space. Firestorm, with flames shooting out of his eyes and roaring in pain, was constantly surging with energy overflowing from his body. The flames and the energy that exuded strong coercion, the matrix that spread outward, directly absorbed everyone in. Damn it, realizing that the gang of the crime syndicate seemed to want to use the matrix of Firestorm that they had captured to trap several people. Bruce, gritting his teeth and persisting, looked towards a sewer not far away. Boom, the energy matrix of Firestorm exploded violently in the space laboratory. When the energy stabilized, the figures of Bruce, Diana, Cyborg, Flash and Green Lantern had disappeared. After dealing with the members of the Justice League, the members of the crime syndicate did not stay at the scene and turned around and left. Their steps to rule the world have just begun. After everyone left, Night Owl, the Batman from another world, walked to the place where Bruce had stood without saying a word. Crouching down, he picked up the broken corner of the bat mask on the ground, and a complicated expression appeared on his face. Bruce whispered Bruce's name, and his eyes became gentler in an instant. Although Night Owl is also a member of the crime syndicate from a parallel world. But he is different from the others. He is not simply obedient to Superman and wants to occupy this Earth. He has always had his own intentions. In Night Owl's world, his name is Thomas Wayne Jr. He is the eldest son of the Wayne's family, the eldest son born to Thomas Wayne Sr. and Martha Wayne. In Gotham City, Thomas' parents, the Waynes and his younger brother Bruce, all died in that alley. Thomas was deeply saddened by the death of his parents, especially Bruce, who was his favorite person and could not accept the loss of his younger brother. After that, he began to practice everywhere and named himself Night Owl after the predator that left a scar on his eye. After returning to Gotham City, Night Owl planned to bring justice to the city for his dead family, and he would live with principles and would never kill anyone. He would not use inferior means. He wanted all criminals to be punished by law. However, when he found Harvey, the real murderer who killed his parents, and planned to send Harvey to prison, he learned the unexpected truth. His parents, the Waynes, killed Gordon's son because of a power dispute. Gordon hired Harvey to kill the Waynes and Bruce in revenge. Night Owl smiled after learning all this, because now he has let it go. Harvey begged Night Owl, "Please let me go. You don't kill people, right? You have principles." But Night Owl smiled and replied, "It turns out that principle is irrelevant, everything is irrelevant." Then he killed Harvey. After that, Thomas began to maintain his power and dominance over Gotham by posing as Night Owl. He used this disguise to create fear in his enemies, blackmailing, threatening and bribing every important person in Gotham City until the city was basically his. Bruce, you should understand that in order for ordinary people to have power, they must gain power through order systems. And then we must establish and maintain these systems through fear. After whispering to his brother in the other world, Night Owl stood up and slowly walked away from the laboratory, which had become a mess. Good luck, Bruce. At the same time, Azrael had already arrived in Gotham. At this time, the whole of Gotham was in chaos due to the failure of the communication system and electricity. Azrael immediately flew to Wayne Manor and tried to contact Bruce. As a result, after entering Wayne Manor, he found that Bruce was not there. The young master lost contact after he took a helicopter to Wayne Group. Butler Alfred said to him with a worried look on his face. "Is that so?" Azu frowned and cast his eyes to the dark sky outside. The sky was gloomy, and it seemed that a thunderstorm was brewing. "Where does he often go?" Azu asked Alfred. Alfred thought about it and told him a few places Bruce often went. The last place where the young master contacted me was near the Gotham Police Department. Gotham Police Department. Nodding, Azu said goodbye to Alfred, left Wayne Manor, and rushed to the Gotham Police Department. With a bang, Azu fell heavily from the sky to the ground. The Gotham Police Department not far away was also in chaos, surrounded by protesting crowds. Just as Azu was about to search for Bruce's trace nearby, a voice came from behind. Are you Homelander? Chapter 884, Azu kills the Sea King. Azu heard someone calling his name and slowly turned around. Standing behind him was the Sea King, who was wearing scale armor, holding a trident and exuding a powerful aura. No, that's not right. Azu soon realized that the other party was not the Sea King. The Sea King in his own world was not so mature. And the Sea King in front of him was a little different from the Arthur he knew. Are you the Sea King? Azu pinched his waist and asked the other party with a breath. No, I'm the Sea Overlord. The Sea Overlord. Azu was slightly stunned when he heard the name, and then a sarcastic smile appeared on his face. I know guys like you, such as a guy named Deep Sea and Aquaman. What you have in common is that you are good at playing with fish. After sneering at the other party for a few times, Azu asked him, the city's power outage and communication cuts are all your fault. Yes, your entire world is about to be taken over by the crime syndicate. The Justice League is dead. We are the crime syndicate. We come from another world. We used to be the masters there until the humans there betrayed us, so we destroyed it. This world belongs to us. As long as you surrender, you will also have a share in this world. The Sea Overlord looked down at him with an arrogant expression. He knew that this world had a superhero called Homelander. However, because there was too little information, the specific abilities were not clear. He only learned the names of these superheroes from Night Owl, and planned to kill them if he failed to recruit them. Crime Syndicate. Azu was stunned when he heard the name. Have you heard of Patrick's Justice League? Zu asked him with a gloomy face. No, I haven't. Very good. Today you will see how Homelander, one of the three giants of Patrick's Justice League, will kill you. With a bang, Zu raised his fist and punched the opponent into the sky. With a crack, a thunder sounded in the sky. Raindrops began to fall with thunder. The Sea King, who was unable to react, was directly blasted into the air, and then Zu flew into the air and punched him again. Zu, whose flying speed increased, flew over and grabbed the Sea King's neck, dragging him to the dock. Bang! Zu grabbed the Sea King and threw him directly into the sea, causing a wave to explode. Although he thought he could easily deal with the Sea King isomorph in front of him, Zu didn't mind playing with him. It has been a long time since he returned from the world of injustice. The villains in Metropolis and Gotham are too weak to let him have so much fun. The Sea King, who was thrown into the sea, quickly jumped out of the sea in anger. Fighting in the sea, the Sea King thought he could easily kill the Homelander in front of him. The deck of the nearby freighter Atlas was shining coldly in the rain. The Sea King jumped into the air, and his scaled armor gauntlet slammed into the Homelander's jaw, erupting with a heavy roar. The blood beads between Azu's golden hair drew an arc in the rainstorm. He licked the cracked corners of his mouth and smiled. It turns out that the harpoon guy really knows how to fight. Before he finished speaking, there was a boom in the air, and the next second Azu's knee had hit the ribs of the Sea King. Boom! The 10,000-ton freighter groaned under the heavy load, and the two entangled and crashed through 3 layers of containers, rolling in the pile of broken ice of frozen fish. The dorsal fin armor of the Sea King scraped the steel plate, and the sparks drew an orange-red track in the rain. He thrust the trident into the deck and braked, the tip of the trident plowing a several-meter-long crack on the steel plate. Ah! Roaring, the Sea Overlord raised the trident and slapped Azu's temple with the kinetic energy of the roaring sea tide. Homelander flew backwards and broke the ship's crane. As he flew backwards, the scarlet rays from his eyes instantly knocked the Sea Overlord away. The Sea Overlord rolled sideways, and the heat rays brushed across his shoulder armor, and the scales melted by the high temperature turned into liquid metal dripping. Is this your full strength? To be honest, it's not as strong as Mark's fist. If you are only this level, you can only die. Homelander floated in the air and said to the Sea Overlord, who fell to the ground. Being mocked by Azu, the Sea Overlord gritted his teeth and stood up. The tip of the trident in his hand lit up with blue light, and the seawater in the entire Gotham port suddenly erected a 100-meter-high wall. The seawater, emitting powerful power, rushed towards Azu. As the Sea Overlord swung his halberd and chopped down, Tens of thousands of tons of seawater turned into a giant chain hammer and smashed down. Boom, hit by the waves, the motherland was hid into the fuel tank of the freighter like a cannonball. The aviation kerosene ignited a blue-purple flame on the sea. Standing on the waves, the Sea King watched Azu being engulfed by the flames, with a smug smile on his face. But the next second, in his astonished sight, Azu walked out of the sea of fire unscathed. "I'm going to pull out your fish bladder and use it as a balloon." Azu, who was hit by the waves, looked a little embarrassed. With red eyes, he moved in front of the Sea Overlord in an instant. The fists of the two collided in the rain, and the shock wave shook the waves within a radius of 100 meters and hit the sky. Azu's hook punch drilled into the Sea Overlord's abdomen with great force, hitting the opponent and spraying stomach acid. Without waiting for the opponent to counterattack, Azu's elbow hit the Sea King's collarbone, and with a crack, the crisp bone-cracking sound mixed with a heavy rain was particularly harsh. As the freighter began to tilt, Zu grabbed the cloak of the Sea Overlord and swung around to throw him. Before the figure of the Sea Overlord who had crashed through the side of the ship disappeared, Zu had already chased him on the crest of the wave. He grabbed the Sea Overlord's ankle in midair and swung it like a fisherman swinging a whale harpoon to smash it into the lighthouse. In the dust of the concrete tower collapse, the Sea Overlord spit blood and grabbed Zu's ankle. Zu didn't give him any chance to speak, he grabbed him and threw him out. The Sea Overlord crashed into the dredging ship like a typhoon, and the propeller blades were shattered. His back smashed the cockpit glass, and Zu's hot eyes passed by his ears. Plop. The powerless Sea Overlord knelt on the ground, looking at Zu in disbelief and the pain all over his body. He could never have imagined that his countrymen would easily beat him to this extent. Bang! Just as the Sea Overlord vomited blood, Zu fell heavily on the cabin floor in front of him. The red light in his eyes gradually dissipated, and Zu looked at him coldly. "If this is your strength, you can't rule the earth. And your crime syndicate can't rule the earth either, because you can't even pass me. How can you defeat my father?" At this time, Azu felt a little disappointed. "I thought there would be a guy who threatened my father, so that I could show my strength and prove to my father that I was his most trusted helper. I didn't expect this guy to be so weak." Then, in the astonished eyes of the Sea Overlord, Azu raised his right hand. Crack! With a roar of thunder, a trident with lightning flew into Azu's hand. The Sea Overlord watched Azu use the trident in shock. And it seemed that the opponent's trident was more powerful than his own, and it contained the power of lightning. Who is the Sea King? Is the motherland the Sea King of this world? The Sea Overlord suddenly fell into a sluggish state. In the astonished and terrified eyes of the Sea Overlord, Azu inserted the trident with divine power into his body. The severe pain spread throughout his body, and his consciousness was blurred. Blood splattered, and the sea tyrant with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth looked at Azu unwillingly and fell to the ground. "Who are you?" The unwilling sea tyrant uttered a final whisper. "I am the son of Peter Patrick, the owner of Patrick's farm. I will appear later next time, otherwise I will not leave so soon." After killing the sea tyrant, Azu complained and picked up the opponent's trident. "This thing can be used as a trophy and given to my father. My father gave me a trident as a gift, so I will give him a trident." Azu thought with satisfaction. This trip was not in vain. Patrick's farm. Peter has rushed back from the place where the female Fox McBee disappeared. According to the information obtained from the on-site investigation, the woman who kidnapped the female fox should be the isotope of Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman in a parallel world, who is powerful and a villain. Peter vaguely thought of some information about the DC world that he had read in his previous life. In order to recall the information he knew in his past life, Peter sat on the golden toilet in Asgard of the World Tree. Raven, Loki, Boom and others all followed him into the Asgard Hall. Looking at her father with glowing eyes on the golden toilet, Teresa was stunned. Jean, who was brought back by Peter and stood next to her, was still stunned. Why did Mr. Patrick in front of her look like a god sitting on the throne? She suddenly became very interested in the mysterious golden toilet. Peter sat on the golden toilet and immediately saw the things in his past life that he had forgotten in his memory, as well as some omens about the future of this world. Crime Syndicate. Peter murmured in a low voice. The other party should be the Crime Syndicate from Earth 3. Speedmaster, from Krypton destroyed by the Anti-Monitor, is a survivor of the power-worshipping L clan. He gains power by swallowing kryptonite, while the Yellow Sun will eliminate his power and make him suffer. After coming to Earth, he forced a gangster couple, the Kents, to adopt him. He killed them when he was 7 years old. Later, he dominated everything with his power and formed a criminal syndicate with other villains, until the Anti-Monitor arrived. The Super Queen who kidnapped the female fox was insidious and cruel. In order to leave the offspring of the strongest, she would do anything to plot against Superman and Night Owl. The Super Queen has a submission lock, which looks like thorns and can make the person who is caught submit to her, but it has no effect on the Anti-Monitor related to the anti-life equation. Her power comes from the power similar to that of the Amazon, but she also has the ability of heat vision similar to that of the Kryptonians. Chapter 885 Who is the Motherland? Dad, what happened? Raven took a deep breath and looked at Peter sitting on the golden toilet. She asked him with a serious expression, who took the female fox away? The crime syndicate. Peter, who was sitting on the golden toilet, slowly said to Raven and others. The crime syndicate. Raven carefully recalled the name and found that it was the first time she heard it. Yes, they are superheroes from Earth 3, or supervillains. You can think of it as the Justice League of another world. Peter's eyes were shining with a golden light, shining brightly. In Raven's eyes, the whole person seemed to have become a little different. Peter said and looked at the people with different expressions. Raven, Boom, and Wei looked at him worriedly. Tom, wearing a Hogwarts school uniform, narrowed his eyes when he heard Peter's words, with a thoughtful expression. Horace looked eager to try. Siri was not familiar with the crime syndicate and the Justice League. She frowned slightly and tried to understand what Peter said. Loki and Star-Lord looked at each other, and they became very interested in the members of the crime syndicate. Mark wanted to ask Peter how the strength of this crime syndicate compared to his father. But seeing that no one said anything, he was a little embarrassed to ask. I can kill them, Teresa suddenly said to Peter. Dad, as long as our family works together, this crime syndicate is not our opponent, Teresa said confidently. Didn't you say it? Dad, family unity is powerful. As long as we work together, the Super Farm Alliance works together, we are definitely not afraid of them. The last family unity is powerful, was said by Teresa in Chinese. Of course, Peter sat on the golden toilet and looked at Teresa. Looking at Teresa, Peter's eyes instantly saw Teresa's past and future. Teresa's past life memories unfolded in front of him, and the future scenes about Teresa. He saw Teresa transform from a little girl in front of him to Bayonetta with long legs, a slender waist, and exaggerated hip curves, fighting the Super Queen with an almost surreal perfect posture. When launching, Bayonetta's figure flickered like a ghost, and her movement speed increased sharply, which seemed to put the Super Queen at a disadvantage. The golden toilet gave Peter the ability to observe the future moment, and he captured a trace of the fate of the future. As soon as his thoughts came back, Peter said to his daughter Teresa, "You are right, Teresa, as long as our family is united, this crime syndicate is not an unbeatable target." Although he said so, Peter decided to be a hands-off boss this time. He would not take action unless necessary. After all, these naughty kids can't always rely on themselves, they have to be tempered. And this time the crime syndicate is the right target. The only threats are Night Owl and that Alexander. And he saw Teresa fighting the Super Queen in adult form, which means that at least Teresa got training this time. Standing up from the chair, Peter looked at Teresa and the others. Anyway, the most important thing now is to rescue the female fox. After leaving the golden toilet and returning to the room, Peter suddenly found that his phone was vibrating. Taking out his phone from his pocket, Peter found a message on his phone. This world belongs to all of us, crime syndicate. At the same time, Raven and Loki also found that their phones received the same message. At the same time, after imprisoning Diana and others in the matrix of Firestorm, the people of the crime syndicate rushed back to Gotham. Entering the Gotham dock, what Superman and others saw was the body of the Sea King. The other members of the crime syndicate were not too sad or shocked about the death of the Sea King. The Sea King was the weakest member of the crime syndicate. Such a guy with no use value, just die. Night Owl walked up to the body of the Sea King, briefly checked the body of the Sea King, and his expression changed slightly. What happened? Super Queen walked up to Night Owl and asked him with a slightly frowned brow. It looks like he was pierced by the trident. Night Owl stood up, and there are traces of lightning around the wound. Could it be that the opponent he encountered is the Sea King of this world? Frowning, Night Owl was a little confused. No matter who it is, it doesn't matter. Our first task is to go to Arkham Prison. Super Queen said that according to the original plan, they would go to Arkham Prison to recruit those villains. Her team is a criminal syndicate, and recruiting criminals and villains is what they should do. Half an hour later, all the guards of Arkham Prison were killed. The prison doors of the criminals were opened, and they were notified to go to a specific area for a meeting. The Riddler looked at the silver coins sent to him by this mysterious group of people, and asked Poison Ivy in surprise, "Why did this group of people send us silver coins? I heard that they sent this to everyone in the super prisons around the world." Poison Ivy looked at the coin in her hand and said, "This looks like an ordinary coin. I don't understand how this thing can become the only usable communication tool in the world." Looking at the earth pattern on the back of the coin, Poison Ivy asked Scarecrow in surprise, "The earth pattern on it is drawn upside down. Where did these coins come from?" The Riddler shook his head. He was not interested in the pattern on the coin. What he was most afraid of now was that Batman would come and beat them up and send them back to the cell. "I think we should take this opportunity to go our separate ways," the Riddler expressed his thoughts. Poison Ivy shook her head and said, "But they invited us to join their secret society. Now we can only accept their invitation and go where they ask us to go." As they were talking, Two-Face came over with a coin and asked Riddler, "Can we really trust them?" "I don't know," Riddler asked him, "will you choose to join or leave?" Two-Face threw the coin into the air and then pressed it down. After checking whether the coin was facing up, Two-Face smiled. "I choose to join." When Poison Ivy, Riddler and Two-Face arrived at the designated area, they found that almost all the prisoners in Arkham were here. In addition, Gotham villains such as Deathstroke, Penguin, Black Manta and others also joined in. Poison Ivy saw many familiar faces and couldn't help but complain, "This place really looks like a party." Looking at the people with different expressions and talking to each other, Poison Ivy slowly walked to the edge of the crowd. "This world belongs to us." Just as Poison Ivy was looking at the many supervillains present, a voice suddenly sounded behind her. Everyone turned around in surprise and saw Speedmaster and others slowly approaching. Night Owl and Super Queen and others followed behind him. Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, the most powerful superheroes in this world have been dealt with by us. You have no choice. Speedmaster walked to the podium and said to everyone. The voice of Grid came to Speedmaster at the same time. "You are broadcasting live around the world. Speedmaster, please continue." Speedmaster nodded and introduced the members of the crime syndicate to the many villains and the audience in front of the screen. "This is Night Owl, Super Queen, and Power Ring." When Speedmaster introduced Power Ring whispered to Deathstorm next to him, "I don't like the way they look at me." Seeing Power Ring's cowardly expression, Deathstorm sighed helplessly. "Calm down, Power Ring, no one can hurt you." Speedmaster heard Power Ring's voice, pretended not to hear it, and continued to introduce Deathstorm, Johnny Quick, and Atomic Girl. "We are the crime syndicate, from another world, and we have been looking for worlds to conquer until we chose one of them," Speedmaster said coldly. "When we arrived, we had already killed those who resisted us." Before he finished speaking, an inappropriate voice suddenly sounded in the crowd. "This is a trap." The villain Monocle stood up and pointed at Superman and said, "You are lying." The friend next to him saw Monocle standing up and immediately pulled him back. "Don't show up, Monocle. If they really kill Batman and the others, we will be in trouble." Monocle ignored his friend's advice and said excitedly, "Are you blind? Starfish, look at them, look at him, he looks exactly like Superman, except for the stupid U symbol on his chest." Monocle shouted, "Isn't this Superman? I saw Superman and Homelander with my own eyes in the Battle of Metropolis. They are not dead at all. There is also Batman, and now they are standing in front of us." Zizzy. Before Monocle finished speaking, a scarlet heat vision rushed over. With a splash of blood and flesh and the exclamation of the crowd, Monocle was suddenly hit by the scarlet heat vision and turned into a pool of blood and flesh. Smelling the bloody smell emanating from the scene, Poison Ivy opened her mouth in surprise. After Superman's heat vision solved Monocle, the red light in his eyes gradually dissipated. "I say again, this world belongs to us now. As long as you pledge allegiance to us, you will have a share of this world, but anyone who dares to challenge or question it will end up like this." At Patrick's farm, Peter, Raven and others also saw the content of the live broadcast. Seeing that the super thermal vision instantly solved the Monocle, Raven and the others looked at each other in bewilderment. Loki couldn't help but complain, "Why do I feel that this guy is the real Homelander?" Chapter 886, Female Thor appears and the battle is about to begin. "Bring him up, Super Queen." At this time, Superman didn't know that Loki was complaining about him. He turned around and asked Super Queen to bring the person out. Super Queen pulled the obedience lasso in her hand and said to the back, "Come out." Whoosh, she pulled forward suddenly, and the bound female fox was pulled over in embarrassment. Grabbing the hair of the female fox with a wound on her face, Super Queen asked her to face the crowd. Ahem, the injured female fox coughed painfully. She is a female fox, a superhero of Metropolis. Her real name is Mary Kivay McBee. She was originally an African born in Zambia. Later, she fled to the United States and is now in the Metropolitan Center Zoo. Grabbing the female fox's short hair, Super Queen told the information about the female fox. The many villains in the audience looked at the female fox whose true identity was exposed, with different expressions. The vixen has many friends and family. We will hunt down everything she loves. Anyone who tries to resist us is only risking his own life. You will also bring disaster to those you cherish. You will watch your loved ones, family, friends and neighbors die one by one. Chaoba faced many villains and said sternly, but everyone present, you are our allies, members of our secret society, and our army. We have been observing your world. This world is very different from ours. Here, time is wasted on protecting the weak. You have violated the most fundamental principle of evolution, survival of the fittest. Chaoba's words were full of indignation. Tolerating those things that have no contribution to society to continue to eat, drink, reproduce and breathe has caused human society to stagnate. You let the useless, incompetent and ignorant people prevail in this land. The poor have the upper hand, but the war is far from over. You are the strongest. God has given you power for a purpose. Join us and conquer the world with us. Evil is eternal. At Padrick Manor, Peter frowned after seeing Vixen being pulled out. Raven's expression became even uglier after seeing Vixen's injury. I will never let these bastards off. Raven gritted her teeth, with an expression that she would definitely make the other party pay. When Star-Lord heard that the other party had killed Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern and Flash, he asked Peter worriedly, Dad, did they really kill Bruce? Impossible. The sand I gave to Bruce and Diana did not react, which means they are temporarily safe. Peter shook his head and said, they may have tracked Diana and the others. Also, if they really killed Bruce, there would be no reason to keep McBee. Peter was not as angry as Raven, but continued, they kept McBee and did not touch her. They just announced her identity just to set a trap. Trap? What trap? Dad, Teresa asked puzzled. If there are other heroes who stand up, they will definitely rush to Gotham's Arkham Asylum to challenge the crime syndicate, so that they will be well rested. Peter was talking when Zoo and Clark pushed the door open. Zoo, holding the trident snatched from the dead Sea King, happened to meet Clark who was in a hurry at the farm gate. Clark already knew about the speech given by this group of crime syndicate members in Gotham. Godfather, Clark pushed the door open with a worried expression on his face. What should we do now? He didn't expect that there would be a guy exactly like him, who would become a supervillain and come to rob his world. Could it be that except for himself, all the Supermen in other worlds have become villains? This is the case in the world of injustice, and now the Isotope in this other world has also become a villain. Don't worry about McBee's safety, Clark. She is safe for now. Besides, since these members of the crime syndicate have been lurking for so long, I guess they must know about our existence. They will probably come to deal with us soon. Peter still spoke his guess calmly. I don't understand, Godfather, why would I be a villain in another world? Clark asked his doubts. His expression was a little frustrated. Peter thought for a while and explained to Clark, the world where Superman is located is the reverse of good and evil. There, the evil version of the Justice League, the crime syndicate, rules everything. Everything you know is reversed there. Reverse. Clark frowned slightly when he heard Peter's words. But I don't understand why it is reversed. Is this a setting, a rule set by a higher rule? I don't understand, Godfather. There should be a reason for this. Clark raised his doubts. Peter thought to himself that you guessed it right. All the settings are decided by the supreme screenwriter of DC. If you have any opinions, you can discuss it with Gwen. She should be able to break the fourth wall and talk to the editor. Although he complained in his heart, Peter didn't show it on his face. Peter, with a serious expression, explained to Clark, everything is not groundless, it's just that Speedmaster met the wrong person. What do you mean by the wrong person? Godfather, Peter organized his words and said to the other party, Speedmaster's original name is Carlisle. He comes from Krypton on Earth 3. He belongs to the L clan who advocates force. Unlike other universes, the Kryptonian culture on Earth 3 respects strength and the society is full of violence and conquest. When Krypton was about to be destroyed, Speedmaster's parents killed all other tribesmen who tried to escape from Krypton to protect their son, ensuring that Carlisle became the only survivor of Krypton. This is your difference, Clark. First of all, your biological parents are different. Hearing Peter say that Speedmaster's Krypton is a place where the strong prey on the weak, Clark was directly stunned. There is such a Krypton. After that, after Speedmaster's escape pod landed on Earth 3, he was adopted by a gangster couple named Mr. and Mrs. Kent. The couple themselves were not good people and had been engaged in criminal activities for many years. When Speedmaster was 7 years old, he showed superhuman strength. Because he hated his adoptive parents' cowardice and greed, he killed them directly. Clark was stunned when he heard what Peter said. His parents in another universe were actually a pair of criminals. He suddenly understood why Speedmaster became a villain. If he landed in such a family, maybe he could really be like Speedmaster. Clark suddenly felt that he was very lucky. His adoptive parents were good people. The Godfather seemed to know his identity since he was a child and had been guiding him to become a hero. Clark, with mixed feelings, looked at Peter. He wanted to say something about gratitude, but he was a little speechless. No matter what words of gratitude he said, he probably couldn't express his gratitude to the Godfather who taught him not to become a villain. After Peter finished telling the story of Speedmaster, he said to Clark, who was stunned, "That's not you, Clark. You don't have to have any psychological burden." After listening to Peter's story, Teresa whispered to Peter, "Dad, will Clark become a bad guy in the future? I see that he is becoming more and more like Speedmaster now, and his body is getting stronger and stronger, just like Speedmaster." "Peter, no, of course not." Peter coughed, patted Teresa's hand and said, "After Clark turns evil, he will not think about conquering other Earths. At most, he will just ravage you brothers and sisters first. Also, Clark is not strong, but fat." Clark, after talking to Teresa, Peter assigned tasks. He asked Azu and Clark to send Jonathan and his wife to Baron Winters' residence first. Then he asked Star-Lord to take Lana, Chloe, Neil, Teacher Martha and others to Asgard in the World Tree. He had to be prepared to welcome the upcoming war. Azu originally wanted to give the trident gift to Peter. He had no choice but to put away the trident since he didn't find an opportunity. Gotham. Just as Peter said, some decent people in Gotham were ready to go to war with the crime syndicate. Jane Foster, the female Thor, stood in the hospital corridor, watching the declaration of the Superman on TV. Her breast cancer was completely under control, and she originally wanted to return to the farm to reunite with Peter. Unexpectedly, she encountered the invasion of the crime syndicate. Gwen was in the ward before, pestering her to ask if she was Natalie Portman, and now she didn't know where she went crazy again. Just as she was considering whether to return to Smallville immediately, she suddenly heard the roar of a helicopter above her head. She saw a team of armed helicopters rushing towards the asylum, and it seemed that they were going to go to war with the crime syndicate. Outside Arkham Asylum, the Power Ring was responsible for dealing with a human army. Although it was powerful, he was still a little scared. Looking at the ring in his hand, he took a deep breath. "No, don't be afraid," the ring comforted its owner. "These are very simple for you." The power ring in the hand of the Power Ring can speak, and it also stutters. Generally, people who have negative emotions such as anxiety or fear in their hearts will be chosen by the ring and will be controlled by the ring. The Power Ring itself works in the opposite way to the general DC Green Lantern ring. It will take advantage of the host's weakness to continuously erode the host's body until the next host is found. Seeing the helicopter appearing in the sky, the Power Ring immediately released a ball of energy. With a boom, a deafening explosion sounded. The helicopter instantly turned into a ball of fire. Chapter 887, Green Arrow and Canary's Failure. Facing the human army rushing up, the Power Ring took a deep breath nervously. After killing the approaching armed helicopter, the Power Ring floated above Arkham Asylum. The green lines on his ring were wriggling like a living thing. Although these human armies were not very difficult for him, his fingers were trembling, not because of fatigue, but because of the cowardice engraved into his bones. "All the scum, kneel down," the Power Ring roared and raised his left arm. The green light bursting from the ring materialized into a sickle that was 100 meters long and swept across the block. Boom! The concrete building was cut in half like a building block. The moment the sickle touched the army's defense line, it instantly rushed out the front tank. "Open fire. Focus on the ring." Captain Martha Cohen, who was in charge of the operation, roared into the tactical headset. Behind her, 3 M1A2 tanks fired depleted uranium armor-piercing shells at the same time. Amid the whistling sound of the shells tearing through the air, the pupils of the power ring suddenly shrank, and the ring automatically generated a hexagonal shield. Boom! The first armor-piercing bullet grazed the right shoulder of the power ring. At the moment the shield was formed. Damn it! The startled power ring clenched the ring fiercely. As he used the ring to materialize, countless green tree roots suddenly rose from the ground. Taste my babies! The moment the green tree roots pounced on the armored vehicle, Captain Cohen ordered his men to activate the sonic cannon. The high-frequency pulse exploded in circles of ripples in the air, destroying the giant tree materialized by the power ring. However, an armored vehicle was still attacked by the giant tree vines, and the armored vehicle instantly turned into a fireball. The shock wave blew away the nearby soldiers, and the splashing oil hit the power ring's shield like raindrops. Not enough. It's not painful enough. The power ring licked its lips, and the ring suddenly shot out a twisted beam of light and hit the soldier in the front. The soldier's body swelled rapidly, and countless wriggling tentacles protruded from under his skin. Shoot! Captain Martha Cohen was shocked by the soldier's miserable condition and immediately gave an angry order to attack. You! How dare you not be afraid of me? The power ring waved its arms hysterically, and the green light condensed into a giant dragon the size of Godzilla. Prepare the electromagnetic pulse bomb. Facing the monster manifested by the power ring, Captain Martha Cohen jumped onto the last intact anti-aircraft turret and manually calibrated the firing axis. The giant dragon of the power ring was diving, and its fangs were getting closer and closer to her head. Bang! The pulse bomb penetrated the dragon's throat, and the green energy body exploded instantly. The shock wave backfired on the power ring itself, and he was shocked and took 2 steps back in the air. You ants! The fear of the power ring at this time dissipated most of it. Now he was angry, and what he wanted to do most was to kill these guys completely. As he continued to output the power of the green light exploded into a black hole that swallowed everything. Go to hell! The black hole expanded rapidly, and the tanks, soldiers and even light along the way were distorted and sucked in. Captain Martha Cohen was caught off guard and dragged into the abyss by the gravitational field. Damn it! Go stop them! At this time, Sheriff Gordon had already arrived at the scene in a police car. Seeing that the soldiers of the Providence Guard were about to be wiped out, he immediately rushed forward with a shotgun. Buzz! Just as Gordon rushed forward nervously, a visible sound wave swept towards Captain Martha Cohen and others. The energy black hole created by the power ring was instantly melted by the shock wave. A blonde beauty in a black leather jacket and black lace pantyhose appeared at the scene. Black Canary Dinah took action in time and saved the person. Black Canary's canary cry sonic attack can hypnotize and interfere with the enemy, make people dizzy, and can imitate any sound, and can pierce metal and other objects. At this moment, it was she who used the sound wave to destroy the energy field of the power ring. After Black Canary appeared, Green Arrow also appeared on the battlefield. Whoosh! Green Arrow Oliver Queen drew his bow and shot the arrow at the power ring in the air. The power ring dodged the Green Arrow's shot and looked at the other party with astonishment. The cowardly character in his heart took over again, and he wanted to run away again. It seems that we are not too late. Green Arrow walked to his girlfriend Black Canary and said as he looked at the power ring with a changing expression on his face. Yes, it's not too late. Black Canary smiled. These guys want to rule the earth. I don't agree. Just as the power ring was hesitating whether to retreat, Johnny Quick and Atom Girl from the crime syndicate appeared. Whoosh! Johnny Quick instantly turned into a flash of lightning and rushed towards the police present. The police who were caught off guard only felt a flash in front of their eyes, and Johnny Quick disappeared from their sight. I hope you don't mind, I borrowed something from you. Johnny Quick reappeared in front of the police and soldiers, with a finger-sized Atom Girl standing on his shoulder. Now, I'll give it back to you, he said as he threw the bullets he had snatched from the soldiers at the crowd. The sound of ding-dong-dong rang out, and the soldiers hit by the bullets howled in pain. Asshole! Green Arrow suddenly pulled a bow and shot at Johnny Quick. Johnny Quick's afterimage reflected his clone in the air. The speedster of the crime syndicate deliberately slowed down to subsonic speed, just to enjoy the moment of shock in the pupils of his prey. Facing the impact of Johnny Quick's rush, Green Arrow rolled over, pulled out a short bow from the side of his leg and shot a blasting arrow. Boom! The arrow nailed into Johnny Quick's feet, and the explosion sounded instantly. But Johnny Quick, who had supersonic speed, had already left before the explosion. The speed broke through Mach 3 in an instant, and the sonic boom caused by Johnny Quick's running instantly shook away the enemies along the way. And Green Arrow was shocked to find that Johnny Quick's running was sucking oxygen from the air, and the red tornado with lightning formed by the pressure difference swept the entire space. Holding the compound bow, Green Arrow reacted quickly. Taking out the electromagnetic pulse arrow, Green Arrow shot at the shadow of the speedster near the tornado. The arrow exploded in the eye of the tornado. "Do you like my storm art?" Johnny Quick's vocal cords were hoarse due to high-speed friction. He shuttled between the falling boulders, kicking each falling object towards Green Arrow's evasive path. Green Arrow, who had powerful dynamic vision, saw Johnny Quick kicking a load-bearing column to his left rear, which was the only escape angle that was not blocked. The speedster had calculated that the prey would instinctively dodge to the left. Green Arrow immediately shot the explosive arrow at an inconspicuous iron plate on the upper right, and the shock wave changed the falling trajectory of another boulder. Bang! The boulder accurately intercepted the load-bearing column, and the reaction force bounced Green Arrow into Johnny Quick's running path. The two sides started fighting, but soon Green Arrow, who was not as fast as Johnny Quick, was grabbed by the arm. With a bang, Green Arrow, who was unable to react in time, was thrown directly into the red storm. On the other side, Black Canary also encountered trouble. Atom Girl, who could change her body to the size of an atom, took advantage of the moment when Black Canary spoke and jumped into her mouth. "Oh, you are such an annoying little cutie, so sweet from the inside out." While complaining, Atom Girl got into her mouth. Covering her mouth, Black Canary's face showed an incredible look. Cough cough, covering her throat and coughing, she tried desperately to spit out the Atom Girl in her mouth. But the next second, she felt a sharp pain in her head and immediately fell to the ground without being able to support herself. Plop! Black Canary lost consciousness and fell heavily to the ground, shocking everyone present. Gordon realized that his group of people could never be the opponent, and immediately shouted to everyone, "Retreat, retreat now," clapping his hands. Johnny Quick did not immediately chase, but let Gordon and others leave. Atom Girl turned back to the size of a thumb, jumped onto the proud Johnny Quick's shoulder, and asked him, "Where's the Green Arrow?" "I pulled that guy and threw him into the storm turbulence." Johnny Quick pinched his waist and asked Atom Girl on his shoulder, "Baby, did you enjoy it?" "Of course, it was so cool. Look, baby, I can make you even more excited." Johnny Quick looked at the fleeing police, and his evil smile became even more intense. At the same time, Superman did not pay attention to the battle between Johnny Quick and the Power Ring. He was in a basement at this time, asking a pale old man, the questioner, "How is he?" The questioner was a member of the crime syndicate, and was in charge of a guy who was tied up tightly. The other party was tied to a chair with a sack on his head covering his entire face. "The drug effect has not worn off, Super. In other words, he is very quiet most of the time." The questioner was telling Super about the mysterious man when footsteps came from behind. Night Owl slowly walked out from behind and said to Super, "We should take the opportunity to kill him." Night Owl advocated killing the mysterious man. "Otherwise, why keep him? Let us fall apart again." "No." Super shook his head and said, "It may be useful to keep him, in order to fight against the thing that once came to Earth, the thing that we escaped with great difficulty. It may chase us again." Super said before that he would kill all the residents of the planet and then leave his planet. In fact, this was his lie. The group of people from the crime syndicate fled here to avoid the existence that destroyed their Earth. Night Owl looked at Super, who was frowning and thinking, and said to him, "No, he won't follow us here." Although he said so, the expression on Night Owl's face became heavy in an instant. Chapter 888. Will Peter be a match for the Anti-Monitor? Superman looked at the mysterious man who was tied up and fell into coma, and said with a complicated expression, "I remember that you always plan ahead and make preparations in advance. His strength is something we have never seen before, Thomas." Night Owl stared at the shadow in the dark place, and seemed to see the culprit who destroyed his home again. "Sooner or later, I will make this guy pay the price." Night Owl, with hatred in his eyes, looked at the mysterious man with his head covered. "Let me finish this guy off." I agree with Night Owl's opinion. Just as Superman and Night Owl were arguing about whether to kill the mysterious man who was tied up in front of them, Super Queen slowly walked over. The Super Queen who came over took a look at the tied guy and said to the two of them, "Once this guy recovers, he will be powerful and out of our control. He will be a dangerous element. I can control everything, A hint of ruthlessness flashed in the Super King's eyes. He must be alive, Super Queen. Anyone who dares to touch him must ask me first. Hearing Super King's words, Night Owl frowned slightly, then Alfred in Wayne manner, you can't touch him. This is the condition of exchange, are you serious? Super King frowned even tighter and looked at Night Owl. That's just the butler of Batman in the parallel world. He has nothing to do with you. He's just a pathetic fake, and what need does such a waste have to live? After speaking to Night Owl, he stretched out his hand, pinched the Super Queen's chin, and threatened, and you, Super Queen, never disobey me in front of him. Just as Super King was about to continue, the voice of Grid came from the communicator. Super, we've run into some trouble. There's a bunch of thieves called the Rogue Gang in Central City who are not very cooperative. They refuse to join the others. Why? I don't know. After hearing this news, Super crossed his arms and said, let's ask Deathstorm and the Ringmaster to deal with it. It's not difficult to deal with a useless human army outside. The Ringmaster should have dealt with it. Grid raised his concerns, but the Ringmaster should refuse. Tell him to do it obediently, otherwise I'll pull out his tongue. Super walked outside. I have to go to Kandak. There are also people who resist us. Seeing Super leave, Super Queen followed him. Keep an eye on him. Questioner, no problem, sir. Questioner nodded to Super. After Super left, Questioner raised his head. His pale face was exactly the same as Alfred in this world. Questioner was Alfred from Earth 3. Hearing that Night Owl wanted to protect Wayne Manor and Alfred in this world, the Questioner said to him with a complicated expression, Superman is right, Master Thomas, there is no need to protect Alfred in this world. He is just my isotope. I know. Night Owl nodded. I have my reasons, Alfred. Yeah, you always have your own reasons, Master Thomas. The Questioner sighed slightly and asked him, regarding Smallville's Clark Kent who has not yet become Superman, Master Thomas, how do you plan to deal with him? It doesn't matter. Night Owl shook his head and said to the Questioner, in other words, he is not the key. The key is Peter Patrick. This guy is far more powerful than we know, but most of the time, he won't take action. If Superman faces him, there is no possibility of winning. The Questioner listened to Night Owl's words, with a look of surprise on his face. But why didn't you tell Superman and the others this information? Because I need someone to fight the person who destroyed our homeland. Superman will not be that person, and neither will the guy who is tied up. If Patrick is that person, then let Superman challenge them, so that I can prove my guess. Night Owl told the Questioner his true thoughts. What he wanted to do was to start a war between Peter and Superman, and let Peter kill Superman. If Peter could do it, it would prove that he was the person he had been looking for. Or perhaps his children were the people he was looking for. Peter. Patrick, I hope you and your children will not let me down. Night Owl turned around, walked outside, and said in his heart, Patrick Farm. I don't understand, sir, why did they leave the Earth? Is it really because they killed everyone? Siri asked Peter curiously when others were busy transferring Jonathan and his wife and others. No, of course not. Superman said that just to flatter himself. Peter shook his head and said to Siri, in fact, their Earth was destroyed by someone. Siri became more curious after hearing this. She sat close to Peter and whispered to him, who destroyed it? The anti-monitor? Peter looked at the scenery outside the window and said to Siri slowly, I guess it was the anti-monitor. He needed to devour a lot of life energy to enhance his strength, so he attacked Earth 3, so the life energy of the residents there became the target of the anti-monitor. In addition, as the ruler of the antimatter universe, the anti-monitor's power is directly related to the expansion of the antimatter field. Devouring the positive matter universe, that is, Earth 3, can enhance its absolute advantage in antimatter energy. This may also be the reason why he did this. Siri was shocked when she heard about the anti-monitor. She didn't expect that there was such a powerful existence in the universe that could devour planets. Sir, what exactly is the anti-monitor? Peter organized his words and said to him, his real name is Mobius, the third son of Perpetua, and the brother of the Monitor and the World Forger. Peter remembered that the first major DC event, Crisis on Infinite Earths, was caused by this guy. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, the anti-monitor's strength will continue to increase as he destroys the positive matter universe and expands the antimatter universe. Then, sir, can you fight the anti-monitor? Siri asked Peter curiously whether he could defeat the anti-monitor. I don't know. Peter shook his head, indicating that he couldn't be sure yet. Under normal circumstances, he should not be the opponent of the Anti-Monitor when fighting alone, even if he has many adventures and props. After all, this guy's a multi-universe level strong man. He remembered that the Anti-Monitor had unparalleled physical strength and endurance. He could easily defeat groups of superheroes. He also had the ability to modify reality, control energy, travel through time, make himself stronger by devouring the universe, create a shadow version of himself, and absorb these shadow demons to recharge himself. On some occasions, the Anti-Monitor also possessed a Yellow Lantern ring. He could even manipulate the Black Lantern power of the Black Death Emperor. The Black Lantern ring would attach itself to a corpse or a person who had died and resurrected, download their memories, steal their identities and superpowers. And after the Blackest Night, the host would control the Black Lantern ring. In addition, this guy also knew the anti-life equation. The anti-life equation would corrode and engulf everything it touched. When humans heard this anti-life program, they would lose their free will and be controlled by the Anti-Monitor. This guy also had a Mobius chair. This chair was a space-time dimensional medium transportation tool built by the Anti-Monitor on the planet Covator to help him seek knowledge. Peter remembered that in the original book, Night Owl ended up on this chair. Well, it sounds like the most powerful villain in that game. Suri listened to Peter's explanation of the Anti-Monitor and suddenly felt some sympathy for the members of the crime syndicate on Earth 3. Before, she was chased by those who coveted her bloodline. For example, the Wild Hunt. After the leader of the Wild Hunt, Eridan, killed the Elf King Oberon, he temporarily ruled the Elf Kingdom and urgently needed his bloodline to consolidate power and realize the conquest plan, so he sent people to hunt him down. So he had to flee to other worlds to avoid being hunted down. The members of the syndicate also came to this world to avoid being hunted down by the Anti-Monitor. No, it's completely different. Siri quickly shook her head. These guys are not good people. They still want to rule the world. Just as Siri was thinking about the same situation as this group of criminal syndicate members, the door was pushed open with a bang. Then Siri was shocked to see that Batman was supported by a woman, holding a bloody cyborg with only a head and half a body left in his hands. When Peter saw Jane supporting the injured Batman and the cyborg with only a head left, the expression on his face instantly became dull. What happened to Bruce? Bruce, Jane? Peter quickly asked Siri to help the two come in. What happened, Bruce? After using the rune to treat Bruce's external injuries, Peter frowned and asked him. At the same time, Peter looked at the bloody head of Cyborg. Cyborg's flesh and mechanical body are divided into two halves, and he is parasitized by the grid. Bruce fell on the sofa and said to Peter with a difficult tone. Jane next to him said to Peter, I originally planned to go to Wayne Manor, then contact Bruce and come to the farm. I didn't expect to see Bruce coming out of the sewer with this bloody head when passing an alley, so I immediately drove them here. Is that so? Bruce, what happened? Why can't Diana be contacted? Peter frowned and continued to ask him. It's the Firestorm Matrix. Bruce spoke intermittently about the attack he and his group encountered. Chapter 889. It turns out that Batman is the biggest competitor of the farm. So, Diana, Green Lantern, and Flash are all locked in Firestorm's matrix. Peter frowned and asked Bruce. Yes, Bruce replied, holding his injured shoulder. Where did Firestorm go? Siri asked puzzledly, looking at the head of Cyborg placed on the table. Bruce shook his head and said, I don't know. I guess Firestorm's matrix will become extremely unstable after integrating so many independent personalities. Even if he hasn't exploded yet, he won't have much time left. Peter pondered for a moment and looked at Bruce. How did you escape, Bruce? I fled to a secret base along the sewer, and then left the Arkham area before they found me, Bruce said, looking at Cyborg's head worriedly. The most important thing now is Cyborg's situation. I don't know if he can be resurrected. Bruce was worried that the cyborg, would die completely. At least we can't save him here, Peter said to Bruce seriously. Let Siri accompany you to the Red Room. There is technology related to the mother box in Victor's father's laboratory. Maybe it can help Victor and make him wake up again. As for Jane, you stay on the farm. You have just recovered from your illness and it is not suitable for you to go out. Peter asked Jane to stay on the farm temporarily. No one objected. After Bruce received a simple treatment, he took the cyborg head and set off for Detroit with Siri. In the Red Room laboratory in Detroit, Bruce handed the head to the relevant personnel and left with Siri. Siri originally thought that the other party was going back to the farm, but he didn't expect Bruce to return to Gotham. 2 hours later, Siri carried the silver sword on his back and looked at Bruce walking in the underground sewer in front of him helplessly. "Batman, we have been walking in the stinking water for a long time. Where are we going? Did the sir tell you to send the steel skeleton to the laboratory and then return to Smallville? Now the members of the crime syndicate may call at any time." Batman heard Siri's complaint and turned to look at the princess from another world. "I am taking you to the top secret, Siri. The less you know about this, the better." Hearing Batman say this, Siri blinked. "I am actually looking forward to it now, because I never like to follow the rules." Siri walked over quickly and said to Batman expectantly, "Let's go." "Geralt Batman, what is Geralt Batman?" Bruce asked in confusion. "Geralt, he is still a very important person, just like Peter to me." "Batman, you are a bit like Geralt." Siri smiled at Batman. "Do you know why?" "Why?" "Because both of you like to speak in a low voice, Bruce." Half an hour later, Bruce and Siri entered the Batcave through the underground water channel. Looking at the huge Batcave, which was filled with various high-tech instruments and several Batmobiles parked in the middle, Siri was stunned. In a corner of the underground world, there was also a huge and lifelike dinosaur model. The lifelike dinosaur had an expression that looked like it would come alive in the next second. "Wow, this place is really unusual." Siri looked at the dinosaur in the Batcave and said to Bruce in disbelief. As she spoke, she walked to a human-shaped glass cabinet and looked at the Bat uniform inside. "Batman, you hide in the cave all day, is it just to show off your uniform?" Siri now understood why Bruce liked the identity of Batman. This must be because he enjoyed showing off his uniform and equipment. Bruce did not continue to follow Siri's complaints, but walked to an object covered by a white cloth. Wow, as the white cloth was lifted, a cool motorcycle appeared in front of the two. "The Evil League has controlled all the computers, so the Batmobile is useless, so we can only use this steam motorcycle." Siri walked over, looked at the unique motorcycle, nodded, and said, "Not bad, but I still like riding horses. You know, in the Demon Hunter continent, horses are the most trusted tools, whether it is a motorcycle or a horse, they are both means of transportation. There is no difference between them," Bruce said as he walked to a safe. The safe made of special metal and embedded in the wall is generally difficult for others to find. After Bruce used fingerprint recognition and pupil recognition, the safe embedded in the wall slowly came out of the wall. The safe opened automatically, and Siri came up and was surprised to see that there were more than a dozen boxes inside. Each small box was marked with a symbol on the surface. The lightning logo and the green light logo. Siri guessed that it should be the Flash and the Green Lantern. The S logo should be Clark. Mr. once said that Clark is Superman. But who is the Star-Spangled Banner logo? There is also a box with a crow painted on it. Siri guessed that it might be Raven. After all, Raven's nickname is Raven. In addition to the stars and stripes and the Raven logo, Siri also saw the Horn Crown logo, the Hamburger logo, Star-Lord, the Bolt Gun logo, etc. "What are these?" Siri asked Bruce in shock. "This is something that makes me blame myself. In order to prevent Mr. Patrick's people from getting out of control, I made a backup plan," Bruce said with a serious expression that he made a plan to prevent Patrick's Justice League from getting out of control. Siri was stunned when she heard Bruce's words. Batman is so insidious. Starting from the eldest brother Azu, he made a backup plan for each of Peter's children. These boxes, presumably, each one contains a corresponding plan to deal with Peter's children. Doesn't that mean that Peter is also being guarded against by Batman? "So, Batman, is there anything here for Peter?" Bruce listened to Siri's question, was silent for a while, and then shook his head. "No, I don't, really." "Yes," Bruce coughed and took out a ring made of green kryptonite from the box with the letter S. "What is this, kryptonite?" Bruce then opened the Green Lantern's box and took out a yellow lantern ring from it. "This is the Yellow Lantern ring. I got it from the Injustice world. There is not much energy left in it, but it should be no problem to deal with the power ring." Then he opened the box of the third Flash and took out a small golden scepter. Siri looked at the scepter in surprise. "What is this?" "The lightning scepter from the future. Since Johnny Quick and the Flash use the same energy, this scepter should be able to slow him down." Bruce introduced to Siri the props in the box that were used to deal with teammates and are now used to deal with enemies. Then he opened the box with the Stars and Stripes logo, which contained a bottle of compound number 5. Bruce took out compound number 5 and said to Siri, "This is compound number 5. It was given to me by the Godfather. As long as you use this energy, you can gain powerful superpowers. For Super Queen and Night Owl, if it comes to the last moment, I can use it. Siri looked at the various props prepared by Batman and was dumbfounded. She had always thought that Azu, who had ambitions for the farm on his face, might be the most dangerous guy in the future. But what she didn't expect was that Batman was the most dangerous one. Although he didn't have superpowers like Azu and Clark, if Batman wanted to deal with Azu and others on the farm one day, Batman, who knew their weaknesses, would have a great chance of success if he caught them by surprise. If there was really a battle for the farm in the end, she suspected that if Batman got involved, he would definitely be the final winner. While thinking about it in a mess, Siri cast her eyes on the box containing the secrets of Loki, Raven, Horus, Star-Lord and others, wanting to open it to see what was inside. Finally, Siri's eyes fell on the last box, which had a bat logo on it. Curious, Siri asked Bruce, "Can I open the last box?" Of course, Batman didn't care about revealing a secret weapon that could be used against him. He opened the box directly. Siri looked at it expectantly, but it was empty. "No wonder you are so generous, there's nothing inside." "Well, Batman, you don't have a plan to deal with yourself, no wonder you don't know how to deal with Night Owl." Facing Siri's complaints, Batman shook his head and said, "I have a plan to deal with myself, but this plan is not here, but with a godfather." After Bruce finished speaking with a complicated expression, he took out the props from several boxes and walked towards his steam motorcycle. "Let's go, Siri. The next battle is going to be a big fight." At the same time, Superman, who defeated Wakanda's Black Adam, has returned to Arkham Asylum. Grabbing a piece of green kryptonite fragment, Superman crushed it, and then took a deep breath like an addict flying leaps. As the green smoke was inhaled into his nostrils, Superman showed an expression of enjoyment on his face. After the battle, Speedmaster's weak body regained its vitality. Just as Speedmaster was taking kryptonite to replenish his energy, the Super Queen came out from behind him. "I'm very curious, Speedmaster, how many kryptonite fragments do you have left to collect?" the Super Queen asked with a smile on her face. Speedmaster didn't look at her, but said to himself, "The amount I took is enough to deal with the alien species that destroyed us." When the Super Queen heard about the murderer who destroyed her homeland, the expression on her face suddenly became gloomy. "It won't come, Speedmaster, we can't keep worrying." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 890, Padrick Justice League, Move Out. The Super Queen said to Superba, "Superba, it's time to turn defense into offense. We have to purge the people in this world who are against us." Before she finished speaking, Superba interrupted her. "Did you hear it?" "What? It's a heartbeat." Superba looked at her seriously. "How long are you going to keep it from me? You have a baby in your belly. I can hear the heartbeat. When are you going to tell me?" Hearing Superba reveal her secret, the Super Queen was slightly stunned. Then she quickly adjusted her mood, reached out and gently grabbed Superba's clothes on his chest. "When we find a safe place where we can be alone, I plan to tell you." Superba looked at the Super Queen with a charming expression, glanced at the obedience lasso in her hand, and shook his head. "Your obedience lasso is useless to me, Wheeze." "Of course I know." The Super Queen took a step closer to him, reached out her hand, and gently stroked Superba's lips. "I just want to remind you to be careful of Night Owl." The Super Queen reminded him that Night Owl had his own intentions. "What about Night Owl?" Superba asked with a frown. "I accidentally overheard the conversation between Night Owl and Questioner. Do you know what they said?" "What?" "Night Owl wants to win over the Superman of this world and that Peter Patrick. He wants to form his own team. As long as he can win over Peter Patrick, he is confident that he can deal with you and me." When Superboy heard the Super Queen say the name Peter Patrick, the expression on his face became even uglier. Night Owl said before that this guy is the godfather of Clark before he became Superman, so he is not a concern. Yes, he said that before, but he lied. Peter Patrick and their children are our biggest enemies. Think about it, Superman, don't you find it strange? Super Queen looked into Superman's eyes and said slowly, "Why is the Justice League in this world so vulnerable, and even Superman didn't join in?" The reason is very simple, that is, in this world, there are opponents more powerful than the Justice League team. They have not taken action and are secretly watching us. Padrick Justice League. I think it is appropriate to describe them with such a name. Super Queen is not a vase. Just from Night Owl's words, she inferred and investigated the truth of this world. She moved closer to Superman's ear and exhaled hot air from her mouth. Night Owl will betray us. So for our children, you have to fight to the end. Superman looked at the Super Queen in front of him with a complicated expression. He knew that this woman was deep-minded and that he couldn't believe everything she said. I will only fight for myself, that's all. Speedmaster cast his eyes towards the direction of Metropolis, with a hint of ruthlessness in his eyes. Since that Peter Padrick is unusual, I want to see what he is like. At the temporary base in Arkham, Speedmaster gathered all the members of the crime syndicate and prepared to go to Smallville to deal with Peter and his children. Only the power ring was left to guard the scene. Myself? But Speedmaster, I'm alone. Hearing that Speedmaster asked him to guard alone, the power ring immediately panicked. I hate being alone with a ring, especially when it needs to be charged. The power ring expressed some fear and wanted to set off with a large group. Looking at the cowardly look of the power ring, Deathstorm complained, for the sake of the devil, power ring. You should beg your ring to give you some courage or something. Speedmaster glared at the power ring. If you keep talking, I will pull out your tongue. After threatening the power ring a few times, Speedmaster left Arkham with Super Queen, Night Owl and others. Smallville. Under Raven's hypnosis, almost all the residents of the town evacuated the town. Raven used magic to hypnotize the group that Smallville was hit by a meteor shower. After being hit by a large-scale meteor shower twice, the residents with psychological trauma immediately drove away from the town. When Super King and his group arrived at the town, they found that the town was unusually quiet. Super Queen frowned and said, "It seems a little unusual here." Flying into the air, Super Queen looked into the distance and saw a farm standing in the field. A huge birch tree in the farm was unusually eye-catching. The courtyard was quiet, and it seemed that no one was there. With a dong, Super Queen just landed on the ground and heard a voice coming from behind. "Are you looking for me?" Hearing the voice, Super Queen turned around suddenly. Super King, Night Owl, Johnny Quick, Atom Girl and Deathstorm also turned around in surprise. What caught everyone's eyes was a young man with a unique temperament, wearing a black knee-length windbreaker. Peter Padrick. Seeing Peter appear, Super Queen immediately became alert. Although he didn't know the opponent's strength, he must be a very powerful person since he could appear quietly behind his group of people. It seems that my reputation is not small. Even a group of aliens know about it, Peter said with satisfaction. You know we want to deal with you, Peter Padrick, but you actually showed up alone, Superman said to Peter with a cold face. You are really arrogant. Alone? No, of course not. Peter shook his head and looked at the sky behind him. As a purple portal opened, figures came out one after another. Azu, Raven, Teresa, Loki and all the Father Warriors came out. Looking at all the Father Warriors standing behind Peter, with a strong aura, and it seemed that each of them was not an ordinary person, Superman's eyes condensed. I forgot to introduce myself to you. These are all my sons and daughters. John, you can introduce yourselves. Peter pretended to let everyone introduce themselves to the crime syndicate. Azu stood up, pinched his waist and exhaled. I am Homelander, the eldest son of Padrick's farm, the boss of the Super Farm Justice League, and I was the one who killed your Sea King. Star-Lord held the elemental gun and pressed the switch of the gas mask on his face, revealing his true face that had gained a lot of weight. I am Star-Lord. Loki transformed into an adult Loki, wearing a bullhorn crown and holding a magic wand. He stood up and showed an evil smile. I am Loki. Raven took off her hood and looked at the members of the crime syndicate with a serious expression. I am Raven Padrick the Raven. Mark put on the yellow and blue uniform worn by the invincible young man at this time, pushed up his glasses, and a ray of light flashed in the lenses of his glasses. I am the invincible young man, or you can call me the farm young man. Tom wore a Hogwarts school uniform, held a magic wand, and said coldly, I am Tom Padrick. Boom Boom held the Boom Boom gun and looked at the crime syndicate with resentment. I am Jinx. V waved her gloves. I am V, Law Enforcer Smallville. Horace, who was tall and strong and growing at an astonishing speed, said, I am Horace. Teresa stood at the end and was about to introduce herself. Super Queen interrupted Teresa directly. Very good, so you are the real Justice League of this world. Teresa was about to speak, but she didn't expect to be interrupted directly. She was a little annoyed and glared at Super Queen. Why didn't you interrupt others when they introduced themselves, but you interrupted when it was your turn? It's obvious that you look down on me, a witch, right? Teresa, who felt hurt, completely hated Super Queen. I must find an opportunity to beat this woman up. Peter didn't know that his little daughter was criticizing Super Queen. He shook his head and said to Super Queen, "No, we are not the Justice League. I thought you would stay in your base camp honestly, but I didn't expect you to leave your home base. This is not a good choice." Johnny Quick pinched his waist, glanced at Atom Girl on his shoulder, and asked, "Do you want to bring your children to beat us up?" He didn't take Peter and Raven and others seriously. After all, the Justice League was defeated by his group, so what kind of storm can this Padrick Justice League stir up? "No, you are wrong." Peter shook his head and said to Johnny Quick calmly, "I can deal with you alone." What? The next second, before Johnny Quick could react, a silver energy instantly hit him. Johnny Quick, who was unable to react in time, slammed to the ground, splashing a large amount of dust. Then, vines constructed by countless gods' energy broke out of the ground, directly tied Johnny Quick's feet, and threw him out and smashed him to the ground. Peter defeated Johnny Quick in an instant, leaving everyone in the crime syndicate stunned. Super Queen looked at Peter, who seemed to be strolling in the garden without any effort, and her expression was slightly stunned. Night Owl looked at Peter's movements, and a complex expression appeared on his face. Then Peter's fingertips tapped the void, and the trajectory of a grain of black sand falling suddenly lengthened. The gravel expanded into a 3-meter-high hourglass the moment it touched the ground. What was flowing in the quartz shell was not fine sand, but some kind of magical energy. Damn it! As soon as the red light flashed in the eyes of the super, the hourglass suddenly turned upside down. A vast energy suddenly burst out from the hourglass. The super's thermal vision deflected to one side uncontrollably and shot to the ground. Then the people of the crime syndicate suddenly found that the scenery in front of them had changed abruptly. It was no longer the farm before, but a city that had become a ruin. "What is this?" Deathstorm asked Super and Night Owl in some fear. He was somewhat stunned by Peter's method, and his heart was full of anxiety. "Calm down, we should have been pulled into a fantasy world or some unknown space by Peter Padrick." Night Owl frowned and motioned Deathstorm to calm down. "You are right, this is a dream world." Peter's cold voice came from behind them. Chapter 891 Peter single-handedly challenges the crime syndicate. "This is where you will die. The worst choice you can make is to leave your home ground." As soon as Peter finished speaking, a shock wave of silver energy instantly knocked all the members of the crime syndicate away. Bang! A dull sound rang out, and the members of the crime syndicate who were unable to react fell heavily to the ground. The angry Speedmaster stood up and rushed towards Peter. With a bang, facing the Speedmaster who rushed up, Peter's supersonic fist hit the Speedmaster's jaw. The ruins of the glass curtain wall a few kilometers away were instantly shattered by the sonic boom. The Kryptonian's body was hit by Peter's fist and penetrated a dangerous building. Concrete fragments were ejected from the gap he hit like a cannonball. With a bang, Peter landed in a room in the building, cracking the ground and looking down at the Speedmaster lying on the ground. Step by step, Peter grabbed the other party and swung him towards the exposed steel jungle. Speedmaster leaned back to avoid the piercing blow, but was still hit hard on the ground by the backhand. Seeing Speedmaster's miserable appearance, everyone was stunned. How could Speedmaster be completely powerless to fight back? Just as Speedmaster was defeated, Super Queen and others fell into a sluggish state, and Johnny Quick took action. Johnny Quick's afterimage cut in from the right side and stabbed Peter with a vibrating dagger. Facing the attack of the speedster, Peter twisted his waist to let the blade pass through his body. Too slow, then he counterattacked at a faster speed. Crack! Peter's elbow hit the speedster's chest. The crisp sound of bone cracking was drowned by the sonic boom, and Johnny Quick instantly crashed into the ruins of the gas station. With a boom, the explosion sounded throughout the space. The detonated gasoline caused a rain of fire from the sky, falling from the sky one after another. Peter shook off the blood on his elbow and looked towards the exploding gas station. Johnny Quick was not engulfed by the flames. This guy escaped from the explosion point at the moment the flames exploded. Faced with the powerful fighting power displayed by Peter, Deathstorm finally couldn't stand this oppressive feeling and rushed over. The shock wave constructed by energy rushed towards Peter. Peter used the energy of the gods to construct a barrier, and took the shock wave. He grabbed the fist of the Night Owl on the other side, and burned the heat vision along the energy veins to Deathstorm. With a bang, Deathstorm roared and was rushed out. Faced with Peter's strength, although she felt a sense of fear in her heart, the Super Queen knew that she had to join the battle. She was afraid that if she didn't help, her team would be wiped out by Peter. Patrick. The obedience lasso was controlled by her to fly over and wrapped around Peter's ankle. With a roar, the Super Queen tried to throw Peter to the ground with a swinging force. But the next second, she was pulled back by Peter in midair. With a dong, he grabbed the Super Queen's neck and shook his head at the painful sound coming out of her mouth. Your lasso of obedience doesn't work on me, Super Queen. Peter, who had no sympathy for her, grabbed her hair and threw her against the exposed load-bearing column. Bang! Super Queen was thrown into the ruins and fell to the ground instantly, unable to stand up. Peter looked at the Super Queen, who was full of disbelief, and his expression did not change. Among the members of the crime syndicate, the only ones who might cause trouble to him were Night Owl and Alexander. The normal Speedmaster was also one of them. Looking at the sun shining above the ruined city above his head, Peter shook his head at Speedmaster. It was a pity that this guy was severely weakened. In the dream ruins world he created, the sun above his head emitted strong light, even more intense than the sunlight in the real world. As the opposite of Superman, Speedmaster's abilities and weaknesses were also opposite. He was not afraid of green kryptonite, but was afraid of the yellow sun. The yellow sun was his debuff. So Speedmaster would be easily knocked down by Peter. After being thrown to the ground, Super Queen, who endured the pain, turned over and swung the lasso of truth over, tightening Peter's body. Seeing that the Super Queen used the lasso of obedience to tie up Peter, Superman stood up from the ground with a roar, regardless of his weak body, and raised his fist to attack Peter. With a bang, Peter's body was hit by Superman's fist and shook slightly. But he took advantage of the situation to grab Superman's wrist and threw him over his shoulder. With a bang, Superman fell heavily to the ground, directly penetrated the floor, and was smashed to the next floor. The moment Superman was thrown out, Deathstorm's rotten palm pressed on Peter's back. The molecular reorganization force field began to peel off Peter's skin tissue. Peter endured the discomfort of his body, grabbed the piece of white bone with his backhand, and blasted Deathstorm's eye socket at close range with his thermal vision. The energy collision caused an explosion, and Deathstorm was instantly knocked out. The Super Queen, who used the lasso of obedience, was also blown away by the aftermath of the shockwave. Seeing that everyone was knocked away, Atom Girl wanted to take this opportunity to turn into villain and enter Peter's body. But the moment she flew in, she was pinched by Peter's hand. Damn it, Superman, who fell to the ground, looked at Peter, who was fighting 6 people alone, in shock. He was so weak that he didn't expect this guy to be so difficult to deal with. He looked up at the yellow sun above his head and cursed. Damn it, who is this guy, Peter Patrick? Superman was a little angry and scared. The opponent was not only powerful, but also seemed to know his weaknesses. Night Owl, Super Queen, stop him, I need to block the sun to return to normal. Covering his heart, Superman shouted at Night Owl. Night Owl just heard Superman's voice, nodded, and rushed towards Peter again. Seeing his men blocking Peter, Superman immediately flew into the sky. He was going to drag the moon to block the sunlight, so that he would not have to fight Peter, a powerful enemy, in a state weakened by the sun. When Peter saw Night Owl rushing over, he threw the Atom Girl in his hand away, and then stretched out his arm to block the bat dart shot by Night Owl. You are Night Owl, right? Peter did not act immediately, but asked him coldly. Yes, I am Night Owl. Night Owl looked at him in confusion when he saw Peter didn't do anything. I know what happened in your universe, and I know you, Night Owl. You killed your brother and your parents, and became Night Owl, and gained the dominance of Gotham City. You used intimidation, blackmail, and threats to deal with all the important people in Gotham City. No, not me. I love my brother more than anyone else. Night Owl didn't expect Peter to know his past. When he heard that he killed his brother, he immediately refuted. Love? Do you have love? You embarked on the road of being a tyrant, ruling Gotham with power and maintaining order. Your methods are cold and ruthless, and you even killed the Joker who resisted your rule. Peter said to him with a serious expression, you destroyed everything with your own hands, Night Owl. Peter slowly approached him and said to him in a cold voice, now, Thomas, I'll give you a chance. Stand by me and I will spare your life. He remembered that Night Owl had appeared in various events in the DC world and was quite active. And the other party finally sat on the Mobius chair. Night Owl obtained Metron's Mobius chair and became the god of knowledge. Although before he could obtain knowledge about the universe, Dr. Manhattan appeared and turned Night Owl into a pool of blood. If this guy becomes one of his own, he can be sent out as an undercover agent in the future. After all, he has betrayed his team several times. In the end, in the big event Death Metal, he was very uneasy about the Laughing Bat in power, so he killed Superman and Super Queen with an antimatter gun. Hearing Peter say that he would spare his life, Night Owl was stunned. The other injured members of the crime syndicate who fell to the ground looked at Night Owl with complicated expressions after hearing Peter's words. You know, although you have great power, you understand that the crime syndicate cannot defeat the Anti-Monitor. If you want to defeat him, then surrender to me, and I will choose to let these guys go. Listening to Peter's words, Night Owl fell into a complicated psychological struggle. Now it seems that Peter Padrick is powerful and may be able to defeat the culprit who destroyed his home. If he betrayed the crime syndicate and joined Peter Padrick, it seemed that he could also achieve his goal. He wanted to do so, but felt that if he switched to another camp now, it would disrupt his plan. The other members of the crime syndicate, not knowing what Night Owl was thinking, thought that he really wanted to surrender. Looking at the changing expressions on Night Owl's face, Super Queen's face showed a look of resentment. This guy is really a traitor. On the other side, Bruce took Siri and sneaked into Arkham Asylum. What is your relationship with Mr. Padrick? Batman, Siri asked Batman curiously. Bruce glanced at the scar on Siri's face and whispered, we knew each other a long time ago. At that time, I was still a teenager who knew nothing, so Mr. Padrick always meets or picks up those children who may save the world. Siri suddenly thought of herself. She traveled through different worlds, looking for her own destination, and at the same time looking for the power to stop the end of the world. During this journey, she experienced countless challenges and betrayals. Until I met Peter. I guess Bruce was the same as me back then. As a teenager, Bruce must have had a look in his eyes that showed both fear of the unknown and infinite longing for the future. Then Bruce met Peter, just like me. Bruce listened to Siri's words while walking, his thoughts returned to that rainy day. On that rainy day, I hid in a phone booth and met the Godfather when I was helpless. After walking for a while in the underground passage, the two soon arrived at the target area. This should be where the Vixen is imprisoned. Chapter 892 Batman wears the Yellow Lantern ring? Bruce and Siri entered Arkham from the underground passage. They lifted the metal cover of the sewer and entered a room filled with miscellaneous items. Is this Arkham? Siri hid in the shadows and whispered to Bruce. Yes, we have to be careful. Bruce stood up and looked outside. After confirming that there were no guards nearby, he was about to go out with Siri. Unexpectedly, there was a rustling sound under his feet. Then there was a boom explosion, the ground was blown open, and smoke and dust quickly spread. In the shocked eyes of Bruce and Siri, they saw Captain Cold, the Pied Piper, and the Golden Glider crawling out from underground. The three were all members of the Rogues. The Rogues were founded by Captain Cold, and their members were all enemies of the Flash. The rule was don't kill unless absolutely necessary because it would attract the attention of more superheroes. Further rules of the Rogues include not taking drugs, not harming women or children, avoiding cruel and immature behavior, and not killing each other. If anyone breaks the rules, the Rogues will not hesitate to punish them. Captain Cold has the ability to generate absolute zero and has a freezing gun. The Pied Piper has a flute and can control others by playing it. As for the Golden Glider, her real name is Lisa Snart, she is Captain Cold's sister. She fell into a coma due to a brain tumor. After being cured, she accidentally gained the ability to fly and penetrate matter. She is a member of the Rogues and one of the main villains of the Flash. The three members of the Rogues came out from underground and unexpectedly met Batman. The two groups of people suddenly looked at each other with big eyes. Batman, Captain Cold, subconsciously, Captain Cold pulled out his freezing gun and aimed it at Batman. The relationship between the two sides was not good, and they were on the verge of a fight. Holding the gun tightly, Captain Cold looked at Batman nervously. He was not a member who surrendered to the crime syndicate, but was going to cause trouble for the crime syndicate. A group of the Rogues had attended the crime syndicate meeting before. When they returned to Midtown, they found that the city had been destroyed and in ruins. Deathstorm was ordered to come and inform the Rogues to raze Midtown to the ground. The first was the hospital where Captain Cold's sister was. But the Rogues did not agree, so Captain Cold's ability was taken away by Deathstorm. And now he only had a freezing gun. Be careful. Hide behind me. Bruce pulled Siri behind him and then threw a smoke bomb at the ground. With a boom, the smoke exploded and quickly spread throughout the space. Bruce took advantage of the smoke to hide in a corner of the room with Siri. The golden glider retreated and complained to Captain Cold, "I thought Batman and his accomplices were dead. Do you think the others, like the Flash, are still alive?" "I don't know." Captain Cold shook his head and pointed the freezing gun at Batman and others in the smoke. "Batman is a tough guy. We are in trouble. Fear the light." Captain Cold just finished speaking when a voice came from behind them. Then, in the astonished eyes of the crowd, he turned around and saw a green energy rushing towards him. Bang! The green energy exploded at the feet of the few people, and Captain Cold and his men were blown away before they could react. The smoke quickly dissipated. In the shut eyes of Bruce and Siri, they saw the power ring holding the ring emitting a faint green light and slowly walking towards them. Behind the power ring stood Deathstroke, Solomon Grundy, and the Shadow Demon. These villains all succumbed to the existence of the crime syndicate. The timid power ring suddenly became bolder with his men by his side. "Deathstroke, smash everything that can move and receive," the power ring told Deathstroke to shoot quickly. "Of course, I came here to do this." He raised his gun and shot in the direction of Bruce and Siri. At this time, the power ring also saw Bruce, and a shocked expression appeared on its face. "How is it possible? Isn't Batman dead? How is this guy still alive?" Seeing Batman, who was supposed to be trapped in the Firestorm Matrix, appear here, the power ring immediately panicked. He shouted to Deathstroke, "Kill him for me, kill Batman." Siri saw the bullet coming and immediately dodged it with a nimble posture. "Hey!" Siri rolled on the ground to avoid the shooting of Deathstroke. After getting close, she quickly used the rune magic taught by Peter to condense a ball of fire and rushed over. While forcing Deathstroke back, Siri drew her sword and immediately attacked the enemy. The sword Siri carried with her was called G-Wire, which was a sword core made of meteorite steel and silver plated on the surface. The sword body was slender, the blade was nearly 1 meter, and the weight was only about 1 kilogram, which was very light. And the entire sword body and the hilt were engraved with mysterious ancient runes. This sword, also known as Swallow, carries a powerful mysterious power. Combined with Siri's mysterious body movements, it instantly puts the physical master Deathstroke at a disadvantage. At the same time, the 3 members of the Rogues also faced the female Shadow Demon. "Everyone stay in the light, so that the Shadow Demon can't attack us," Captain Cold said loudly to the other 2 teammates. Light. The golden glider soon saw a beam of light shining towards them. To her surprise, it was a yellow light. The shocked Rogues looked towards the place where the yellow light came from. As a result, they saw that Batman was wearing the Yellow Lantern ring. Batman, who was wearing the Yellow Lantern ring, had a yellow glow in his eyes, and the symbol of fear appeared on his chest. The Green Lantern is driven by willpower, while the Yellow Lantern ring, which represents the power of fear, is driven by fear. The Yellow Lantern ring came to Batman to choose him before, but he refused because he didn't need this meaningless burden. But now, Bruce chose to wear the Yellow Lantern ring to fight against the power ring. Bruce, wearing the Yellow Lantern ring, exuded a terrifying power, causing the power ring to show a horrified expression on its face. "Fear your divine light," Bruce made a hoarse voice with a breath of fear. "Now, it's my turn." Before he finished speaking, Bruce instantly released a yellow energy, knocking the power ring away. Bruce, wearing the fear ring, used the fear buried deep in his heart to drive the ring. Bruce, who has a strong will, also has deep fear in his heart. The tragic death of his parents in the alley that night has always been a nightmare that he cannot erase from his heart. Roaring, Bruce used the Yellow Lantern ring to materialize a group of Batman, flying towards the power ring. "No. Stop!" The power ring, which was attacked by fear, immediately used its power ring to create countless giant snakes, rushing towards the bats that Bruce materialized. "Snakes eat bats," as the power ring spoke. The snakes he created entangled the bats and devoured them instantly. The snake rushed to Bruce and bit off the Yellow Lantern ring in his hand. Seeing that he easily snatched the Yellow Lantern ring from Bruce, the power ring was instantly ecstatic. "Ha! Others in the Alliance will look at me with new eyes. That's it, the biggest turning point in my life." The proud power ring looked at the Yellow Lantern ring that he had snatched. "This idiotic thing, it can't hurt me." Crack! As his voice fell, the yellow lantern ring in the power ring's hand was instantly crushed into powder. "You said the yellow lantern ring can't hurt you." Just as the power ring was feeling proud, a voice came from behind him. The power ring heard the voice and turned his head in astonishment, only to see a red-faced mustache man hanging in the air. The other person was wearing a ring that emitted yellow light, and the whole person was surrounded by a strong aura. Boom! Then the red-faced man released a burst of energy from his left hand, which exploded around the power ring. The power ring, which was affected by the shock wave, was instantly blown away. Looking at the power ring lying in the ruins, the red-faced man, Sinestro, showed a scornful smile. "I have reservations about the question of whether the yellow lantern ring can hurt you." Looking at the sudden appearance of Sinestro, the rogues and Siri at the scene were all stunned. Batman not only wore the yellow lantern ring, but the yellow lantern ring also attracted Sinestro. As the person involved, the power ring was completely filled with fear at this time. Without any hesitation, after releasing a green energy towards the people present, the power ring drilled into the sewer of the room, preparing to use the sewer system to escape. Huff. Huff. After running for an unknown period of time, the power ring stopped in the dirty and smelly underground passage, breathing heavily. Leaning against the wall, stroking his forehead with his hand, the power ring's heart was in a mess. He suddenly thought of his childhood. He ran like this at that time. When he was a child, those older children chased him and his sister while calling their names. The group of older kids had bad intentions and held the power ring and his sister in contempt, just because of their father's notorious reputation. Sometimes he didn't run fast enough, and whenever that happened, he would stop and tell his sister to keep running, run to the field and hide until it was over, then he would turn around and stand there until he fell. Standing in the sewer, the power ring recalled his childhood memories and looked at a hidden corner. He wanted to break the metal rod in the window in the corner and leave the dirty and smelly sewer. As a result, the ring was not satisfied and shouted at him impatiently, "The energy index is low, you poor thing, charge me up, shh." The power ring made a gesture to the ring to stop talking. "Shut up, or he'll hear you. I just want to recharge. Let's talk after you recharge, you'll kill us." That was Sinestro of Karuga. Countless creatures in this universe are afraid of his mighty power. The ring saw its master cowering with a frightened expression, and advised him, "This is your chance. Are you tired of living in fear? Then show him that you've had enough. Stop being a coward." Chapter 893 Siri vs. Deathstroke. Don't let others look down on you and lie like a coward. The ring tried to encourage its cowardly owner to stand up. "I will give you a stronger power than him." Listening to the ring's words, the power ring gradually calmed down. He took a deep breath nervously and asked the ring in his hand, "Can you really do it?" "Of course, I can do it. Now, make a wish." The power ring looked in other directions nervously and panicked to make sure that the enemy had not caught up. "I sincerely wish that I want to be the strongest among them." The power ring stood up while speaking. The heart that was originally filled with fear was now filled with courage. He didn't want to live so cowardly now. He wanted to become the most powerful supervillain among the members of the crime syndicate. Clenching his fists, he cast his eyes towards the entrance of the sewer. He heard the footsteps of Yellow Lantern Sinestro approaching. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." With a brief blessing of courage, the power ring rushed towards Sinestro. Siri and Bruce from Arkham Asylum did not chase after the power ring. Now they were fighting with the villains following the crime syndicate. Siri evaded Deathstroke's attack with her nimble body, then dodged and slashed forward. Siri's long sword drew an arc of light, but was blocked by Deathstroke's armor. After failing to hit, Siri stepped back to avoid a sweeping carbon fiber stick. Before the sparks from the collision between the sheen armor and the sword had dissipated, Deathstroke's left hand had already pulled out a submachine gun. Seeing the other party take out the submachine gun, Siri's pupils shrank suddenly, and she turned around and hid behind a load-bearing pillar while throwing out the Yurden seal. Bang! Amid the debris of the pillar's explosion, Siri rushed towards another heavy pillar. Taking advantage of the other party's opportunity to dodge the seal, she rushed over with her sword raised. The long sword passed by Deathstroke's throat. After narrowly avoiding Siri's attack, Deathstroke's tactical knife stabbed Siri's sword wrist from an incredible angle, forcing her to let go of the sword. The moment the hilt of the sword fell to the ground, Siri gritted her teeth and kicked at the wrist bone of Deathstroke holding the gun. The moment the gun flew into the air, she grabbed the falling hilt and turned to cut horizontally. Deathstroke flipped backwards, and the sword cut off his breastplate. The moment his skin was cut, blood splattered. "Who are you?" Taking a step back, Deathstroke looked at Siri in shock. His voice was processed by a voice changer, and it was hoarse like sandpaper rubbing. Siri's difficulty exceeded his expectations. He had never heard of such a person around Gotham and Batman before. "I am Cyrilla Fiona Ellen Lingren, Princess of Sintra, Princess of Nilfgaard, adopted daughter of the Witcher Geralt, and student of Peter Padrick." Siri brushed away the silver hair that fell and covered her eyes and said to Deathstroke, "Peter Padrick, it's him again. I've heard of him." Deathbull covered his wound. "I want to try and see what kind of strength Peter Padrick students have." Deathbull rushed over. Deathbull's speed suddenly increased and rushed to Siri. He rushed forward and took a straight stab with his shoulder armor. His left hand grabbed Siri's wrist holding the sword and twisted it clockwise. Crack! The bones made a tooth-grinding friction sound. Siri reacted quickly in shock. He turned in the air in the direction of the torque and twisted his legs around Deathbull's neck like scissors. With a bang, the two rolled and crashed into the abandoned shelf. The rusty metal mesh groaned and deformed under the heavy pressure. Siri's swallow longsword slipped out of his hand and inserted into a nearby wooden box. The hilt was still trembling. Deathbull saw Siri's longsword being knocked away, and immediately used an elbow to hit Siri's temple. Facing Deathbull's sudden rise, Siri's pupils glowed with emerald light. A space crack swallowed her body at the critical moment, and then it tore open again behind Deathstroke. Siri appeared from the space crack behind Deathstroke and slashed at the cervical vertebra with her hand knife. Deathstroke was stunned by Siri's move. Seeing Siri attacking, he subconsciously used the tactical long stick to intercept. But Siri's action was faster, and a mark engraved with runes hit Deathstroke. Bang! Deathstroke was smashed and flew out. Deathstroke fell to the ground, and the short stick was also thrown away. Enduring the severe pain from his back, he tried to stand up, but Siri's rune flew over and he couldn't move instantly. After getting rid of Deathstroke, Siri let out a long breath, walked to the nearby box, and took down the longsword inserted in it. "It seems that I didn't lose face for Geralt and Peter." Siri neatly inserted the sword into the scabbard and said to Deathstroke, who fell to the ground and gasped. The battle between Siri and Deathstroke has been decided, while Bruce has also put Copperhead at a disadvantage. Copperhead is a famous villain in Gotham. This guy was originally an ordinary person with no superpowers. His fighting power comes from his good skills and the Copperhead uniform, which is covered with snake scales, very slippery, and has a strong tail as a weapon. Once he loses his uniform, Copperhead is just an ordinary fighter. But in the previous Unbanned in the Underworld event, the demon Nilong returned to the world, and many villains chose to trade with him, including Copperhead. Nilong gave Copperhead real power and turned him into a half-human, half-snake creature. Now half-human, half-snake, Copperhead, who surrendered to the crime syndicate, launched an attack on Bruce. Although Bruce was very embarrassed at the beginning because his injuries had not been completely healed, Bruce gradually took control of the situation and completely gained the upper hand. Turning around and twisting his waist, Bruce kicked out and knocked Copperhead out heavily. As the Copperhead fell to the ground, Siri instantly threw out a magic sign to knock it unconscious. Breathing slightly, Bruce looked at Siri, who had already defeated Deathstroke, with a slightly surprised expression on his face. Deathstroke was no small character. How could Siri defeat him? Bruce had a new respect for Siri. Siri and Bruce dealt with their respective enemies, while the battle between the three members of the Rogue Gang and the Shadow Fiend on the other side also became fierce. Captain Cold and his three companions had been forced into the sewer by the Shadow Fiend. Bang! 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 Captain Cold kept firing bullets, but they were all dodged by the Shadow Fiend, who turned into phantoms. "You once pledged allegiance to the Syndicate, Yanhan?" While attacking, Shadow Fiend asked Captain Cold, "Why did you rebel against them? Rebellion? I have never pledged allegiance to them. Besides, they are not worthy of my loyalty." Seeing that Captain Cold was stubborn, Shadow Fiend emerged from the shadows and attacked Captain Cold. "Then you go to hell." "No, you are wrong, Shadow Fiend, they are the ones who will die." A voice suddenly came from behind Shadow Fiend, followed by two scarlet energy shocks. Shadow Fiend screamed in time to react, and his lower body was instantly shocked into black matter by the scarlet heat. The black sticky pus fell to the ground with a click. Captain Cold looked at the person who emitted the scarlet energy with astonishment, and found that it was Black Manta. Black Manta was originally a patient in Arkham Asylum. Because he was born with autism, he was afraid and hated staying in bed, but the administrator of Arkham Asylum did not know how to treat autistic patients, so he always tied him to the bed and let him struggle and scream. He would escape to the cold water, where he would feel comfortable and at ease. Later, he accepted an experiment that affected his brain and made his behavior violent. In the end, he killed the experimenter and escaped from Arkham Asylum. Later, because his father was killed by Aquaman, he and Aquaman became irreconcilable enemies. After the invasion of the crime syndicate, Aquaman's whereabouts were unknown. Black Manta, who thought that Aquaman was killed by the crime syndicate, thought that the other party had taken away his only goal, so he chose to cooperate with Captain Cold and others to fight against the crime syndicate. You are a little late, Black Manta. Seeing the arrival of Black Manta, Captain Cold breathed a sigh of relief. We are just temporary allies. You can't control me. He glanced at the half-dead shadow demon on the ground and said to Captain Cold and the other two, let's go. In an underground facility somewhere in Arkham Asylum, the questioner, that is, Alfred of Earth 3, didn't know that the power rings and many recruited villains that were protecting the asylum were in trouble. Now, he was looking at the man tied to a chair and covered with a sack in front of him. Sorry, I can't let you out, because once you let you out, all of our lives will be in danger. As soon as the questioner finished speaking, his neck was grabbed by a hand from behind. Being grabbed by the throat, the questioner felt a suffocating feeling. He tried his best to look back and found that it was a man wearing a black diving helmet who grabbed him. Black Manta grabbed the questioner and stabbed a long dagger in his right hand into the other's back without hesitation. Puff, blood spurted out, and the questioner felt a sharp pain. Blood overflowed from his mouth. Ahem, coughing painfully, the questioner fell to the ground with a thud. Blood flowed out from his back, forming a pool of dirty blood in an instant. Putting away the sharp knife, Black Manta made a hoarse and dull voice. They all have to die? Looking at the decisive killing Black Manta, Captain Cold was slightly stunned. He didn't expect this guy to be so cruel. Compared to him, his own rogue gang was considered good people. Yes, we have to kill them all. Captain Cold coughed and looked at the man in front of him who was tied up and covered with a sack. Is he also a member of the syndicate? I don't know. Black Manta looked at a mysterious man in front of him and frowned. After hesitating for a moment, he walked over and took the sack off the other's head. Chapter 894 The Super Queen Wants to Surrender. What caught the eyes of several people was a thin man with messy brown hair and a beard. Not only was the man tied up, but even his mouth was blocked by a rag. Who is he? Several people looked at the tied man and looked at each other. Captain Cold glanced at the man's eyes and said to everyone, I think he seems to want to tell us something. The tied man nodded and made a sound. Black Manta thought that since this guy was tied up, he should not be a dangerous person, so he walked up and took the cloth out of his mouth. After the cloth in his mouth was taken away, the man thanked Black Manta and Captain Cold's trio. Thank you, you helped me a lot. How can I thank you? I am Alexander Luthor. I want to thank you very much. As he spoke, the corner of the man's mouth showed a playful smile. Looking at the smile of the man in front of him, Black Manta immediately realized that something was wrong. It seems that he shouldn't take the cloth out of his mouth. Shazam! Before Black Manta could make any move, the skinny man shouted Shazam! Boom! As he shouted Shazam, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky. The black lightning broke through the ground and went directly underground, impacting the space where several people were. The black lightning carried a powerful force and hit the ground, knocking Black Manta and several people away. Alexander, who was struck by lightning, suddenly grew in size and became a strong man wearing armor with a lightning logo on his chest. I am Alexander Luthor. I am the greatest superhero in the world. Lex Luthor from another world with lightning in his eyes made his own declaration. Just the opposite of Lex Luthor in the main world, Lex from Earth 3 not only has no bald head, but also has a thick head of hair. Just a lush beard can be seen. And this Lex Luthor from another world has the power of lightning and the ability to transform into Shazam. Now that he was completely released, he was determined to let the world witness his power, and he would also settle accounts with the crime syndicate. After Alexander Luthor was released, Bruce and Siri were the first to notice it. The two successfully found the imprisoned Vixen, and were about to leave when they saw the black lightning that struck down from the sky, carrying a terrible destructive aura. Both of them were stunned. Vixen was weak and was supported by Siri. She raised her head, stared at the black lightning in the distance and asked the two, "What is that?" "I don't know," But it must be something bad, Sari shook her head and said to Vixen. She suddenly had a bad premonition in her heart. Should she contact Peter? Siri suddenly felt that things might be a little out of control. On the other side, Sinestro was fighting with a power ring. Holding the yellow lantern ring, he released a shock wave and hit the power ring heavily. With a bang, the power ring was hit by this energy and hit the wall of the sewer. Sinestro attacked the power ring while saying, "You are a strange being. You look like Hal Jordan, but from any angle, you can't be him, nor any other Green Lantern." The power ring stood up, gritted his teeth and used the ring to release a shock wave, knocking Sinestro away. "I'm not a Green Lantern. I'm the Ringmaster. I'm tired of being bullied. Now, I want to fight back and become the most powerful supervillain." Bang! Sinestro was smashed to the ground. But he stood up instantly, materialized a huge chainsaw, and rushed towards the power ring. The power ring barely materialized a barrier, but it was quickly broken by Sinestro. Sinestro flew behind him, grabbed his neck, and completely clamped him. "That's enough, Ringmaster, just stop here." With Sinestro's arm strangling his throat, the power ring suddenly felt a breath difficulty. "No, I can't breathe, help." Seeing that its master was so useless, the ring had to remind him, "Stop wailing, you idiot, fight back." "No, I can't do it." Just as the divine power ring was about to beg for mercy with a face full of fear, a boom sound suddenly came from the distance. Sinestro raised his head in confusion and saw a black lightning in Arkham Asylum reaching the ground. Then a powerful breath swept into the surrounding space. Sinestro, with a frown on his face, had no intention of playing with the divine power ring anymore. Holding the chainsaw materialized by the yellow light ring, he chopped at the divine power ring's left arm. Puff! The divine power ring's arm was chopped off directly amidst the splattering of blood. The divine power ring let out a painful scream. With a thump, he fell to the ground powerlessly. As his arm separated from his body, the ring also lost its host. It is detected that the host has suffered irreversible damage, and the search for a new host has begun. The ring made a sound, and then it automatically detached from the finger that fell to the ground and flew away. The power ring fell in a pool of blood, twitching for a while, and watched his ring turn into a light point in the sky and gradually disappear, with a relieved smile on his face. "It's finally gone. I'm finally not controlled by it." Although he lost the ring and the power, he felt a sense of relief. He has always been just an ordinary person who is cowardly and has no ambition. But by mistake, he was chosen by the ring to become the host. He has been enslaved by the ring, instead of controlling the ring like Green Lantern. The dependence of the power ring on the ring is similar to drug addiction. He hates the control of the ring, but he can't get rid of its power. This contradiction leads to his strong self-loathing. He tried to take off the ring, but the fear of the emptiness of losing power forced him to put it on again. But putting on the ring made him more painful. Now, everything is finally over, without pain, without those emptiness and fear. Thank you, the power ring thanked Sinestro weakly. "You're welcome." Sinestro, who was suspended in the air, emitted a burst of energy from the yellow lantern ring in his hand, which impacted the body of the power ring. Boom! The yellow energy instantly blasted the member of the crime syndicate into powder. After dealing with the power ring, Sinestro flew towards the place where the black lightning was emitted. At the same time, at Padrick Farm, Peter was in the dream space he created. The people of the crime syndicate were almost suffocated by him alone. Facing Peter, Night Owl didn't even have the mind to fight. Facing Peter's promise of "I will let you go if you surrender," Night Owl had a fierce ideological struggle in his heart. Peter was about to say something else, but his brows suddenly frowned. A more powerful and evil breath came faintly from the direction of Gotham. "Who is this?" Peter raised his head and looked towards the distant Gotham. Could it be Alexander Luthor? According to his memories of the crime syndicate after sitting on the golden toilet, in addition to the crime syndicate, Earth 3 also has a superhero. Although he is a superhero, this guy is not a good person. Alexander Luthor, who has the power of Shazam and can transform, can also absorb the energy of others for his own use. In a sense, this guy is more dangerous than Superman. Seeing Peter suddenly fall into deep thought, Super Queen covered her wound and looked at him in doubt. She wanted to take action, but she was worried that if she took action, she would be ravaged by Peter again. Although she hated and feared the enemy in front of her, Super Queen had a faint feeling of longing to be conquered in her heart. Because she was completely eager to be conquered by the strong. In the inverted moral values of Earth 3, the Amazons are not warriors who pursue peace, but predators who advocate conquest and violence. As the leader of the Amazons, Super Queen consolidated her power through bloody means and became a core member of the crime syndicate. She ruled as a law of survival and believed that the weak could only surrender. She was eyeing the leadership of the crime syndicate, often fighting openly and secretly with Superman and Night Owl, and even secretly planning to usurp the throne. And she was also entangled with Alexander, because Alexander was also a powerful man. In general, she is a person who worships strong men, despises the weak, and believes that women should rely on strong men. Originally, her plan was to unite with Alexander to overthrow the syndicate and Superman, but now she suddenly wavered in her plan. Or now, turning to the more powerful man in front of her, named Peter Patrick, is the most beneficial choice for her. The Super Queen, whose face kept changing, was already thinking about how to stand on Peter's side. Anyway, her side would definitely not succeed. She suspected that Alexander might not be a man's opponent. But if she switched to Peter Patrick, what would happen to the child in her belly? The child in her belly was neither Superman's nor Night Owl's. If she had known earlier, she would not have had a child with that man. The Super Queen fell into deep regret. Peter didn't know that the Super Queen was plotting against him. He looked up at the sky and knew that Superman was flying towards the sky and was about to push the moon to block the sun. Peter naturally would not let him do what he wanted. Reaching out his hand, a powerful energy that frightened everyone flew towards the moon. The silver energy emitted a powerful pressure like a rainbow piercing the sun. Boom, the moon was directly hit by this powerful energy. Night Owl and his group were stunned. Chapter 895 Mark vs. Johnny Quick, The Meaning of Power. The silver god energy exploded with a force that frightened everyone in the crime syndicate. A silver energy instantly shot up into the sky. The moon that stretched across the sky was hit by this energy and exploded violently. Everything that existed in the dream world was transformed by Peter using the power of the sleep demon. After realizing that Speedmaster wanted to push the moon and block the sun that weakened him, Peter immediately used his power to destroy the moon. Super Queen looked up at the disappearing moon and was stunned. Just a casual blow destroyed the moon? After cutting off Speedmaster's idea of using the moon to fight back, Peter calmly cast his eyes on Night Owl. Night Owl, have you made a decision? Do you stay and let your team leave, or do you continue to work together to resist me? Night Owl hesitated for a moment, glanced at the people in the crime syndicate, and then looked at the moon that had disappeared above his head, and secretly made up his mind. I'll stay, Patrick, you let them go. Very good, it seems you made the right choice. Peter nodded with satisfaction. Now, Night Owl, Super Queen, tell me where Diana, Flash and Green Lantern are, and hand over Firestorm. Although the people of the crime syndicate wanted to resist, they knew that they could not defeat Peter without Superman, so they had to tell him where Firestorm was. Pull Azu into the dream world, and then Peter asked him to confirm whether Firestorm was there. A few minutes later, Azu, who left the dream world, quickly found Firestorm and brought him back. Under the reluctant operation of Deathstorm, Diana and the others were released. Released from the Firestorm Matrix space, Diana's head was a little dizzy. When she was a little more awake, she saw that it was Super Queen and her group standing opposite her, and she immediately became angry. Asshole, clenching her fists, Diana was ready to attack Super Queen. Diana had no good feelings for these bastards who attacked her, especially her own isomorph from another world. What she wanted to do most now was to kill the other self immediately. Wait, Diana. Just as Diana was about to act, Peter called her. Peter, seeing Peter standing in front of her, Diana stopped in surprise. You saved me, you can say that. Peter walked up to Diana, who was stunned, and said to her, don't do it for now. I promise to let them go. If you want revenge, you can wait until they go back. Diana heard Peter say that he let them go, and asked in confusion, why did you let them go? Because I promised them. Looking at Peter's eyes, Diana wanted to say that these guys were not trustworthy. But she didn't say it in the end. In the long time of getting along, she has always had a considerable trust in Peter. In addition, she already thought that the two of them had confirmed their relationship, and she should refute Peter in person. Okay, Diana calmed herself down and looked at Super Queen and said, even if they leave now, I will find them and kill them. As soon as Diana finished speaking, Night Owl came over. The Flash and Green Lantern, who didn't know the situation, subconsciously wanted to take action. Wait, Hal, Barry, he is not an enemy now, Hearing Peter's words, Barry was slightly stunned. Are you sure? Mr. Padraic, of course. Seeing Peter's firm attitude, Barry didn't dare to do anything, and shrugged his shoulders. You saved me again now, sir. I listened to you. Bang. Waiting for the expressionless Superman to fall heavily to the ground from the sky. What he saw was Night Owl standing behind Peter, as well as the Flash and Green Lantern, and the angry Diana. He was originally in a bad mood because of the destruction of the moon, and now seeing Night Owl defecting and Wonder Woman and her group escaping, his face became even uglier. Peter looked at the members of the crime syndicate with different expressions, and casually lifted the dream world. As the dream world disappeared, the members of the crime syndicate found themselves standing in Smallville again. The surroundings were no longer broken buildings, but farmlands with vast land. After releasing the members of the crime syndicate, Peter said to them, "You can leave now. It seems that someone has been released from your base. I think this will be a bigger problem for you." When he heard Peter say that someone from his base had been released, Superman's face changed. Something must have happened in Alexandria. Without bothering to investigate the betrayal of Night Owl, Superman immediately flew to Gotham. Super Queen looked at Peter deeply, and then followed Superman. Then Deathstorm, Atom Girl and Flash Quick also left Smallville. Seeing Superman and others leave, Raven, who was waiting outside, came up and asked Peter, "Dad, are we really going to let them go?" As she spoke, she looked at Night Owl behind Peter. Also, is this guy trustworthy? They can't escape, and they will face a more powerful enemy next, Peter said to Raven in a calm tone. Although he said so, what he was thinking in his heart was, if all these villains were killed by him, how can you, a bunch of naughty kids, exercise? Peter was talking to Raven, and other fathers gathered. Clark, who was late because of something and didn't have time to introduce himself to the crime syndicate, also rushed over. "Dad, what is that?" Teresa suddenly pointed at the strange phenomenon in the sky in the distance and made a surprised sound. Peter looked up at the sky. The sky full of dark clouds suddenly appeared a red crack across the sky. The red mark seemed to open a hole in the sky, emitting bursts of red mist. The strange phenomenon in front of them stunned everyone present. Tom's expression became a little serious. "It's like the sky is bleeding." Feeling the ominous breath emanating from the long red crack, Raven frowned and said, "It doesn't seem to be a good thing in here." The Night Owl standing behind Peter said to Raven and the others in a hoarse voice, "It's the culprit who destroyed our world. He found us." "What exactly is it?" Clark asked him curiously. Night Owl glanced at Superman, whom he met for the first time, and said, "Peter should know what that is. Anyway, this guy should be one of the most powerful beings in the multiverse. Maybe something happened here that attracted his attention." Tom snorted coldly, "Stop exaggerating. If he really wanted to come, he would have come long ago." Peter listened to the discussion of the crowd, turned to the weak Firestorm who was supported by Green Lantern and said, "We have to fill the crack in the sky. Can you do it, Firestorm?" "Yes, but I may need more energy replenishment. I have never done something of this level," Firestorm said a little unconfidently. When he was attacked and controlled by Deathstorm, he saw some of Deathstorm's memories and knew that he had repaired such a crack in the sky in his own world. The two have almost the same power, to transform matter at the atomic level. Deathstorm can do it, and you can do it too. "It doesn't matter, I'll do it here with you." Peter will not let the Anti-Monitor in now. Now there are already the guys like the crime syndicate, and it will be more troublesome if there is another Anti-Monitor. Moreover, the Anti-Monitor has bad intentions and may launch an attack on the Earth at any time. After speaking to Firestorm, Peter cast his eyes on Clark and said to him, "Clark, you and Mark go to the asylum to bring Bruce and Siri back." He had just received the information that Siri sent to him through the sand. Although the communication of the entire world has been cut off, Siri can still transmit information through the sand. After learning that Bruce and Siri were not on the Red Room laboratory, but in Arkham, Peter immediately realized that the two might have gone to the lair of the crime syndicate, so he asked Clark and Mark to rush to support and bring the two back. On the other side, Superman flew to Arkham Asylum with a belly full of anger. He didn't expect that he would lose so badly. Under the irradiation of the yellow sun, he actually had no power to fight back against Peter Patrick. Why have I never seen this guy in my universe? Or is this guy a variable, not existing in my universe, but the only existence in this world? Superman fell into deep thought. The group soon arrived in Arkham. As soon as Superman entered, he was attacked by Sinestro. Although he was worried about Alexander Luthor's situation, He could only fight with Sinestro in front of him. Johnny Quick and Atom Girl flew towards the room where Alexander was imprisoned. As a result, before they saw Alexander, they saw Batman and Siri leaving with Vixen. Seeing that several people were about to escape, Johnny Quick immediately chased after them. Seeing that the red speedster was about to catch up with Bruce and Siri, a figure bang landed on the ground. Mark, wearing glasses and wearing the uniform of the invincible young warrior, rushed towards Johnny Quick. Bang! With a dull sound, Johnny Quick, who was unable to react in time, was hit hard and flew out. Hitting the ground, Johnny Quick's figure plowed along the ground for more than 10 meters before stopping. Covering his chest that was hit, Johnny Quick stood up from the ground with pain. "It's you. You are Peter Patrick's son, the invincible young warrior." Johnny Quick looked at Mark hanging in the air in surprise. "Yes, I am the invincible young warrior. Just because your father lets you go doesn't mean I will let you go." Mark's glasses flashed with light, and he said to him sternly. "You?" Johnny Quick glanced at the atomic girl on his shoulder, with a sneer on his lips. "Just because your father can easily defeat us doesn't mean you can." Chapter 896 Clark is cuckolded. "Today, I will let you know the difference between you and me. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I will take you and your father as an exchange. Be careful." Just as Siri reminded Mark to be careful, Johnny Quick took action. Johnny Quick's afterimage quickly passed over Mark's left wing, and the air was rubbed and made a crackling sound. Mark's uniform was instantly charred, but the injured muscle fibers quickly healed themselves. As a member of the Vitram clan, Mark has a strong self-healing ability. To deal with the speedster, Mark concentrated his mind and used his eyes to capture the opponent's trajectory. "You are slower than a turtle," Johnny mocked him. Facing the speedster's attack, Mark suddenly punched the void on the right. Boom! The vacuum belt created by the shock wave of dozens of tons just cut off the speedster's evasive route. Johnny Quick was shocked and stopped immediately. His silver-white combat boots plowed a gully on the road. Mark immediately kicked the ground and flew into the air, and the concrete fragments chased the opponent like shotguns. Johnny Quick snaked through the barrage of bullets, dodging the attack of the concrete blocks. Taking advantage of Johnny Quick's momentary pause, Mark dived to grab him. But he only hugged a ball of air. Johnny Quick suddenly attacked from behind, stabbing Mark's crown with a dagger. Mark's expression in the air suddenly became solemn. He deliberately used his shoulder blade to take the blow. Before the sound of bone breaking, Mark grabbed Johnny's ankle with his right hand. Bang! Bang! The two of them smashed through the cell of Arkham Asylum in a free-fall. With a bang, the two fell heavily to the ground. Mark, who fell to the ground, shook his head, and his cells began to boil. Facing Johnny Quick's dagger attack, Mark's eyesight became stronger. The injury just now not only did not weaken his fighting ability, but made him more focused. Bang! Johnny's afterimage appeared in the air, and his nose bridge was unnaturally concave. Mark punched the opponent heavily to the ground. Without giving the opponent any chance to breathe, Mark rushed over at lightning speed and pressed his knee against the speedster's chest. "You lose," Mark panted slightly, looking at Johnny Quick, who was lying on the ground and being pinned down by him. Next to him was Atom Girl, who was lying on the ground and injured. During the fight just now, Atom Girl had been trying to get into Mark's body, but Mark's body was harder than she expected, so she could not get into Mark's body. "You can't defeat me, and you can't bring me to my father." Mark's tone was filled with a hint of pride. "Who the hell are you?" Johnny Quick looked at Mark's shoulder that was stabbed by the dagger and found that the other party's wound had completely healed. With a face full of shock, he asked Mark, "Why do you have such a fast speed? And the ability to heal yourself?" "I am the invincible young man, or you can call me the invincible young man. I am the son of Peter Patrick, and I am the one who defeated you," Mark said to Johnny Quick. "People like you who don't know how to really use power can't defeat me. Then what is the power in your world?" Johnny Quick showed a sarcastic expression on his face. "Power represents responsibility, which is something you evil guys will never understand." Mark's face was full of firm strength. Before going to the world of the invincible young man, Mark regarded superpowers as a simple gift. But after knowing the massacre of the omnipotent man in another world and everything that the other Mark experienced, he began to understand the irreversible cost of power. He also knew the meaning of power. "You think you are absolutely righteous, farm boy. Why didn't the righteous force come to save us when our world was destroyed?" Johnny Quick sneered at Mark. "You think your father is righteous? No, you are wrong. He is a more terrible person with selfish desires. Hearing Johnny Quick slandering Peter, Mark was furious and grabbed Johnny Quick and threw him out. Bang! Johnny Quick fell to the ground and rolled over, hitting a wall before he barely stopped. Seeing Johnny being thrown out, Atom Girl immediately flew over to see if her lover was okay. As a result, a black lightning suddenly struck, and with a boom, the lightning with powerful power instantly shook Atom Girl, who was about to approach. Seeing the black lightning appear, Mark, Bruce, and Siri, who was supporting the female fox, looked up in shock. After the smoke caused by the black lightning dissipated, several people saw Alexander Luthor appear in the air with the lightning logo on his chest and wearing the Black Adam uniform of this world. "Look, Atom Girl, your speedster can't run away anymore." Alexander glanced at Johnny Quick, who was lying on the ground, and said with a smile on his face. "No." Seeing Alexander appear, Atom Girl took a step back in shock. "Why were you released?" In the shocked and terrified eyes of Atom Girl, Alexander slowly landed beside Johnny Quick. Reaching out his hand, he grabbed Johnny Quick, who was trying to stand up. Strangling his neck, Alexander made a voice that frightened Johnny Quick. "Don't run away anymore, Johnny, you bad boy." Boom! Johnny Quick screamed in pain as a lightning bolt was released from Alexander's hand. He felt his vitality being sucked away by Alexander. No, don't do that." Johnny Quick tried to break free from Alexander's sucking, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move. "Your life ends here, Johnny. From now on your power will be used by me, Pa." Johnny Quick, whose energy was sucked away, fell to the ground with his eyes open and eyes wide open. Mark, Bruce, Siri, and Vixen were all stunned by the scene. "Who are you?" Bruce asked him with a frown. "What an idiot." Alexander showed a fierce expression on his face. "I am Alexander Luthor. I will kill all of you. I am the most powerful superhero in the world." Looking at Alexander, who absorbed Johnny Quick's power, Mark's expression became serious in an instant. There is no doubt that this guy in front of him should be more difficult to deal with than Johnny Quick. Just as the two groups were confronting each other, Clark also rushed over. Clark had separated from Mark before, and had a conflict with Super Queen and Deathstorm during the search. After feeling the momentum from Alexander, he immediately abandoned the two and rushed to Mark. And after the Superman repelled Sinestro, he rushed to the scene. Seeing Alexander, Superman immediately realized that things had become troublesome. Alexander had broken free from his restraints and exchanged for Zanch's lightning, which meant that he had once again connected the superpowers of those members of the crime syndicate who died tragically at his hands. Deathstorm looked at Alexander in the air and whispered to Superman. "What should we do? Control him again and make him change back?" "Just use the Super Queen's lasso of obedience." As he spoke, Superman looked at the Super Queen. As a result, the scene in front of him shocked him. The Super Queen, who was originally a member of their team, actually stood behind Alexander in the air. After Night Owl chose to join Peter Padrick, Super Queen now betrayed him. Night Owl and Super Queen had always been somewhat at odds with each other, but he didn't expect that both of them betrayed him. If Night Owl was still excusable, the current Super Queen was absolutely unforgivable. The Super Queen, who was standing next to Alexander, said to the stunned Superman and Deathstorm, "I am now with the father of my unborn child." Alexander nodded to Superman and said, "Yes, this is our child." Hearing the two say that the child in the Super Queen's belly was not his, Superman instantly became furious. He had asked Super Queen about pregnancy before, and the other party swore to him that the child was his. He didn't expect that he was being cuckolded now. The Superman gritted his teeth and cursed at the Super Queen. "Wheeze, you traitor, bitch." "Why?" The Super Queen replied calmly, "It's simple, because he is stronger than you, Clark. As long as I can protect my child, I am willing to fight for everything." She approached Alexander and took his arm. "Clark, you are not Peter Padrick's opponent. You can't defeat him. I can feel that you are afraid of Peter Padrick, just like the monster that ravaged our Earth. So, I can't follow you, because I need a strong man." The Superman listened to the Super Queen's words, and a red light flashed in his eyes. He said to Alexander angrily, "I should have killed you, Luthor." Alexander said to him with a faint sarcasm at the corner of his mouth, "You can't do this. I will kill you and then kill the guy named Peter Padrick." Without waiting for Alexander to finish, the Superman rushed towards him. He grabbed Alexander's clothes and rushed to the sky with him. Being caught by the Superman, Alexander remained calm. In the whistling wind, he said to Speedmaster, "You may be stronger than me, Speedmaster, but that was a long time ago, before I killed Hawkman, Will Baston, and Johnny Quick. You can't be my opponent now, Hawkman. Hawkman holds an ancient weapon, and his wings are artificially made of metal and fixed with a strap. He and Hawkgirl fly in the air together to fight criminals. Before he finished speaking, Alexander suddenly punched Speedmaster. With a bang, Speedmaster was hit and flew backwards. Siri, Bruce, Mark, and Raven in Arkham were completely stunned when they saw the scene in front of them. None of them expected to see a bloody drama of a love triangle with their own eyes. And these two people actually fought. What should we do now? Siri asked everyone in a daze. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 897, The First Gathering of the Fatherly Alliance. What did you do? Deathstorm looked at the Super Queen in disbelief. Did you plan us in from the beginning and bring us here? Deathstorm immediately figured it out. The Super Queen must have planned the crime syndicate from the beginning. And this woman was in collusion with Alexander. From the fact that the child in her belly was Alexander's, it was obvious. That's right, Professor, none of you stupid men can see through it. The Super Queen was no longer going to hide her ambitions. Facing Deathstorm, she told him her ambitions and plans. She was suspended in the air, looking at Deathstorm coldly, and said to him, "From the beginning, I planned to bring you to this world, and then take the opportunity to release Alexander, but I didn't expect the plan to go wrong, and Night Owl was unwilling to cooperate with me. Then we met Peter Patrick. This man completely disrupted all my plans. I realized that as long as he exists, all my plans cannot be realized." Super Queen took a deep breath. "Now, I can only rely on Alexander. Maybe after absorbing the abilities of many members of the crime syndicate, he can fight against Peter Patrick, the culprit who destroyed our home, you bitch." Deathstorm could no longer bear it, and released a ball of fire from his hands and rushed towards the other party. Seeing Deathstorm and Super Queen fighting, Mark, Siri, Bruce, Vixen and Clark were completely stunned. Things developed two ups and downs, so that several people did not react in a short time. First, Luthor from another world was released, and then Super Queen defected. After that, Superman and Alexander Luthor fought, and Super Queen and Deathstorm faced off. These guys started fighting before they could unify the world. Mark pushed up his glasses and complained to Siri, "We seem to be the citizens watching the show." Hey, facing the attack of the Deathstorm, the Super Queen dodged. After dodging the fatal blow by turning her head, the Super Queen's thermal vision rushed towards the opponent. The thermal vision, which was a little inaccurate, hit the ground, splashing countless dust. Then the Super Queen fell to the ground, but the moment she landed, the space trembled violently. The blood, sweat, and even the water molecules in the air within a radius of 100 meters suddenly boiled. The Deathstorm manipulated the molecules to form dense liquid substances in the air. The highly corrosive and toxic liquid rushed towards the Super Queen. Facing the attack of the Deathstorm, the Super Queen kicked over the gasoline barrel next to her. With a loud bang, the liquid and gasoline molecules exploded, and the airwave instantly lifted the two people away. The Super Queen took advantage of the airwave to quickly turn over and jump up. The obedience lasso in her hand wrapped around the cervical vertebra of the Deathstorm like a venomous snake. The golden light of the lasso of obedience suddenly invaded his skull and controlled his consciousness. Using the lasso of obedience to firmly lock Deathstorm's neck, the Super Queen smiled. "Oh, Deathstorm, no, sweetheart, you don't want to be my enemy, right?" Facing the Super Queen's ridicule, Deathstorm gritted his teeth, struggled with the lasso of obedience, and said to the Super Queen, "I'm going to kill you." "Really? I believe you will change your mind," the Super Queen said and tightened the other's neck with a lasso of obedience. The thorn-like lasso slowly entered Deathstorm's flesh, and blood slowly flowed out along the lasso. As the lasso of obedience tightened his neck, Deathstorm's consciousness was finally controlled. With fire on his skull, he looked at the Super Queen and slowly said, "You are so beautiful. I am willing to obey any of your orders and satisfy any of your wishes." Seeing that Deathstorm was completely controlled by herself, the Super Queen's smile became even stronger. "Very good, I want you to die, for my love, for Alexander." After giving the order to Deathstorm, Super Queen tied him up with the obedience lasso and flew into the sky with a boom. After the two disappeared into the sky, Clark asked Bruce with some doubts, "What should we do next? Things are not good." Bruce's eyes showed a trace of caution. "If Alexander Luthor absorbs the power of Deathstorm, I'm afraid this guy will be more difficult to deal with." Bruce was thinking about what to do. Sinestro fell to the ground with a bang. Sinestro looked up and looked into the distance, and said to everyone, "Everyone, come closer to me," he wants. Before he finished speaking, a violent explosion broke out from a distance. The dazzling white light instantly spread throughout the sky. As the mushroom cloud rose, a violent shock wave rushed towards Arkham. Just as the shock wave was about to reach Arkham, Sinestro immediately used the Yellow Lantern ring to construct a barrier to resist the shock wave. After the shock wave disappeared, Clark looked up in astonishment and looked into the distance. "Is Deathstorm dead?" "Very likely." Bruce frowned and said to him, "It seems that Deathstorm's ability has been acquired by Alexander Luthor." Just as several people were shocked by Deathstorm's death, Black Manta, Captain Cold, and Golden Glider stumbled over. Looking at Black Manta with a broken armor helmet, Captain Cold covered in blood, and Golden Glider who could hardly stand, Bruce asked several people, "What happened?" Captain Cold covered his wound and said with difficulty, "He was tied up by the crime syndicate and his mouth was sealed. We tore off the rag and tape on his mouth and wanted to ask who he was. Unexpectedly, he shouted and a black lightning fell down." Bruce continued to ask, "What did he shout? What did he shout?" "I can't remember it clearly." Captain Cold had a troubled expression on his face. "This is very important. You must figure it out." Bruce frowned even more tightly and kept urging the other party. "Yes, I understand. I was thinking, probably, trying to recall the memory." A word flashed through Captain Cold's mind. "I remember, it was Zanza." "That's right, I remember, it was Zanza," Captain Cold said excitedly. Bruce continued to ask him, "Are you sure? It's not Shazam, it's Zanza." "Yes, I remember correctly. At that time, a lightning bolt tore the ceiling apart. In the blink of an eye, he changed from a skinny poor guy to that appearance. Then he grabbed the Pied Piper's neck and broke it directly. After that, we launched an attack on him. Black Manta's helmet was smashed to pieces. I only heard a series of curses, unclear voices and flying fragments flying directly towards me." Captain Cold said with lingering fear what happened after he and his friends released Alexander. As they listened to his story, their expressions all became serious. "It seems that this guy is more difficult to deal with than imagined." Just as Bruce and his friends were discussing what to do next with serious expressions, a strong magical breath came from the air. Everyone turned their heads and saw a portal opening. The purple portal slowly opened, and Zatanna, Zoo, Raven, Loki, Star-Lord and other fathers all came. In Alaska, after dealing with the villains who responded to the call of the crime syndicate to riot, Zatanna rushed to the farm and brought all the fathers to Arkham. "Zoo, it seems that we are not too late." Zoo walked in front and pinched his waist, saying to Bruce and Clark, "Otherwise, you will take all the limelight, and we will end up without doing anything." Zoo's expression was quite unhappy. He originally planned to deal with the members of the crime syndicate, but he didn't expect that this group of villains was solved by Peter alone. Now that he knew that Alexander had appeared, he would naturally not miss the opportunity. So Zoo asked Zatanna to use the irony magic to open the portal and bring himself here. Raven and Loki also had the same idea as him, so in the end everyone rushed to Arkham. Bruce was originally worried that he could not deal with Alexander, but now seeing that all the fathers had gathered, he breathed a sigh of relief. Now that he has more people and more power, he has enough confidence to deal with Alexander Luthor. Boom held the boom gun and asked Mark impatiently, "Mark, where are Alexander, Super and Super Queen now?" Boom, who has never fought a fight so far, is quite irritable. She hasn't had a good fight with anyone for a long time. When she meets a villain like this who doesn't have to worry about anything happening, her hands are more itchy than a zoo. Boom, as soon as the voice fell, a flash of lightning suddenly fell. In the eyes of everyone, Alexander's eyes flashed with lightning, and he slowly fell to the ground. Standing behind him was Super Queen. It seems that Super should have been defeated by Alexander. Alexander, who absorbed the power of Johnny Quick and Deathstorm, was now surrounded by lightning all over his body, and his aura was several times stronger than before. "Be careful, these are Peter Patrick's sons and daughters," with a trace of caution in her eyes, Super Queen whispered to Alexander. Peter Patrick's son. Alexander's eyes flashed with a trace of disapproval. "As you said, my biggest enemy is Peter Patrick. After all, that guy defeated you easily." Only he is qualified to be my opponent. Alexander looked at Azu, Raven and others, and slowly said to the Super Queen, and his children, these guys are not qualified to be my opponents. After I kill these people, I will deal with Peter Patrick. The Super Queen standing behind Alexander narrowed her eyes as she looked at Alexander, who was about to challenge Peter's son. She was not worried that Alexander would fail, because she was now watching the fight from the mountain. Once Alexander failed, she would switch to Peter without hesitation. Chapter 898 The Death of Alexander Luthor. I will become the greatest superhero in the world, but now I have decided to have some fun and burn all of your ants to death, and then I will go and settle accounts with Peter Patrick. Alexander challenged Azu, Raven, Mark and others. Azu naturally would not indulge him, and snorted coldly and said, "You have to pass this level first, and I will twist your head off and send it to my father." After Azu finished speaking, Raven, Mark, Teresa, Star-Lord, Horus and others also stood up and surrounded him. For this guy's shameless words, several people were ready to fight him. The father-worried people that Peter picked up gathered together to fight the enemy for the first time. Sinestro, who was on the side, looked at this group of father-worried people in surprise. Who is this guy Peter Patrick, and how did he give birth to these super-powered people? He had heard of such a person on Earth before, but he didn't expect that all of this guy's children were not ordinary people. Covering the shoulder that was just injured by Superman, his eyes kept patrolling Azu and others. "I will kill you all." Alexander Luthor's fingertips burst out blue-white arcs, attacking the fathers. Boom! Raven's cloak suddenly unfolded, and a scarlet demon eye appeared on her forehead, swallowing the oncoming lightning beam. After using space magic to swallow the lightning beam, Raven roared angrily, and condensed black magic energy in her hands, and instantly rushed towards the opponent. The moment Raven moved, Azu also attacked Alexander. Facing the encirclement of the two, Alexander's eyes condensed. Activating super speed, Alexander instantly left the place. At the same time, he used the ability of Zansha to summon thunder. The thunder of divine punishment penetrated Raven's magic barrier, and with a boom, it heavily nailed her into the ruins of the clock tower. The brick and stone building was instantly smashed into dust by lightning and Raven's smash. Seeing Raven being rushed out, Horus also moved. Although he was not wearing power armor, Horus, who once had a burst of psychic energy, also had a good combat power without relying on power armor. Horus raised his chainsword and charged at Alexander. At the same time, V also raised her gloves and launched a fierce attack on the opponent. Boom put away the boom gun and replaced it with a modified bomb gun, constantly shooting at the enemy. The three of them accepted Brainiac's knowledge in the world of injustice and made many improvements in their weapons and equipment. The weapons from the Warhammer world were modified by the three to be more powerful. Bang! Horus rushed over and chopped Alexander's head with his chainsword. Alexander stretched out his arm to block the chainsword, but the roaring V's gloves had already attacked. With his left hand, Alexander created a barrier to block the attack of the chainsword, and with his right hand, he grabbed V's gloves. The three people competed with each other in strength. Taking the opportunity, Mark dived down. Bang! Alexander, who was unable to resist, was knocked out heavily. Alexander, who fell to the ground, was shocked by the power of these sons of Peter Patrick, whom he despised. The next second, Azu's body broke through the speed of sound and rushed towards him with a bang. "You should learn how to shut up." Before he could get up, Azu flew over and grabbed Alexander Luthor's throat and pressed him into the ground. The heat rays from his eyes bombarded the opponent at zero distance. The asphalt road collapsed in the ultra-high temperature, forming a crack with a diameter of 100 meters. Facing Azu's attack, Alexander endured the pain, his eyes emitting lightning, and a ball of high-temperature flames spit out of his mouth. The high-intensity energy shock wave that can burn almost everything can even cause a nuclear explosion-level destructive force. The energy derived from nuclear fusion is a controllable nuclear reaction capability, and it has a powerful power when ejected. Azu's heat rays were instantly annihilated by him, and he rushed out with a boom. After knocking Azu away, Alexander stood up, and the lightning from his eyes shot out, knocking Mark, who was flying over, away. Facing Alexander's attack, Tom raised his wand and shouted angrily, "Expecto Patronus!" The soft white light turned into powerful magic power and rushed towards Alexander. When Tom used Expecto Patronus to attack, Raven, who was knocked away, rushed over angrily. The huge crow released by Raven suddenly split into dozens of crows during the flight. Each crow carried powerful black magic and collided with the flames from Alexander. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded, and the two energies collided with each other and exploded violently. The raven was injured by the bursting flames, and blood oozed from the wound, wrapping her right arm. Enduring the pain, she continued to attack Alexander. The bell tower under her feet could not withstand the pressure and turned into powder and scattered in the continuous bombardment. At the moment of the explosion, Star-Lord released the energy of the gods. Swoosh! The silver energy locked Alexander's left arm, which was shaken back by the explosion. With a dong, Clark flew over and held down his right arm in the next second. Mark also flew over quickly, grabbed his waist and abdomen to make him unable to move. Bang! Azu's speed exceeded the speed of sound, and he rushed over and held down Alexander's head, smashing him heavily to the ground. With a deafening crash on the ground, the three supermen pressed Alexander to the ground. With a thump, Alexander fell heavily to the ground and roared in pain. He absorbed countless superpowers, but he didn't expect to be easily suppressed by these people after a fight. And now his head was pressed to the ground in humiliation. Not only did he not even meet Peter Patrick, but he was easily beaten by his children. The feeling of humiliation surged in his heart. No, Alexander, with lightning flashing in his eyes, struggled hard to break free from the control of the three supermen. But Zu, Clark and Mark pressed him down, making him unable to move at all. You are a waste. Zu pressed the other's head with his hand, gritted his teeth and taunted him. You can't even beat us. How can you challenge our father? You said that the earth is full of weaklings, but I think you are the biggest weakling. You are not even as good as Lex in our world. At least he's a guy who uses his brain. Zu's eyes were full of red light. He stretched out his hand, raised his head and looked at the sky. As he summoned the trident, lightning lingered in the sky. Crack! Thunder struck heavily in the sky, emitting a terrifying pressure. Feeling the familiar power of lightning, Alexander moved his eyes in disbelief and looked up at the sky. Why would the other party summon lightning power similar to that of Zansha? Before Alexander could react, Azu held the trident surrounded by lightning and stabbed him in the back. Boom! As a flash of lightning rushed down, Alexander, whose back was pierced, screamed in pain. Blood spurted out instantly. Alexander, whose back was pierced, twitched all over. As lightning lingered around him, the twitching tall and strong Alexander instantly turned into the thin and weak man before. Seeing that the other party had lost the power to resist, Mark and Clark let him go. Alexander, who fell to the ground, used all his strength to stand up, and his hunched body looked weakly at Azu who was looking down at him. Ahem! He coughed up blood, and a look of fear appeared in his eyes. Tears flowed from his eyes, and he looked at Azu pitifully, wanting to beg for mercy. But in the end, he only made a few unclear sounds from his throat and fell to the ground. This villain from Earth 3 has been controlling the overall situation through interdimensional technology, trying to use the members of the syndicate as pawns, and finally establish a pyramid of power with himself at the top. After being transformed by the anti-monitor, his body can absorb the abilities of many superpowers. But because of this, Alexander's body gradually decayed due to long-term exposure to antimatter, and he needed to be injected with stabilizers regularly. This physiological vulnerability exacerbated his anxiety about survival, forcing him to take extreme measures invading the main universe to prolong his life. What he didn't expect was that his plan failed before it was implemented. He was killed by the children of Peter Patrick, this mysterious figure. Alexander, who was full of fear, slowly closed his eyes. Seeing the arrogant Alexander Luthor end his life like this, everyone fell into silence. Sinestro looked at Azu and his group in shock. This group of children of Peter Patrick just solved Alexander Luthor like this. And it seems that these people are relatively relaxed, and there are several people who have not made much move, and have been in a state of fishing. If this group of children of Peter Patrick want to attack me, I am afraid that I have no divine calculation. As the leader of the Yellow Lantern Corps, Sinestro suddenly felt a palpitation in his heart. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Azu and others with vigilance. He has now listed Azu and others as the most dangerous people. Of course, Peter is a more dangerous person after them. Sinestro is a hero. He can turn the Yellow Lantern Corps into the Sinestro Corps, which looks like it dominates the world. Yellow lights represent fear. Parallax Demon, the Yellow Lantern Beast, is an ancient entity that represents fear. Generally, Parallax Demon possesses others. And Sinestro can swallow the Parallax Demon and control the Yellow Lantern Beast for his own use. He can also switch back and forth between green lights and yellow lights. And Sinestro has also worn white lights and metallic ultraviolet lights and other colors. If it weren't for Hal, he would be the greatest Lantern. Now, Sinestro regards Peter as his most dangerous opponent. Chapter 899, Bayonetta Witch defeats Super Queen. The Super Queen saw Alexander being killed, her face changed drastically, and she immediately fled far away. Teresa still remembered the hatred of the other party looking down on her, and immediately chased after the other party. Little Shiba Inu, throwing the little Shiba Inu doll on the ground, smoke rose with a bang, and under the cover of the smoke, the little Shiba Inu turned into a huge monster. Teresa jumped on the back of the little Shiba Inu, grabbed his mane and shouted loudly, "Catch her, don't let her run away, roar!" The little Shiba Inu monster roared, carrying Teresa and chasing after the other party. Before Riven and others could react, Teresa rode on the little Shiba Inu and disappeared. Bang! Riding the Shiba Inu monster fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Teresa cast her eyes around. Surrounding it was a dilapidated church, and the smell of rotten wood and decay was emanating from all around. Just as she was looking for the trace of the Super Queen, a stream of light suddenly rushed towards her. Teresa, who was unable to react in time, was knocked off the back of the monster. With a bang, Teresa's small body fell to the ground, and her pink glasses were thrown out. Seeing her master being knocked away, the little Shiba Inu monster rushed towards the attacker. The Super Queen, who knocked Teresa away, released the obedience lasso with both hands and threw it towards the monster. Teresa, who fell to the ground, looked at the Super Queen who was fighting with the little Shiba Inu monster with a dazed look. She felt her consciousness blurred for a while after being injured. In a daze, she came to the place where she had seen Bayonetta from another world before. On the rooftop, Teresa saw the adult version of Bayonetta standing there overlooking the entire city. "Mommy!" Seeing Bayonetta, Teresa shouted in surprise. The adult version of Bayonetta turned around and saw the little lolly Teresa, with a shocked expression on her face. "It's you, kid, why are you here again?" After learning that Teresa was herself from another parallel universe, Bayonetta's tone to her was no longer as cold as before. "I don't know, I was fighting with the Super Queen, she knocked me down, and then my consciousness became a little confused, and then I came here." Teresa briefly told her the situation. After listening to Teresa, Bayonetta nodded and looked up at the sky. At some point, two moons appeared in the sky. The intersection of the two moons indicated that the entanglement of the two worlds was even greater. No wonder she often saw Teresa in this space, probably because her world gradually intersected and approached Teresa's world. Bayonetta even suspected that one day, the two worlds would completely merge. Taking a deep breath and pulling back her thoughts, Bayonetta asked the little girl, "So, were you defeated by the Super Queen?" "No, I wasn't. I was just a little careless. I have to defeat this guy and let my dad see that I am not dispensable. I am her proudest daughter." Although Teresa was a little embarrassed, she still mustered up the courage to speak out her thoughts. "Is that so? Now that you mention it, I am quite interested in your father and the Super Queen." Bayonetta showed a charming smile at the corner of her mouth, bent down and put her hand on the little girl's head. "Then I will help you defeat the Super Queen, and let your dad look at you with new eyes. How about it?" Teresa looked at her in surprise. "But mommy, can you really do it?" Of course, although she could not enter Teresa's world for the time being, she had the Eye of the World and her soul could try to enter Teresa's world. Eye of the World, left eye of darkness. Bayonetta is the child of Umbra Witch and Lumen Sage, and inherited left eye of darkness, which is one of the eyes of the world. The Eye of the World is divided into two parts by Asar, controlled by Lumen Sage and Umbra Witch respectively, representing the power of light and shadow, and this power can even reverse time and go back to the past, and the Teresa in front of her is her best soul container. After all, this is another self, and the two are quite compatible. In Teresa's shocked and curious eyes, Bayonetta raised the pocket watch in her hand. As the pocket watch emitted a dazzling light, Teresa suddenly felt that there was something more in her body. Then her consciousness fell into darkness again. Real world. Super Queen blocked the claws of the monster, knocked it away, and then looked at the place where Teresa fell. As a result, the scene in front of her made her stunned instantly. Teresa had disappeared. What? Before she could react to what was going on, a sound of breaking air came from behind her. The Super Queen turned around abruptly, and the next second, Bayonetta's gun was against the Super Queen's throat. The little girl from before had disappeared, replaced by a woman with exaggerated long legs, black hair, hazel eyes, and a black uniform woven from her hair. The charming woman had long legs, a slender waist, and a very tense hip curve, showing a surreal perfect figure. The Super Queen judged from her breath that the woman in front of her was the little girl from before. Why? The Super Queen couldn't understand why the little girl turned into a Super Queen. Because I'm here to kill you, Bayonetta, who occupied Cerise's consciousness, smiled seductively at her. The tip of Bayonetta's high heels lightly tapped the ground, and the ebony and white ivory gun suddenly shot at her. Bang! 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 The shells fell into the lake of fire like musical notes, and each bullet made a dent in the Super Queen's armor. Facing Bayonetta's attack, the Super Queen frowned. While retreating to avoid the bullets, she tore off the remaining bell rope of the church, grabbed a big bell in the church and smashed it at Bayonetta. Bang! The witch's magic hair wove into a spider web to catch the impact, and she took advantage of the momentum to swing behind the Super Queen, twisted her legs around her neck and spun down. Bang! 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 The two crashed through 3 load-bearing walls and smashed into the back of the church. A deafening sound rang out in the space. With an angry roar, the somewhat annoyed Super Queen forced Bayonetta back with a punch, and picked up the lasso of obedience in her right hand. Bayonetta naturally would not let her do what she wanted, and her hair quickly wrapped around the Super Queen's lasso of submission. The friction between the Olympus iron and the alchemical magic hair produced dazzling sparks. The Super Queen roared, took the opportunity to pull the lasso to throw the witch into the air, and then the heat vision was like a blood-red whip chasing after her. Bayonetta stretched like a cat in the air, and the witch time made the trajectory of the heat vision visible in her eyes. She twisted her body on her toes to avoid the blade of light, and summoned the giant claws of Madame Butterfly to slap her as she fell. The Super Queen took the claws hard, and her feet sank into the ground. Facing the attack of Madame Butterfly, the Blue Devil of Hell, the Super Queen grabbed the opponent's knuckles and threw her over her shoulder. With a loud bang, Madame Butterfly was thrown out, plowing a long crack in the entire street. It's time to take a bow, witch. The Super Queen rushed towards Bayonetta. Caught off guard, Bayonetta was hit backwards by a punch. Rolling in the air, Bayonetta fell heavily to the ground. With a bang, the Super Queen flew over and tore the oil tank of the gas station with one punch, and then her heat vision ignited the sea of fuel fire. Bayonetta quickly stood up and got out of the control of the flames. Dodging the Super Queen's heat vision, the witch took the opportunity to summon the spider undead, and its poisonous claws stabbed the Super Queen. The Amazon armor smoked under the corrosion of the venom. The Super Queen gritted her teeth, tore open her damaged armor, and glared at Bayonetta. If it was your father, I would still have some reservations, but you can't defeat me, witch. Really? Bayonetta's smile widened. Her thick black eyeshadow, bright red lips and retro round frame glasses reflected a cold look. Since you think I'm a witch, if I don't show you my witch abilities, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. Bayonetta looked down at her calves. Blood beads slid down the witch's calves into her high heels. She licked the blood from her lips, and the magic hair that suddenly grew suddenly expanded outwards, turning into thousands of torrents and attacking the Super Queen. The Hellblade storm turned into an endless torrent, attacking her in the shocked eyes of the Super Queen. The Super Queen was shocked and immediately released her heat vision. But the heat vision that had powerful destructive power before could only cut in vain in the dense slashing. Bang! The Super Queen, who was exhausted from dealing with it, was pierced into the shoulder by the last hair blade, and she groaned in pain. Amidst the splattering blood, Bayonetta had already dodged behind her, with the muzzle of the gun against the back of her head. The head of the Super Queen was hit by the bullet and tilted forward in the flames of the gun. Although she was a Superman, the Super Queen who was shot still felt a pain and dizziness in the back of her head. Staggering, her body fell forward, and finally fell to the ground with a thump. After the Super Queen fell to the ground, Azu and Raven, as well as Sinestro and others also rushed over. Looking at the Queen with a mole on the corner of her mouth, Sari asked Raven in shock, "Who is she? Look at the gun, it's Teresa without a doubt." Raven saw Teresa who defeated the Super Queen in front of her, and her face was also incredible. "Alexander, that guy can transform, but I didn't expect Teresa to transform too. And she actually went from a little bean to a queen with a figure that even she would be jealous of." Raven glanced at her chest and muttered in dissatisfaction, "I don't know how it became so well developed." On the other side, Sinestro was also stunned when he saw Bayonetta in front of him. He hadn't noticed it when he saw the fathers besieging Alexander before. This youngest girl actually has the same transformation ability as Alexander. And after the transformation, she actually defeated the Super Queen. What kind of monsters are Peter Patrick and his children? Chapter 900 Super, kill me quickly. At the same time, Clark didn't know that Teresa had transformed into Bayonetta and defeated the Super Queen. Clark was worried about Teresa's safety and chased after the two. But he didn't expect that before he found Teresa, he was hit hard by a shadow. With a bang, Clark rolled in the air and hit the ground, plowing a deep gully. Clark, who was attacked, staggered to his feet, shook his head and looked up. Standing in the air was the Superman with his cape fluttering behind him. The Superman's uniform was a little damaged, and there were traces of blood on his face. Clark looked at the Superman in shock. He thought this guy was killed by Alexander. Speedmaster slowly descended from the air, his eyes piercing, and said to Clark, "I should thank you and praise you, because you not only lasted so long, but also killed Alexander Luthor." Speedmaster flexed his knuckles. "Now that this guy is dead, my biggest enemy has been eliminated. I should thank you, and of course, your father. If he hadn't taught such a group of capable children, Alexander wouldn't have died. Now, Clark, you who haven't put on the Superman uniform yet, you are not my opponent." As soon as Speedmaster finished speaking, he rushed towards Clark. Bang! Speedmaster moved in front of Clark in an instant, and when his knuckles hit Clark's jaw, an air shock wave exploded between the two. The sound of the explosion was like two fully loaded tankers colliding in a tunnel. The shock wave caused by the explosion blew away nearby glass. Gritting his teeth, Clark retreated half a step to relieve the force, and the concrete road surface cracked into a spider web under his heels. Facing the opponent rushing over, Clark was not to be outdone. He used his backhand uppercut to punch into the gap between the Super's ribs. "Is this all the power in your fist?" The Super endured the pain of the attack on his ribs, spat out bloody saliva, and hit Clark's diaphragm with his knee. Clark twisted his waist to dodge, but was a step too slow, and his shin was hit hard. Feeling the pain, Clark used the force to turn around and hit Super's temple with his elbow. Bang! With a dull sound of bones colliding, the two rolled into the nearby bank hall. The marble material was crushed into powder under the collision of the two. At this time, the bank was closed and no one was staying inside. Super stood up quickly, tore off the load-bearing column and swung it at Clark's neck. Dust splashed from the broken steel bar. Facing the attack of Super, Clark, who had just stood up, had his pupils shrank suddenly, and crushed the concrete column with his bare hands. The steel bar pierced Super's right chest like a javelin. Super grabbed the end of the steel bar with his backhand and stabbed it back. The two grabbed the concrete steel bars and wrestled with each other. Speedmaster roared, crushed the steel bar, and rushed towards Clark. Clark bent his knees and leaned back, hugged the rushing Speedmaster, and the two of them crashed through the wall of the bank and rushed to the subway tunnel. Bang! In an instant, the two people on the ground plowed a few hundred meters of gullies on the ground. While plowing the ground, Clark quickly took the initiative in the impact process. Clark turned over and hit Speedmaster's chest fiercely. The heavy fist made Speedmaster's Kryptonian sternum resonate like a church bell. Being attacked by Clark's random punches, Speedmaster felt a sharp pain all over his body. With a roar, his eyes shot out scarlet heat vision. Clark's chest was hit by the heat vision and instantly flew into the sky. Speedmaster staggered to his feet, looked at Clark who was high into the sky, and flew up with a boom. The friction of the atmosphere made the two Kryptonian bodies glow white hot. The flying Speedmaster locked Clark's neck, and then the two of them fell into the nearby water like a meteorite. Boom! In the white mist evaporating from the lake, Clark's elbow hit the spleen of the Supermaster, and the shock wave caused a larger water explosion. Clark, who had greater endurance and strength, grabbed the Supermaster's arm and threw him to the ground. With a loud bang, the Supermaster fell heavily to the ground. The high-intensity battle soon made the Supermaster's strength exhausted. He fell to the ground and tried desperately to stand up, but he couldn't move at all. He was lying on the ground, angrily grabbing the grass and vines on the ground. The plants reflecting the yellow sunlight made him feel more and more weak. After Clark threw the Supermaster out, he flew away from the lake with a boom and flew towards the Supermaster. Landing in front of the Supermaster lying on the ground, Clark looked at the embarrassed Supermaster with a complicated expression. "You're wrong, Speedmaster. Just because I'm not wearing Superman's uniform doesn't mean I'm not Superman now." Clark frowned and said to Speedmaster, who was lying on the ground, You don't know the real source of power, that's why I'm standing here and you're lying here. Clark reached out and turned Speedmaster, who was gasping for breath, over. What do you think this letter stands for? Clark looked at the charred U on the other's chest, with concrete debris falling from the cracks in his suit. Is it super? Powerful? Or the rule you always say? Speedmaster's throat gurgled with blood and foam, and his right eye was swollen to a slit. The S on my chest stands for hope. The Godfather told me that Superman represents hope, hope that cannot be cut off. Superman listened to Clark's words, his fingers twitching and digging into the ground. Self-comfort of the weak. I'm not a weak person, because I didn't lose, Clark said to him with a serious expression. Do you think a few stones can make you stronger? No, you won't. Just like Alexander Luthor thought that having many superpowers would make him stronger, Clark said to Superman with a complicated expression. To be honest, I used to envy his superpowers, but soon I realized that this is not what I need, because the Godfather once said to me, he said that these things will only make us fall into a sense of dependence on them, and thus evolve into our own weaknesses. These grafted powers will only turn us into puppets. Clark took a deep breath and pressed the bracelet device on his wrist. With a series of clicks, the anti-kryptonite armor made from Tony Stark before covered Clark. After wearing the anti-kryptonite armor, Clark took out a lead box. Opening the lead box, Clark took out a green kryptonite necklace. Staring at the green kryptonite in front of him, Clark thought of the scene when Peter taught him. Ugh, making a painful sound, the Speedmaster on the ground lowered his head, trembling and reaching out his hand, reaching for the kryptonite necklace in Clark's hand. As long as he swallowed his piece of green kryptonite, he would gain strength and become stronger. But his arm kept shaking, and he couldn't reach the kryptonite necklace in Clark's hand at all. With his head down, the Speedmaster's heart was instantly filled with humiliation. He slowly lowered his hand and said to Clark in a trembling voice, kill me. His dignity was completely shattered at this moment. As a tyrant who defines himself by strength, the Speedmaster's survival logic is based on the law of the survival of the fittest. Now he has lost the power to touch the kryptonite, and this absolute power level has been completely subverted. Clark showed the real source of power with an almost pitiful attitude, directly denying the Speedmaster's life philosophy. The desperate Speedmaster directly gave up the hope of survival. Clark looked at the Speedmaster, who lowered his head and trembled all over, and shook his head. He put away the green kryptonite necklace with a sympathetic expression on his face. No, I won't kill you. Clark looked at the skyline of the city in the distance, with a touch of melancholy on his face. You know it best, Speedmaster, you should be the weakest person on this planet. You look strong and have mastered power that others can't reach, but the real you is never strong. Clark knew why Speedmaster asked him to kill him. Because when Speedmaster's trembling hands couldn't touch the kryptonite, it was not only a physiological withdrawal reaction, but also the collapse of his spiritual support. He thought that this situation of close at hand but unable to control was more frightening to Speedmaster than death. No, don't go. Seeing Clark was about to leave, Speedmaster gritted his teeth and trembled all over, shouting at him painfully, kill me. Clark ignored him, looked up at the sun that filled him with strength but frightened Speedmaster, and with a boom, his feet left the ground and flew towards Teresa. Everything was over. The crime syndicate had been destroyed, but Clark couldn't be happy anyway. If I lived in Speedmaster's world and was adopted by a couple of villains, I might become a person like him. Clark was in a state of melancholy. The luckiest thing in his life was that the spaceship landed in Smallville and met his parents and Godfather. Of course, there were also Zoo, Loki, Star-Lord and the others. Teresa. After defeating the Super Queen, Teresa suddenly fell to the ground with a thump in the astonished eyes of everyone. Then her body gradually became smaller, and she changed from the previous queen to a lolly. The long black straight hair on her head also turned into short hair. Captain Cold in Black Manta, who came over, looked at the queen, who was extremely beautiful when her limbs were stretched, and disappeared just like that, feeling a little regretful. To be honest, I have never seen a woman with such an explosive figure. Seeing Teresa fainted, Sari hurried forward to help her up. The magical beast transformed by the little Shiba Inu also came over and licked her palm with its tongue. Teresa, feeling a chill, woke up slowly. Dad, I'm not your dad, I'm Sari. Sari smiled at her. You defeated the Super Queen, Teresa, but just now you became an adult. Become an adult. Teresa was stunned. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.